trampled on every day at work, drowned in debt, all because of a game. His name was Jae-woo. Life was harsh, and he ended up being reborn in a world where warriors are respected in war. But there was a problem. Jae-woo was just a boy with the lowest level, powerless, alone in a forest, starving, and on the verge of death. But Jae-woo became a genius of war. The more blood he shed, the stronger he became. He came to be known as the cold-blooded warrior. Before an imposing castle, the final battle looms under the moon. Seeing the bodies on the ground, the demon lord wonders how a mere human made it this far. Still panting, he admits his opponent is truly skilled. Face to face with the lord, he prepares for the final showdown. Staring him down, the demon lord Farza shouts his title, Elector Steel. With a confident smile, he shows he's ready for whatever comes next. Wielding his sword, he yells that the age of demons ends today. He then leaps toward the enemy, preparing the 12th form of the sword. He charges forward for the decisive attack, shouting, "Here I go!" But suddenly, a notification window appears, halting his mid-air movement. The message announces that he has been disconnected from the server. Seeing him frozen, the demon lord says he's full of flaws. Completely paralyzed, he starts screaming, begging for it to stop immediately. With no control over his body, he just screams as danger approaches. On the screen, the quest notification against the demon lord Farza is displayed. Shortly after, the system informs that the warrior Han Jae-woo has failed to complete the stage. Shifting to the real world, two men wonder how to wake Jae-woo from the game. Inside the room, one of them approaches to shake him, while the other notices something. Nervously, he admits he accidentally unplugged the cable when he saw Jae-woo's silhouette. Back in reality, Jae-woo grabs him, asking if he was the one who unplugged the cable. Furious, he yells that he was about to finish the quest and beat the boss. He explains his name is Han Jae-woo, and he looks like an addict, but he recalls that in the past, he was very popular, known as the problem solver. He was also called the brain of Hanum, and a money goblin. Living a life of luxury, he enjoyed everything his money could buy. But one day, he finally realized something important about the life he was living. Staring into space, he began to reflect on his own actions and achievements. He realized how trivial everything he had strived for was. That's why the game became his new world, a place that completely changed him. As a single-player RPG, the world was gigantic and open for exploration. For him, who had never read a book, it was a new universe. Fighting against various enemies, he saw how truly magical that world was. On top of that, beautiful characters of various species were also part of the game. Drawn in by their stories, he became more and more involved with the journey. This experience transformed him, as he used to only care about money. So, to keep playing, he ended up borrowing some money. With the cash, he bought a game capsule worth $1 billion. He then admits that people could easily call him crazy for it. On the floor, the man asks how Jae-woo can treat him that way. With a smile, he says he's finally understanding what's happening there. Recalling the past, he says he has covered up all of their secrets. Holding the man on the floor, the other two watch the scene. Then the other man shouts, questioning if he has any right to say anything. When Jae-woo stares at him, the man backs down and says he didn't say anything. Being questioned, he's told he won't pay off the debt just by writing guides. Remembering the game, he was climbing a rock to reach a giant plant at the top. Another time, he had to hide from a huge dragon in a destroyed location. Continuing the journey, he read a map while a winged monster watched him. Back at the computer, he finishes the guide and announces the dungeon walkthrough. He then checks his notes, fully concentrating on finishing his work. Afterward, he checks his bank statement, seeing very little money left in the account. Seeing the situation, the man asks Jae-woo to come back and work with them. Refusing the offer, he simply replies that he won't go back to his old life. Getting into the capsule, he says he hasn't seen the end of that game yet. Seeking the true ending, he knows no other player has managed to get there yet. For him, reaching the end is the least he can do for that world. Pushing the men, he tells them their workday is over. Before leaving, the man shouts that he believes in him as Jae-woo closes the door. Turning back, he prepares to continue his journey inside the game. Placing his hand on the capsule, he gets ready to return to the game. Then, the system screen displays a message that the game is starting. Then the title, Savior of Humanity, appears, confirming the start of the game. Already inside the game, he reappears in the Cathedral of Bayern, a bustling place. Receiving a notification, he sees the death penalty has been suspended for hours. Annoyed, he yells, wondering how he's supposed to make money like this. Suddenly, a mysterious voice says he seems to be in some difficulty. When he looks, a white-haired figure begins to materialize in front of him. With firm steps, the character walks toward him through the Great Hall. As soon as she stops, he immediately asks who she is. Introducing herself with a smile, she says she is Aquila, the Game Master. Surprised, he questions how a girl like her could be the game's GM. Telling him not to judge a book by its cover, she says it's just her preference, but he scoffs, saying he won't believe she's Aquila that easily. To prove her point, she simply snaps her fingers in front of him. In that instant, time stops, and all the surrounding NPCs become completely motionless. He wonders if that was a time-stopping spell. He soon realizes it would have to be an SSS rank skill. She then explains it's not a skill, but that she just took down the server. She then approaches and asks if he wants to hear about the new event. Excitedly, she announces that a new world has opened on the game server. He wonders if she's insane, then hears the reward is 25 billion. With a smile, she gets closer and asks if he's afraid of the challenge. She then teases him, asking if he doesn't want to see the true ending. Looking at him, she says the clues to the ending might be there. Extending her hand, she offers the clues that could lead to the true ending. He stares at the offer, pondering what decision to make next. Moving her hand, she asks him to wait a moment before continuing. She says that if he accepts now, he'll get a special gift. Then, a notification shows that 30 million have been sent to his account. Showing the player rankings, she says he is her top VIP. Excited about the money, he says it doesn't matter if he can't beat the game. He then celebrates that he'll be able to pay this month's interest on his debt. Decided, he shouts that he'd be an idiot to refuse an event like this. Satisfied, she informs him that she will send him to the new world immediately. Starting the process, she announces that the new world is being installed. With a focused expression, she continues installing the new system. Floating in the air, she begins the installation of the new game world. Then, all the NPCs in the area begin to be removed by the system. The entire world is deconstructed, taking them both to a completely new place. Pointing, she says that door will lead him to the new challenge. He then asks if the game will start as soon as he goes through the door. Turning, he walks toward the door to begin the grand event. Reaching the front, he opens both doors and faces the entrance. Before going, he reminds her not to forget the reward money. Entering the portal, he declares he's going in search of the journey's true end. She then says she forgot to tell him a very important detail about the event. With a smile, she reveals that if the character dies, he dies outside too. Completely shocked, he can't react to the new warning he just received. At that moment, he is thrown headfirst into the new game world. Plummeting at high speed, he just screams as he falls toward the ground. Reaching the ground, he crashes with full force onto the grass. Feeling pain, he wonders why it hurts, since he's inside a game. Remembering the warning, he wonders if the girl was really telling the truth. Still on the ground, he grabs the grass and screams Aquila's name to the sky. Getting up from the ground, he decides he'll face the challenge anyway. Then he yells a curse at the sky, aimed at the game master. Walking through the forest, he leans on a branch, saying he's thirsty. Angry, he says he won't forgive Aquila and decides to open his status window. Seeing his stats, he complains that she gave him a very weak character. Wondering how he'll ever get a happy ending, he complains about his terrible current condition. Just then, a drop of water falls into a puddle, catching his attention. Turning around quickly, he shouts excitedly when he realizes he's found something in the forest. Reaching a river, he's thankful he read a survival book. Then he throws himself into the water, drinking quickly to try and recover his health. Suddenly, a woman's hand runs through her hair, emerging from the river's mist. Still drinking, he lifts his face when he notices movement just ahead. Then he sees an unknown woman bathing peacefully in the water. Continuing to watch, he stands still as she bathes. A notification about losing health startles him, and he asks who she is. Just then, his eyes begin to change, revealing some kind of special ability. But right after, the system warns him that he needs to pay for the DLC. Outraged, he shouts that he shouldn't have to pay for the DLC because he's a VIP player. At that moment, a group of witches surrounds him, warning that he needs to pay to continue. Unable to react, he just stares at them all, his face frozen. The scene changes, and he's on the ground after being attacked. Lying on his back, he tries to get up. Seeing him lose health, a witch tells him to stay quiet on the ground. Leaning over him, she says she'll leave him alone if he doesn't react. He then asks the other tied-up man if he's okay, but the witches just laugh. Not understanding, the man asks what he meant, but gets no reply. Introducing himself, the hunter, Rudd, asks how he ended up there. Rudd explains he was unlucky, arriving by chance while hunting prey. Asked in return, he says his story is similar, and he had no choice. Discreetly, he starts cutting the ropes with a hidden blade. Then he confidently announces that this kind of situation is his specialty. Asked if he has a way out, he guarantees he knows exactly what to do. He explains that he knows what to do because he's the one who wrote their guide. Remembering the past, he says it took him 3 days to create the strategy. Then he lists their names, starting with Gunda, Kaldura, Aldaida, and Fugul. Finally, he points to the leader, saying her name is Heijuju. Even though they're early game bosses, they're famous for defeating many players. Analyzing the situation, he notices they are, in fact, a disorganized group. With a strange look, he turns to Rude, who is completely confused. Turning to Fugul, He asks if she is still alive in this place. He then recalls that Haejuju clearly said she was going to get rid of her. Interrupting the conversation, Haejuju tells him to wait before he says anything more. Annoyed, Fugal asks who's going to kill whom, showing the taunt worked. He continues, saying she plans to take all of her belongings afterward. Furious, Fugal screams at Haejuju, asking if it was all true. Haejuju simply asks if she's really going to believe that man's words. Continuing his plan, he prepares to add more fuel to the fire. Saying she won't use the money, he provokes her, and the plan works. At that, Aldaida comments that this was why Juju was preparing an acid bomb. Not caring, Gunda asks when the meal will finally be ready. Seeing the fight, Caldura gets excited and shouts that she wants to join in too. With the witches arguing, he celebrates that his plan is going perfectly. Despite their title, the two witches begin to fight violently with each other. Soon after, the other two also jump into the brawl without a second thought. Their weakness is unknown, which is why so many players are always defeated by them. Because of this, it's very easy to make them fight each other. Taking advantage of the confusion, he tells Rudd they need to escape now. He watches the fight, but says he needs to take care of something before they get away. But before leaving, he turns to execute the final step of the plan. Leaping into the middle of the chaos, he grabs a large cloth that was nearby. With a swift motion, he throws all of them into a huge cauldron. Pointing the way, he tells Rudd that the exit is in that direction. Seeing the damage notifications, he celebrates that they give a lot of experience. But suddenly, Fugal's snake grabs him, restricting his movement in midair. Having fallen into the cauldron, she screams that she won't die alone and will take him with her. On the ground, he dodges the snake's strikes while yelling for it to let him go. Annoyed, he remembers his current character is extremely weak and can't escape. Seeing the scene from afar, Rudd shouts that he'll help him get out of there. He then charges forward with his sword in hand, rushing to attack the serpent. With a precise strike, Rudd cuts the snake and finally frees him. Afterward, he asks if he's alright, and he just thanks him for the help. Jaewoo asks to borrow the bow, and Rudd asks if he's good with them. Upon taking the weapon, a system window displays the stats of Rudd's bow. Saying he knows a little, he gets into position and prepares the bow to shoot. Shooting upwards, he aims at an object hanging from the hall's ceiling. The arrow hits the target, which shatters and plummets towards the witches. Surprised, they look up, not understanding what's about to happen. In a panic, Haejuju screams in despair that the falling object is an acid bomb. Furious, Fugal screams as drops of acid begin to fall on them. The liquid then starts to drip into the cauldron where they are trapped. With nowhere to run, they can only watch as the acid falls slowly. A moment later, a massive explosion engulfs the entire area. The blast throws them back, causing each of them to lose 1 health point. Rudd asks if they did it, but he yells not to say something like that. On the screen, the system announces that he has unlocked a new achievement. Shortly after, a list confirms that all the witches have been completely defeated. As a reward, he receives a large amount of experience points and achievements. Seeing the notifications, he confirms to Rude that they managed to defeat them. Jaewoo then celebrates, saying he was lucky to be at such a low level. Thanking him, Rudd says he saved him, as he thought it was his end. Turning around, he says it was nothing, but he has something for him. Rudd then offers a bag of fruits as a token of gratitude for all his help. Surprised, he says this was unexpected, and doesn't remember this happening before. Rudd then explains he took the fruits from a nest because they looked very valuable. As he eats the fruits, he starts to feel a very strange effect on his body. He then transforms, getting a notification about a dragon bone. Impressed, he sees his stats increase dramatically and feels incredibly lucky. Meanwhile, Rudd just watches the entire transformation with a slight smile on his face. After eating, he's called over by Rudd, who slowly approaches him. Getting closer, Rudd asks if he would be interested in starting to hunt monsters. With his mouth full, he just stares back at Rudd, thinking about the offer. Still chewing, he clenches his fists and prepares to answer the proposal. Rejecting the offer, he says he has other things to do right now, but suddenly he stops, realizing this could be a good opportunity. Looking at his stats, he notices that his experience will vanish without a class. He quickly interrupts and offers a 3-month time frame. With a smile, he asks if 3 months will be enough time for the training. Surprised, Rudd questions if he didn't mean 3 years, thinking it's all too fast. After the agreement, the two start walking together into the forest. Nearing a river, Rudd tells him to hide anywhere. Then he announces he'll start looking for him in exactly 30 minutes. Analyzing the situation, he realizes Rudd is using a hunter's skill. Certain he's been underestimated, he runs into the woods to hide. He remembers having explored this forest countless times. Diving among the plants, he shows he remembers every little detail of the place. Leaping between trees, he uses poisonous mushrooms to confuse his pursuer. Remembering the beasts of the forest, he hides behind a tree. Swinging on a vine, he says everything was already in his mind. With a confident smile, he guarantees he won't be found so easily. But suddenly, Rudd appears behind him, teasing him about hiding. Completely surprised, He turns around and questions what just happened. Assessing his performance, Rudd says he gets bonus points for the effort. On the ground, he asks how Rudd managed to find him so quickly. Rudd then comments that it's been a while since he's had such an entertaining student. As they run through the forest, Rudd invites him to give it his all. Just then, the system announces that he has completed the mission and received a new one. Then a list of new skills and the Monster Hunter class is displayed. Showing the screen, he displays the new monster tracking skill. With a determined smile, he says they'll work very well together. 3 months later, Rudd asks if he has managed to master everything. Challenging his master, he tells Rudd to hide somewhere. Praising his spirit, Rudd accepts the challenge to hide in the forest, but he warns that if he isn't found, dinner will be on him. With a smile, he accepts the bet and calls Rudd master. Watching Rudd disappear, he says he's eager to start the challenge. Climbing a cliff, Rudd says he's happy to have found a good apprentice. On second thought, he decides he won't go too hard on the boy. He believes that hiding there will be enough for the challenge. Suddenly, he feels something on his hand and looks up confused. There was his apprentice holding his foot and teasing him about hiding. He finds Rudd, who is astonished by his speed. He finds him again, showing he has already mastered the new hunting skills. Finding him in the tree, Rudd can't believe his new apprentice's progress. Rudd enters a cave, doubting he will follow him. Trying to convince himself, he doubts his apprentice will ever reach this place. Realizing where he is, he panics upon seeing a hellhound's nest. Giving a hint, he says it's a secret from the guardian of humanity. Grabbing Rudd, he warns that not even earthquakes can wake a sleeping hellhound. With a smile, he asks if he managed to pass the hunter test. Still in shock, Rudd just confirms that he passed and was successful. Back in the forest, Rudd praises him for mastering everything in 3 months. Then he demonstrates that he's learned to use a 5-hit furious combo. Extending his hand, he says it was all thanks to the experience from the witches. Rudd is amazed that he remembered all the tips on monster ecology. Excited, his master says he will surely go far with his talent. Then Rudd asks what his plans are for the future from here on out. Without hesitating, he replies that his first goal is to make some money. Getting an idea, Rudd invites him to work as a mercenary. Finding the proposal interesting, he thinks it's a good way to start. Besides, he remembers that mercenary work is very flexible. With luck, he hopes he can find the guardians of this game. Accepting the proposal, he confirms he will become a mercenary from now on. Then Rudd hands him his old emblem, saying that his friend will recognize it. Wishing him good luck, Rudd says goodbye as he thanks his master. Walking away, he celebrates the great start of getting a new class. Holding the emblem, he believes a happy ending is now within his reach. With a determined look, he prepares for the next phase of his journey. As he holds the emblem, a voice asks if he doesn't want to see the end. Remembering the promise, Aquila's image appears, offering a clue to the ending. He then reaches for the logout button, thinking about the thrill of this deadly game. Determined to continue, he says he will use all the tension to his advantage. Slapping his face, he gets ready to focus completely on the new mission. As he leaves, he swears to Aquila that he will reach the true ending. Cutting to a new scene, Aquila watches everything from afar, laughing at his situation. Sitting on her throne, she says it was hilarious watching him escape from the witches. Saying she's happy to be watching him, she smiles with great satisfaction. As she watches, someone emerges, flying through outer space. Landing gracefully, a new character says he's no ordinary guy. With a teasing smile, Aquila asks if she's interested in him. Then Valfurga is revealed, hovering majestically above Aquila's throne. Being a goddess, she says she shouldn't look at a human that way, but Aquila retorts, asking why not, since he's cute. Hearing the response, Valfurga just turns her face away without another word. Continuing the teasing, Aquila says she used to be more fun back in the day. Changing the subject, she asks if his debt was really paid. Upon learning the truth, she calls Aquila cruel for letting him work for nothing. Unconcerned, Aquila asks why not, finding it all very amusing. As she watches him on the screen, she says he's full of life. Calling her horrible, Valfurga prepares to ask an important question. Looking at the screen, she asks if he is also part of the plan. Questioning Aquila, she asks if he's part of the plan, or just a toy. While laughing at the question, Aquila just ponders what she will answer. With a smile, she says he's more like a very promising talent. Maintaining a mysterious smile, she just stares at the screen without saying a word. Seeing his image, Aquila says to just keep watching. Sitting on the ground, he gets a notification that he's in a state of exhaustion. Looking at the forest, he wonders why the path was so difficult. After getting up, he says it's time to head to his destination, and he spots the city of the mercenary corps. As he approaches the tavern, the bell on the door rings, announcing his arrival. 2 waitresses greet him, welcoming him to the best tavern in town. Saying he's looking for someone, one of them invites him to sit down first. Seeing the crowded place, he realizes it's the perfect spot to gather information. With everyone drinking and laughing, He knows people talk more when they're happy. He notices the waitresses are also a big part of the tavern's appeal, so he decides to ask if they know someone named Reebs Chaltz. Suddenly, the entire bar falls silent, with everyone looking in his direction. Scared, a waitress warns him that name is forbidden to be spoken there. The other waitress reveals her boyfriend got involved with him just once. Terrified, she says the boy came back looking like a real mummy. Hearing the conversation, he wonders who Rudd introduced him to. The waitress then warns him to run, as he'll be there any minute. Suddenly, Jae-woo bumps into someone, and he asks who he bumped into, and the man introduces himself as Reebs Chaltz. Looking at his waist, he sees the emblem Rude gave him. Recognizing the emblem, Chaltz says he must be Rude's guy. With a smile, he says he was looking for a battle companion. Not understanding, he thinks Rudd tricked him to get rid of him. Laughing at the situation, Chaltz says he was just messing with him. Walking through the city, he understands he's about to be dragged into a great war. Even though it feels like an enlistment, he sees it as a great opportunity to grow. He remembers that the Prince Elector is one of the guardians of this game. Thinking about his plan, he sees a chance to get information on the others. Suddenly, the sound of a trumpet echoes throughout the city. Grabbed by Chaltz, he loses health and realizes the prince has arrived. The crowd then parts to let the Prince Elector's procession pass. Finding it all different than expected, he thinks he would fit in with that group. Upon seeing the prince, he notices the guardian looks more like a villain. Understanding nothing, he just keeps watching the scene unfold. Suddenly, a knight in white armor approaches on her horse. Wielding her sword, she rides towards the prince who waits for her. Seeing the knight, Chaltz yells in surprise that Dame Valpurgis is there. The Prince Elector just stares back at her with a serious, distant look. Noticing she's distracted, he asks if something is wrong. Snapping to attention, she just replies that nothing is wrong. Without another word, she just turns her face away and falls silent. As he watches the troop move away, he says the battlefield awaits him. Remembering the past, he says she was his companion in other playthroughs, but he regrets that every time, he failed to save her from danger. With a determined look, he says it always ended the same way. Chaltz then asks if something's wrong, but he just denies it. Remembering Valpurgis, he promises he'll risk his own life this time, and he swears he'll reach an ending where she lives. Back in the courtyard, several mercenaries are training and fighting among themselves. The fights are intense, with the men trading blows without a second's hesitation. Watching the training, he finds it all very intense, but it's to be expected. Getting a notification, he enters the Mercenary Corps' training ground. Chaltz then explains they are selecting group leaders through fights. Celebrating, one of the mercenaries raises a bag of money high. Thinking about his goal, he decides he'll keep a low profile for now. But suddenly Chaltz shoves him forward, saying he's going to participate. Ignoring his opinion, Chaltz says Rudd would never send a useless person. Shouting to everyone, he asks if anyone wants to fight the rookie. Excited, several mercenaries volunteer, with one saying he'll go first. Seeing he can't object, he finds the whole situation quite familiar. Determined to seize power, he prepares to face the first opponent. Introducing himself as Max, the mercenary challenges him to an official duel. Looking at him, Max says he looks weak and will break with one hit. Chaltz then asks if both sides are ready for the fight to begin. Giving the starting signal, he tells them to begin the combat. Rushing to attack, Max charges forward screaming, sword in hand. With a single strike, Max's sword is sent flying into the air. The other mercenaries just watch the scene, completely shocked by what they saw. Lying on the ground, a notification confirms Max was easily defeated. Seeing the result, the others wonder what just happened. Wanting to understand, the other mercenaries offer to fight him too. Seeing the crowd, he asks them to come one at a time. Using his intermediate swordsmanship, he defeats another opponent and gains fame. With a binding technique, he immobilizes another and gains more points. With a headbutt, he wins another fight and increases his fame. Then a large man says they're embarrassing themselves against a rookie. Introducing himself as Charlotte, he offers to be his next opponent. Looking at his size, he wonders if the opponent is even human. Certain this is too much, he tries to log out of the game, but he can't. The logout screen appears, but he realizes he can't leave the game. In a panic, he asks for a minute to rest before the fight, but Charlotte yells there's no chance and charges at him. Sighing, he thinks about how his fate in this game is cursed. Since it's come to this, he prepares for the next fight. With a serious look, he says he'll handle this the right way. Then he grabs Charlotte's arm, stopping his advance mid-charge. With his other hand, he firmly grips his opponent's clothes. Using his technique, he throws him into the air with all his strength. Finally, he slams him into the ground with everything he's got, ending the fight. Defeated on the ground, Charlotte wonders what kind of move just hit him. Panting, he gets the notification that he defeated Charlotte and gained more fame. In disbelief, another mercenary asks Chaltz where he found him. Surrounding him, the other mercenaries shout that he's a real monster. Being shaken, he asks them to let him rest for at least a minute. Then Chaltz appears and yells for everyone to back away from him immediately. Protected by Chaltz, he just stares at the leader who is now watching him. Pointing directly at him, Chaltz announces that he is the new group leader. Shocked by the announcement, he He just stands there, completely stunned. Changing scenes, an army lines up on the battlefield. Among the troops, he is watched closely by the other soldiers around him. Already wearing a full suit of armor, he finds himself holding a sword in his hand. On the battlefield, the two armies prepare for the Great War. With a war cry, Chaltz orders all soldiers to advance. The army then charges toward the enemy, kicking up dust across the field. On the front lines, the orcs brace for the first attack. In the midst of battle, he charges forward and strikes an orc with his sword. Fighting the orcs, he says he's aligned with the prince's forces. Back in the planning tent, Chaltz explains they're in a direct confrontation. With a smile, he says the mission is simple: steal the enemy's flag. Showing the map, he explains the plan to break through and collapse their lines. But he warns that the orcs are strong and have the best coordination on the continent. Calling out to him, Chaltz points and gives a direct order to the new leader. He says his job is to stop the orcs' advance in the battle. In the heat of the fight, Jae-woo dodges several enemy spears. Surprised by the order, Jae-woo questions his new role as a leader. With no time to think, he charges forward and starts cutting down the surrounding orcs. Angry, Jae-woo yells that he was planning to take the credit and get out of there. Just then, an orc soldier reports that the spearmen are being defeated. The orc captain can't believe his elite spearmen are falling. Grabbing a spyglass, he yells for the soldier to hand it over. Using the device, he scans the battlefield to understand the situation. Looking through the spyglass, he tries to find the reason for his troops' collapse. On the battlefield, Jae-woo and his men charge forward, shouting at the enemy. Seeing this, the orc captain starts to sweat, worried by what he sees. He then orders the muskets to line up and prepare to fire. The shots hit the shields, reducing their durability. Seeing that the muskets need to reload, he prepares for the attack. As the second row gets ready, he says, "Now's the time." Leaping over his men, he charges toward the orc troops. Reaching the front, he yells for all his men to destroy them. The orc captain can't believe they're being beaten by a single man. Watching the orcs, the captain says he can't let them get the flag. Holding the banner, he yells that it carries the history of his tribe. He and his group then advance on the captain to capture the flag. Looking to the sky, the soldiers see the enemy flag being captured. Holding the flag, he shouts in victory and receives a notification. Suddenly, the sound of a retreat horn echoes across the battlefield. A soldier approaches and warns that there's bad news about the battle. Looking at the map, he sees his allies are retreating and abandoning him. Furious, he shouts as he sees the orc reinforcements arriving. Watching victory slip away, he wonders why everyone is running now. A soldier suggests they should flee too, but he says that's crazy. With a sweaty face, the soldier warns that they're already in deep trouble. Looking ahead, they realize they are completely surrounded by the enemy. Just then, the hidden boss, Orc General Kallian, says it's all over. Facing the troop, he addresses the brave human warriors before him. Ordering them to surrender, he offers to spare their lives in exchange for the flag. In disbelief, he says that if they advance, the flag will go somewhere undesirable. Enraged, the orc general shouts at them for disrespecting the tribe's sacred banner. With an intimidation notification, he says there are no rules in war. Surprised by the scene, the other orcs don't know how to react to the threat. The orc general just stares at the group of humans, thinking about his next move. Suddenly, the human troop prepares to fire, and he throws himself in front. Seeing this, the orc general orders his men to fire immediately. The shots hit the soldiers he was trying to protect with the flag. Even while wounded, he doesn't understand why they didn't just drop the flag sooner. Gritting his teeth, he prepares to endure whatever comes next. As the shots continue, the human soldiers are hit and fall to the ground. One of the soldiers complains he can't defeat the general at his level. Despite the pain, the soldiers struggle to hold their ground in the battle. Not knowing what to do, he finds himself trapped in an impossible situation. Remembering his comrades, he prepares to face the situation. In his mind, he gets a glimpse of his main character. Just then, Aquila appears, saying he's going to die in real life too. With a confident smile, she just keeps watching him from a distance. Back in reality, he screams as the pressure of the battle mounts. His soldiers yell that he needs to give orders or they'll all be wiped out. With a bloody smile, he gets ready to give the next command. Seeing him laugh, one of the soldiers asks if he's finally lost his mind. Then he shouts and tells Charlotte to give him the horn now. Even without reinforcements, he yells for Charlotte to shut up and watch. Holding the horn, Jae-woo prepares to blow it with all his might. The sound echoes across the field, but draws the orcs in the wrong direction. Seeing the mistake, the soldier yells that he's blowing it in the wrong direction. Knowing what he's doing, Jae-woo says they're now even with Aquila. Confidently, he yells that he's still a VIP player and won't be defeated. Shouting an order, the orc general sends his spearmen charging forward. Just then, a giant orc prepares to attack, raising its massive spear. He then calls him the arch-enemy of his entire people. Facing the spear, Jae-woo just gives a desperate smile as the blow closes in. And suddenly, something hits the orc's neck, but suddenly a figure on horseback leaps over the enemy army. In midair, Valpurgis swoops down on the orc troops. Her horse then lands hard in the middle of the battlefield. Shouting to the troops, she orders everyone not to give up this fight. Raising her sword, she commands all soldiers to prepare to fight. Ordering his troops not to interfere, the general says the fight is his. He declares it's a noble duel between him and the countess. Impressed by his attitude, she says he is a true man. Then she advances with her sword, lunging at the orc general. The two exchange fierce blows, creating a powerful impact on the field. Watching the fight, he notices their strength is perfectly balanced. In another attack, their swords clash. The orc is stunned by Valpurga's move, and suddenly, she lands a powerful blow to the general's face, sending him flying. Retreating, he recomposes himself and prepares to continue the fight. Praising his skills, she prepares to unleash her full power. He then asks if she is part of the Valpurga Sisterhood. Laughing at the question, the orc general just stares at the knight. Saying it's getting late, she readies herself for the final blow. Lunging forward, Valpurga clashes her sword with the orc leaders. With a smile, he prepares to show his true power. Using his special ability, he attacks with a strike that kicks up dust. Valpurgis dodges and lunges forward. In an instant, she cuts him in half with her sword. Still in midair, he says it was a good fight before vanishing. With the general defeated, the orc army is left without its main commander. Seeing their captain fall, the orcs begin to retreat from the battlefield. Shocked, he can't believe she defeated the commander in a single blow. Impressed, he thinks she's incredible, just as expected of Dame Valpurgis. And with their leader defeated, the orc army retreats in fear. Mounted on her horse, she turns and asks if he is the leader. Extending her hand, she says she felt his courage from afar. Shaking her hand, he introduces himself and receives a notification. Thanking Valpurgis, he says he is no longer Elector Steel. With his head down, he says he should have been more cautious before. Just then, his soldiers approach, offering the flag he captured. He sees that his credibility among the mercenaries has increased. Remembering the battle, he sees his men fighting to protect him. The soldiers stand together, defending him from the orc enemy's attacks. Shouting, they struggle to hold the line and let no one pass. Seeing the scene, Jae-woo simply says he understands the situation. Jae-woo shouts while holding the flag, declaring that it belongs to him. Back at the tavern, Francois's plaque is shown on the wall. At the door, a little girl shouts Charlotte's name into the bar. Scared, she runs inside, searching for someone among the customers. At the table, Charlotte eats quietly while watching him intently. Worried, the girl asks if he got hurt in another war. Chaltz then explains that Charlotte is only 15. Surprising everyone, he reveals that the girl is actually Charlotte's younger sister. Angry, she blames him for having to pay her brother's medical bills, but Charlotte says it was thanks to the leader that they returned alive. Then, all the mercenaries celebrate and thank him for the victory. Awkwardly, he tells everyone to just eat, finding the situation embarrassing. Suddenly, Valpurgis appears at the tavern door, calling for Jae-woo. Awkwardly, he just smiles upon seeing the knight before him. Arriving breathlessly, she calls out to him, surprising everyone in the bar. Changing scenes, she rides towards the Harfheim forward base. Arriving there, she informs him that the Elector has summoned him for a reward. As they ride, he notices she seems different from the Valpurgis he knew. She comments on how happy she is, asking him to call her a friend. Pointing to the soldiers, she says they were all saved thanks to his efforts. Saying they are citizens of the Empire, she asks what other reason he needs. Kneeling, he finally understands the weight of his actions in that moment. Remembering all the times, he sees her fighting against enemies. Realizing she hasn't changed, he just continues to observe her ways. With a smile, he says that only their relationship has changed. Walking towards the tent, he says he is now just a mercenary. Upon arriving, she introduces him to the prince, who was waiting inside. Looking at him, the prince asks if he is the man they call Jae-woo. Introducing himself, he says he is Elector Steel, the guardian Philip. He turns, showing his true face to the mercenary before him. Bowing, he says it is an honor to meet a true guardian. With a smile, Philip says he is the man called the Reaper. Shouting with excitement, the soldiers celebrate the recognition of his bravery. Saying that a man of merit deserves recognition, he rewards him with money. Kneeling on the ground, he promises to repay all his generosity. Satisfied, the Elector asks if he needs anything else. Turning, Jae-woo says he would like to regroup with his comrades. Granting the request, Valpurgis tells him to take a wagon and use it. But the Elector calls out to him, asking if he has anything else to say. With his head down, he says he would normally back down at this point. But as he lifts his face, he reveals a serious and determined gaze. Valpurgis just watches the scene, waiting to see what he will do. With a slight smile, Jae-woo prepares to ask the elector a question. Addressing him as Your Grace, he asks to pose a question about the war. With an intimidating look, the elector tells him to go ahead. Staring back at him, Jae-woo asks what his thoughts are on that war. Faced with the question, the entire room falls silent. Kneeling beside Valpurgis, he awaits the elector's response. With a smile, he remarks that everyone is baffled by his question. Looking at him, the elector asks what he thinks of the war. Replying, he says he can't see the full picture yet. One of the men laughs and says he's not qualified to advise them. Laughing, the man suggests he must have just overheard some rumor. With a serious expression, the elector simply addresses Her Grace. Valpurgis then says it's best to hear him out at least once. Outraged, the counselor shouts, saying the elector is an important man. Calling him uncle, the elector asks him to show her some respect. Watching the scene, he realizes that not even the elector can ignore her. Then the elector faces him and commands him to explain his view of the war. Sighing, he prepares to give his answer to the elector. Looking at the elector, he warns that an ambush is on its way. Questioning him, the elector asks if he has any basis for that claim. He then explains that the Demon King's strategies involve ambushes and betrayals. Recalling past wars, he cites the conflict with the Kingdom of Toa. Furthermore, the battle with Marquis Anhalt was also an example of this. With a firm gaze, he prepares to continue his explanation. He warns that they must not ignore his strategy of betrayal either. At that moment, the image of a masked traitor appears, reinforcing his theory. He then suggests the possibility of a traitor among them. With a smile, the elector says one can never be too cautious. Crossing his legs, he repeats the word caution with a mocking tone. Calling him bold, the elector glares at him with a threatening look. He warns him to know his place, as his life depends on him. Before Valpurgis can intervene, he says he gets the message. Valpurgis just watches him, worried about the elector's reaction. Bowing, he asks for forgiveness for overstepping with his words. Then he turns and starts to walk out of the tent. Finding it all suspicious, he notes that the elector seems overly arrogant this time. With a suspicious glance, he is sure something is different now. Analyzing the facts, he lists everything that has changed in his current playthrough. Thinking it all over, he concludes that the situation is different from his other attempts. With his back turned, he's called by someone who catches up to him outside. Turning around, he sees Valpurgis, who ran to catch up with him. Panting, she leans on her knees, trying to catch her breath. Once she recovers, she says she finally managed to reach him in time. Surprised, he asks if she ran because she was worried, finding the scene adorable. Apologizing for Philip, she says she'll do whatever he wants to make it up to him. Impressed by the offer, he asks if he can ask for anything he wants. Removing her helmet, she tells him not to underestimate her, as she is a noble. Nervous about the situation, he asks if she also has many clothes. Adjusting his cloak, he prepares to answer her question. With a smile, he glances to the side before making his request. He then says he'd like a writing quill and a pistol. Surprised, she asks if that's all, since it's a unique opportunity. Looking at the sky, he says he dreams of being a knight. Not understanding, she asks why he is crying, and he answers. Impressed, she says she's never seen anyone as selfless as him before. Changing the subject, she says this is no place for this conversation. Pulling him by the hand, she leads him away, telling him to follow. Unable to react, he just follows her, calling her name. Embarrassed by the situation, he just stares at the knight in front of him. With a blushing face, he continues to follow her through the military camp. Sometime later, the battle to reclaim Harfheim Hill begins. On the battlefield, Philip shouts that this is the day of his victory. On the other side, Petsamut tells someone to shut the elector up. One of the servants reports that the war preparations are complete. Annoyed, Petsamut asks if he's bringing up the same subject again. The servant insists, saying she is cruel and they shouldn't capture the elector. Suddenly, Petsamut's ring starts to glow. Receiving a call, answering it, he hears a woman's voice say it's her. On the other end, the woman reports that she's ready to move. With a serious look, he tells her to stay sharp and do a good job. Glancing to the side, he prepares to give her another order. He then asks her to take it easy this time during the battle. Annoyed, he shouts that she always goes too far. With a smile, she approaches and tries to calm the situation. Stepping on a soldier, she says she always goes easy on them. With a threatening look, she assures him she never goes too far. Recalling the conversation, the servant despairs at what has happened. Riding a horse, he gallops quickly through the dark forest. Impressed by its speed, he notices the horse's name is Philly. For just a spare horse, he's amazed by the animal's quality. Besides the horse, he shows off a very expensive healing potion he received. Suddenly, a massive explosion erupts behind him, catching his attention. Seeing the battle, he says he needs to hurry to make it in time. He knows the elector can't handle that war alone. Watching the elector draw his sword, he says there's a good chance. At this, the two traitors laugh, mocking the elector's situation. Surrounded by enemies, he realizes he'll be betrayed at any moment. Seeing his uncle, he asks why he committed such a betrayal. With a smirk, The traitor says he doesn't understand the situation. Explaining the plan, he says he's cooperating with Pessimit and the Emperor. Revealing the plan, he says he's going to arrest Philip for treason. Facing Philip, he asks what he's going to do about the situation. With a smile, the traitor asks if he's finally getting it. Shocked, Philip says no one would believe such a ridiculous lie. As he stepped on, he's told he needs to accept the reality before him. Looking at Philip, Pessimit calls him a delusional lunatic. Then he orders his men to tie him up immediately and take him away. Kneeling, Philip begs them to stay away, but he's ignored. Trembling with fear, he says he's a noble elector, but no one cares. Suddenly, Valpurgis appears, flying in and surprising Pessimut and his men. She charges forward and lands a powerful blow to Pessimut's face. Staggering back, he yells in anger from the hit. Seizing the chance, she orders the troops to get the elector away from there. Seeing Philip flee, the traitor warns that he's getting away. Pointing in the direction, Pessimut tells Hexax to go after him immediately. Sitting on a prisoner, Hexax says she was just having a little fun. Ordered to work, she springs into action, saying she will obey her lord. With a smile, Hexax says it's mealtime for the boys. Then a pack of zombie dogs is summoned, ready to attack. Looking at the scene, she orders the dogs to chew them up frantically. At this, the dogs charge at high speed, surrounding Jae-woo. Surrounded, Jae-woo prepares to fight the zombie dogs. Analyzing her tactic, he says he knew she would use the dogs. He explains that she uses them to tire out and devour her opponents. Suddenly, one of the dogs leaps toward him, ready to strike. Calling the tactic disgusting, he attacks the dog charging from his side. Upon seeing Hexax, he yells that he already knows her fighting style. Seeing only a few dogs, he deduces the rest went after Philip. Ignoring Philip, he says what matters is protecting Valpurgis. Shouting, he charges forward to attack, saying he needs to hurry. Galloping, he and Valpurgis fight together to escape the ambush. Annoyed, Philip says his mana control is completely out of whack. Mounted on his horse, he calls Pessimut's tactic disgusting. Suddenly, one of the zombie dogs leaps toward him to attack. Looking to the side, he just watches the creature approach. She then charges forward and cuts down another dog, protecting him. Falling back, she prepares to keep fighting the other creatures. Just then, Valpurgis appears and kicks the dog, saving him from the attack. Worried, she asks if he's okay, and he just confirms. Entering the forest, she warns that this is uncharted territory. Suddenly, he sees something and desperately shouts for her grace. One of the soldiers is being attacked, begging to be saved. Seeing the scene, he shouts for her grace but gets hit. She then yells for him to hang on, but she's interrupted. Grabbed from behind, she screams as she's dragged away. Scared, he suggests they just leave the other one behind. As she's attacked, she's told that their lives have different levels of importance. Shocked, she wonders if that isn't a noble's duty. Gritting her teeth, she says, if only she had acted sooner. Remembering the meeting, she regrets not listening to Jae-woo. The elector regrets it, saying he could have handled the situation. With his head down, he says it's all their fault for ignoring Jae-woo. Suddenly, Valpurgis is attacked by Hexax, who grabs her by the neck. Hexax then charges and clashes with Valpurgis in a new attack. The elector is saved, but shouts her grace's name. The two face off, as Valpurgis prepares for the next blow. She is then thrown far away, crashing hard in the middle of the forest. Lying on the ground, she says they are completely lost. Looking to the side, he just watches the scene with a fearful gaze. Fallen and injured, she can't get up to keep fighting. Hexax disagrees. With a whip in her hand, she says, "You have to be strong." Facing Valpurgis, she asks if she's right, calling her sister. Furious, Valpurgis screams for her to take back what she said immediately. She explains that the title of Prince Elector is a critical position in the Empire. With a smile, Hexax orders her men to continue tracking the Elector. She then points out that Valpurgis also has the blood of a Prince Elector. With a taunting look, she just stares at her sister, saying nothing. Realizing the trap, Valpurgis understands she's been caught. Valpurgis then charges forward and tries to land a powerful blow on Hexax, but Hexax dodges it effortlessly. Valpurgis despairs, seeing her attack miss. Then, a whip cracks against her back. Laughing, Hexax says her scream just makes her want to torment her more. She then begins to whip Valpurgis relentlessly, laughing at the situation. On the ground, Valpurgis tries to shield herself from the continuous strikes. Under attack, she calls out for Jae-woo, begging for help to escape. Thinking of him, she says that for her, this is the end. Shouting, Hexax says the fight isn't over yet, and prepares herself. Suddenly, a gunshot echoes through the forest, stopping her in her tracks. Surprised, she wonders if that was really a gunshot. Looking up, she sees one of the hounds falling from the sky. The zombie hound hits the ground, completely defeated by the shot. Seeing this, she's caught off guard by an attack from behind. With a powerful blow, he hits her square in the face with all his strength. The impact sends her flying, making her crash to the ground. Approaching her, he prepares to continue the fight head-on. Kneeling and crying, she can only begin to call his name. With tears in her eyes, she looks at him, completely moved by his help. Impressed, she asks if he's a hero for what he's done. Suddenly, she faints and collapses, exhausted from the battle. He catches her in his arms, preventing her from hitting the ground. Sitting on the floor, he holds Valpurgis, protecting her. Annoyed, Hexax says he's no ordinary guy. Hiding his pistol, he prepares for the confrontation against Hexax. Holding the gun, he says she's still the same as always. With a smile, she asks if he knows her from somewhere. Pointing the gun, he tells her not to call him that. Laughing, she says his gun has a longer range. With the whip in her hand, she warns him that he needs to aim well. Placing his finger on the trigger, he prepares to shoot her, but she dodges the shot, lunging quickly toward him. Suddenly, the whip coils around his neck, pulling him with force. Being pulled, he tries to break free, but the grip tightens. Tugging him closer, she yells for him to come here, a smile on her face. Angrily, he grits his teeth, ready for the next move. As he gets close, she delivers a powerful headbutt to his face. The headbutt sends him flying backward. With the whip in hand, she yells that the fight isn't over. She then attacks him with the whip, but he dodges with agility, and Jae-woo charges toward her. Surprised, she wonders if he's trying to close the distance between them. Dodging the strikes, he gets closer and closer to her. Seeing him approach, she starts to panic. She can't believe he dodged everything and managed to get so close. Wielding the pistol, he prepares to fire at point-blank range. Angrily, she yells that she won't let him shoot so easily. At that moment, he sidesteps, surprising her. Pulling out a dagger, he says he has a surprise for her. Turning, she feels the blow and is completely shocked by the attack. Holding the dagger, he asks her how that strike tastes. Furious, she says she lost an eye because she was focused on the gun. Angrily, she yells that she needs time to recover from the blow. With that, she sprouts bat wings and prepares to fly. Flying away, she says she has to go as she's busy. Taunting her, he asks if she's afraid to continue the fight. Laughing, she says his taunts won't work, as she doesn't fight up close. But he replies that today, he's a long-range DPS. Laughing, she says she can easily dodge his bullets in the air. She realizes her sense of distance is completely off. With a perfect shot, he hits her dead on, knocking her out of the sky. Seeing the smoke from the gun, he says it's just as he thought. Lying on the ground, she hears that you have to shoot bats. With the gun in his hand, he prepares for the next step. Standing over her, he remarks how that pervert really gave him a hard time. Then he gets ready to see what kind of loot she dropped. Just then, a voice calls him brother, coming directly from the fallen figure. With a new appearance, the person asks if he's really going to kill her. Crying, the figure just stares at him, waiting for an answer. Holding the dagger, he tells her to cut the crap and die. Annoyed, she just screams in frustration at being utterly defeated. With a final cry, the figure finally vanishes into the forest. A system notification then confirms he has defeated the Whip of Destruction. Then a list of all the items she dropped is displayed. After collecting everything, he kneels beside her unconscious body. Picking up the potion, he says it's a good thing he didn't sell it earlier. Rushing to Valpurgis, he finds her on the ground and calls her name. Looking at her, he prepares to use the potion and save her. As he gets closer, he swears he will definitely save her. Looking at the potion, he prepares to use the healing item. The item's description then warns that it must be applied directly. Sitting beside her, he realizes what he needs to do to save her. Looking at her armor, he understands he must apply the potion directly. Nervously, he tells himself it's just a medical procedure. Holding the potion, he gets ready to apply it, yelling at himself internally. Recalling his past, he says his real name is Han Jae-woo. He remembers his mother collapsing from overwork just to support him. At just 18 years old, he found himself all alone in the world. A man then confronts him, complaining that he was left with a debt. With no choice, he started taking jobs to earn money. Receiving a payment, he thanks the man for the money. Counting the bills, he confirms the amount and puts the money away. He then warns the man that this is just a temporary solution. With an irritated look, he listens to the man, who doesn't seem to care. Nervously, he says this week's mission should yield 10 million. Surprised, the man asks how he earned so much money from playing just once. Asked about the game, he says its name is Guardian of Humanity. Excited, the man says he can't believe he's never heard of the game. He also points out the incredible designs of the game's female characters. Holding a globe, he shouts that the game has over 1 billion users. He explains that high-level players easily make millions in the game. Grabbing him, the man questions if he really earns all that from the game. Excited, the man invites him to try the game and see for himself. Refusing, he says he's busy and doesn't have time for that. Suddenly, he gets a surprising message on his phone. The message says that the day's request has been canceled, leaving him free. Logging into the game, he says he ended up there on a whim. Looking at the sky, he's impressed by the technology and realism. Walking through the city, he notices how real the streets and people seem. Seeing the people, he wonders if he's really inside a game. Spotting an apple stall, he approaches the vendor. The vendor calls out to people as he observes the displayed fruit. Up close, he notices the NPC's face looks too real. The vendor, now grabbed, shouts for him to let go immediately. Annoyed, The vendor tells him to back off if he doesn't have any money. The system then shows he has only 10 florins in his account. Seeing a child, he says he doesn't have money to buy anything, and he's confused by what he's seeing. The mother then pulls the boy away, telling him it's time to leave. Calling out to the vendor, he asks the price of a single apple. With a smile, he hands the purchased apple to the little boy. Thanking him, the mother and son get ready to leave. Thinking about the price, he notes that 1 florin seems to be worth a lot. Waving back, he tells the boy to always listen to his mother. Waving, he says the scene brings back many good memories. He then remembers begging his mother for fried chicken. With a smile, he looks away, thinking about the past. Seeing the happy boy, he says the game is charming. When reality became overwhelming, the game helped him relax. By completing quests, he started logging into the game more often. Through the game, he could escape his daily problems. He would then recharge and return to his real life, but he always got tired and ended up returning to the game. Back in the present, he hears a voice calling his name. Introducing herself, Valpurgis says she's heard he has many skills. She then invites him to hunt wild boars in the Havel forest. Accepting the challenge, he says he was planning on eating boar meat anyway. Impressed, she praises him for taking down the animal in 1 hit. Praising him, she says she didn't even get a chance to join the fight. She then invites him to form a party and play together. A system notification pops up with a party request from Valpurgis. Suspicious, he asks if this isn't another contract to make him work. Awkwardly, she asks if he has trust issues with her. Admitting he does, he hears her say that he's fun. Offering a recommendation, she says he can become a knight. At another time, a crowd shouts his name, cheering his arrival. Seeing the scene, a man congratulates him for coming so far. Looking at him, Valpurgis asks how he feels. He says the achievement isn't his alone, and thanks her. Showing him the crowd, she says those are the people he saved. At that moment, a white dove flies by, scattering feathers in the air. Pointing to the people, she says they are his loyal citizens. With a smile, she just watches the scene, pleased with the outcome. Several white doves fly over the city, celebrating the great victory. Impressed, she says he is truly someone special and unique. She says she's never seen someone with such dedication to everything. Asked for the reason, he just thinks for a moment before answering. With a bruised face, he says it's because he loves this world. Jokingly, she says he shouldn't have taken off her armor. Riding on horseback, they prepare to arrive at Valpurga's convent. She says she owes him more than words can express. With a smile, he says he eagerly awaits his reward. As they ride, she tells him the convent will reward him for his deeds. Upon arriving, they are faced with the convent's imposing structure. Annoyed, Valpurgis shouts that he is a guest of honor at the convent. Kneeling, a nun simply says there's nothing to be done. With a serious look, she warns them that the convent is on lockdown. The scene changes. Night falls at an inn near Rheinfelden. Inside the inn, the second-floor hallway is very quiet. Lying in bed, Jae-woo regrets the situation as he wanted the angel's heart. This artifact, the angel's heart, is his main objective. As an ancient relic, the item belongs to the Valpurga convent. Blessed by a goddess, the item can call a soul back. Basically, the artifact can grant its wielder an extra life. Back in his room, he turns over, saying he really needs the item. Just then, someone calls his name. He recognizes Valpurgis standing in the doorway. Entering the room, she apologizes for his simple accommodations. He then asks what she's doing there, and she replies that she's been thinking. Valpurgis warns that the matter is serious, asking for absolute secrecy. She then says she knew she could trust him with this mission. With a serious expression, she prepares to reveal the truth. Holding his hand, she tells him that the High Abbess has fallen into darkness. Confused, he says he met Angela, but she explains the abbess is Margarita. Realizing the betrayal, he immediately suspects a traitor must be involved. Shocked by the news, he puts a hand to his head, not believing it. He says he thought she had died a long time ago. It turns out Margarita possesses a strength unparalleled in the Empire's history. She was the one who transformed the convent into a true military force. Changing his attitude, he smiles and says they need to save her. Suddenly, he leaps out of bed, startling Valpurgis with his reaction. Confused, she asks what's gotten into him to act like that. He then confirms if the High Abbess was truly struck by the darkness. Stating he knows the darkness, he tells her they must go immediately. The scene changes. We see the Valpurga convent under a heavy downpour. In a flashback, Angela questions Valpurgis about his knowledge of the darkness. Valpurgis then confirms the information to her in the training room. She insists that Jae-woo is a trustworthy man, asking for a chance. With her hands clasped, Angela seems to be seriously pondering the situation. Back in the present, Angela faces the two, saying he already knows too much. The tension in the air startles Jae-woo. Leaning on the table, she warns that the incident was caused by a traitor. She then questions her for wanting to trust a stranger now. Angela orders them to escort him out, saying he isn't listening. With nothing to say, Valpurgis just stands there in silence. Just then, Jae-woo smiles at Valpurgis. He then mentions he heard the abyss is in critical condition. With a smile, he asks her to at least hear what he has to say. He then reveals he has read the Gospel of the Seven Demons. Shocked, she asks how he knows about the Book of St. Anthony. He explains that the book details everything about the darkness and the demons. Angela then says she can't believe what she just heard. Slamming the table, she demands to know how he knows about that cursed book. Asking her to trust him, he says he understands how to oppose the darkness. With a smile on his face, he faces Angela, who looks very apprehensive. Finally agreeing, she demands he take this secret to his grave. She then threatens him, saying that if he tells anyone about this. At that, she rests her hand on the table and shatters the stone without effort. To finish the threat, she says she will bury him at the bottom of the river. Guided by the nuns, they walk silently down a long corridor. Walking there, he wonders what kind of crazy convent this place is. Regarding Margareta, he tells himself that she must be strong. Seeing his state, Valpurgis asks if he's okay, and he replies. He asks Valpurgis if her goal is that physique, but she denies it. Stopping in front of a door, one of the nuns announces they have arrived. Angela warns him about the demonic energy, telling him not to go crazy. Ordering the other nuns to wait outside, she prepares herself. She then turns to the door and says she's opening it now. As the door opens, a large amount of energy bursts through the crack. Feeling the pressure, a system notification warns of mental damage. He then asks if Valpurgis is okay, and she says she is. With his mind protected by the system, he replies that he's fine too. Angela points inside and introduces the person who is the High Abbess. Looking at the figure inside, Jae-woo is completely shocked by the scene. He remembers they said she was the strongest in history. As the High Abbess of the Valpurga convent, her fame was immense. Inside, the young Margareta stands amidst the dark energy. Not understanding a thing, he asks if she was kidnapped and talks about her strength. Angela tells him to take the situation seriously, explaining its gravity. She says they've already tried everything, but nothing has worked. Listening to the explanation, Jae-woo maintains a serious look on his face. Angela reveals that he is their last hope to save Margareta. Just then, one of the nuns grabs him, begging him to save the abbess. Asking to be let go, he warns that he can't breathe properly. After catching his breath, he notices she looks very ill. It turns out that because she is a priestess, the darkness consumes her faster. Touching her face, he points to the black veins as proof. He then tells them to calm down, as there is a solution. Desperate, the nun shakes him and demands to know the method. Being released abruptly, he stands there trying to catch his breath. He takes a deep breath and composes himself after all the commotion. Looking at Angela, he says the method to save her is simple. The solution, according to him, is to use the convent's sacred relic. Hearing his proposal, Angela falls silent for a moment, analyzing it. She then asks if by treasure, he means the angel's heart. Understanding the plan, she deduces he wants to transfer the curse to himself. He confirms this, saying that as a mercenary, he can survive the process. With a confident smile, he claims to be the most qualified person for the job. Angela pauses, seeming to ponder the whole situation he's laid out. However, she warns him that this method is forbidden by the abbess's order. Her message stated that no one else should sacrifice themselves in her place. Otherwise, she promised to turn the entire empire upside down. Besides, the curse is one of darkness, with unknown causes and symptoms. Kneeling, she asks if he truly thinks he could survive it. Angela warns him that this curse will torment him forever. Valpurgis agrees with her, but he reassures her, saying he'll be fine. Looking at Angela, he states that this might actually be the best option. He says that because he knows darkness, he isn't vulnerable like a cleric. Faced with his arguments, Angela watches him with a very serious expression. With a smile, he asks her to admit the idea is tempting. Angela then sighs, showing she's in a difficult dilemma. Deciding to take the risk, she warns him there will be trouble, but allows him to proceed. Then, the angel's heart is brought in, a ring that can revive the soul. He holds the ring, analyzing it for a moment before continuing. Valpurgis tries to stop him, saying he can still back out, but Angela interrupts her, saying they should just watch his decision. With the ring in his hand, he announces that he's ready for the ritual to begin. The transfer ritual then begins, focusing directly on his body. He places his hand on Margarita's forehead to start the complicated process. As the transfer begins, the curse's energy flows into his body. As they watch, Angela and Valpurgis are surrounded by the energy released from the ritual. Filling the entire room, the dark energy completely envelops the scene. Inside a cosmic space, he finds himself standing on a small planet. Looking around, he asks if this is the true realm of darkness. Just then, then, a mysterious voice asks who dares to summon it there. He then shouts his name, demanding that Margaretta's curse be removed. In response, the voice calls him a pathetic mortal, unable to see it. Then a giant eye appears and says it has no business with him. Ordering him to disappear, the entity stares him down with its giant eye. As he's attacked, a system notification announces that his soul is protected. Confused, the creature asks why it can't extract his soul. He yells for it to shut up and transfer the curse to him. Threatening him, the entity says it will extract the souls of everyone nearby. Realizing the threat, he decides to start playing dirty too. He then yells that he's already read the Gospel of the Seven Demons. Making a face, he says he traded the book for a dog. He keeps taunting it, saying the book is probably being sold for cheap. Threatening the entity, he says he'll expose all its secrets. The entity finally agrees to grant his request for the transfer, but it warns that there's a condition for the deal to happen. Suddenly, a system notification pops up right in front of him. It's a new quest. He must kill the demon kings of that group. Seeing the list, the targets include Kulak, Farza, Herzamok, and Amor. He then says the mission is a bit much for him to handle. Losing patience, the entity tells him to receive the power if he is able. As he receives the power, his body is completely engulfed by the energy of darkness. Feeling the pain, he screams that this wasn't part of the deal. The entity replies that nothing comes for free, telling him to endure the pain. He screams and writhes as the curse's power consumes him. Still screaming, he warns that the entity will regret this. Afterward, the system informs him that his attributes and skills have been updated. In the end, the system screen announces that he has died. Back at the convent, a bird lands on a branch outside. Suddenly, Jae-woo wakes up screaming, terrified by what just happened. Sitting up in bed, he wonders if he really managed to come back to life. Looking at the ring on his hand, he confirms that everything worked. He then starts laughing in a strange, uncontrolled way. With a crazed look in his eyes, he keeps laughing without stopping for a second. He declares himself the king of necromancy, able to command death dragons. With his new power, he becomes known as Cold Blood. Facing the window, he yells that he's now number one. He smiles, saying the world finally recognizes him. Just then, Valpurgis runs into the room and finds him collapsed on the floor. Crying, she asks if he hit his head, but he says no. She explains she brought him to his quarters after the ritual ended. Sitting on the bed, she scolds him for being so reckless. She continues asking if he has any idea how worried she was. He stares at her for a moment before speaking. Then he places his hand on the armor on her leg. Apologizing, he says he won't do that again. He then firmly promises he'll keep his word. She tells him not to forget what he just promised. After their conversation, the two of them look out the huge window together. Suddenly, a loud noise from outside interrupts the moment. Going out to see, he asks the nuns what happened. Angela then turns towards him and greets him formally. Seeing the destroyed area, he asks if someone cut down the trees. Just then, a giant, dark structure hits the ground hard. A huge hand appears, and a voice says he's finally awake. The voice explains it just wanted to stretch after lying down for so long. The voice then greets and thanks him, calling him its savior. Revealing her form, she introduces herself as the High Abbess of the convent. Moving the tree, Margareta throws it to the ground with great force. Revealing her form, she introduces herself as the High Abbess, Margareta. Then she winks and says he can just call her Mari. Descending the stone staircase, Valpurgis and Jae-woo advance with great caution. Jae-woo reflects that Philip has likely escaped the forest by now. He reveals that with his new power, he had planned to secretly eliminate Philip, but he understands that the chances are low without the angel's heart. Full of excitement, Margareta shouts that it's time for a new adventure. Angela asks for some decency, but Margareta says that's a problem for the nobility. Watching the scene, Jae-woo asks Valpurgis if she's always this energetic. Hearing his comment, Valpurgis just turns her head in their direction. He then whispers that she's the youngest and strongest warrior in the convent. Suddenly, Margareta appears and asks what the two of them are doing alone. In response, Jae-woo just gives a sly smile at her teasing. They finally arrive at what Jae-woo identifies as Valpurga's warehouse. Inside, Margareta says the place has the perfect items for him. Holding his hands, she offers to go on a date with him. She then tells him not to worry because she won't try anything. Excited, Margareta pushes the door open and tells them to hurry inside. Then, a huge door opens, revealing a brightly lit passageway. Outside, Jae-woo says that everything went well and the hunt for Philip is about to begin. Changing scenes, the camera shows the exterior of the convent and the surrounding trees. Now in the stable, he asks his horse what it thinks of the new gear. Wearing his new outfit, he receives the information on his S and A rank items. As his horse licks him, a voice asks if he's leaving already. Valpurgis appears and asks if he's going to leave without saying goodbye, inviting him for a walk. As they walk, She comments that it feels like they've known each other for a long time because of everything he's done. She then recalls the battles against the orcs and the final confrontation with Hexax. Recalling another moment, she says his help in the forest was invaluable. Mounted on her horse, Valpurgis thanks him for his words of encouragement. Back in the present, the two continue to walk together through the forest in silence. She says he doesn't seem very curious, and he asks about what. With a smile, she tells him not to play dumb. She then reveals she was referring to her face under the helmet. With a nervous smile, he says he figured there was a reason for it. That's why, he explains. He never asked about it. She tells him that she actually has a large scar caused by a curse. She continues, saying that not even she knows what the curse is. She reveals that because of it, people call her the Ugly Knight. Looking at him, she asks if he would like to see her face. She then admits to being nervous, but says she trusts him enough to see her. A little awkwardly, he just waits to see what she'll do. Removing her helmet, she asks how she looks and if he thinks she's ugly. With an apprehensive expression, she awaits his answer without looking away. Shocked by what he sees, he covers his mouth, unable to say a word. A bit anxiously, she asks him to say something to her. Desperately, he shouts that she's very beautiful, leaving her quite relieved. He then realizes she took off her helmet, something that had never happened before. She tells him she has something to give him, making him very nervous. Showing him a necklace, she explains it's a treasure from her family. Handing him the item, she says it's a symbol of her eternal presence. Still unsure how to react, he just stares at the gift. He then repeats that she will always be with him, holding the item. With an embarrassed smile, he promises to cherish it. She then replies that it seals a promise between them. Trying to say goodbye, she says she's leaving, and he wishes her luck. Afterward, they insist the other go first, creating an impasse. They continue to argue over who will go first, which ends up annoying even the horse. Suddenly, system windows announce that the romance route has been unlocked. Changing scenes, birds fly away in the now dark forest. His horse stares at him, seemingly wondering what to do with such an owner. He then starts to wonder if, at this rate, they'll end up getting married. But then he notices the smell of blood very close by. Arriving at the scene, he finds several fallen soldiers and laments the end of the good mood. Seeing the state of the field, he concludes that the fight between Philip and Pizamut was intense. It's clear they are in no condition to continue the battle. Then he tightens his grip on the hilt of his new sword. Mounted on his horse, he says he'll need to search the area. Just then, a system window appears, showing a newly unlocked skill. With a sly grin, he comments that this is very interesting. Next, he prepares to activate his dagger's special ability. Ordering them to become his limbs, he summons an army of vampires. He then gives them their first mission, to search for and track Philip throughout the area. Pointing to one of the female vampires, he gives her a direct order. He then orders them to gather all the military uniforms scattered on the ground. Changing scenes, the image shows a small village at night. There, Philip and his two guards appear, completely exhausted and out of breath. He then shouts that it's unforgivable for Pezimut to have left him in that situation. Claiming it's an emergency, a guard tries to grab the bag Philip is holding. Suddenly, a voice starts calling out Prince Philip's name. Introducing himself as the mercenary from before, Jae-woo shouts that he has come to get him. He then shouts for all to hear that his name is Jae-woo. Philip says he remembers him, but the guards urge caution. Furious, Philip calls his guards useless and strikes one of them. He then asks what they were doing while Jae-woo came to the rescue. Looking at his guards, he says they are pathetic worms. He announces that they will all be demoted to the mercenary subordinates later. Running towards him, Philip shouts that he's here and asks for help. Surrounded by his vampires, Jae-woo says he missed him and that he fought hard to get there. Philip thanks him for bringing such reliable reinforcements and promises a reward. Without any warning, the vampires summoned by Jae-woo attack the prince's guards. Seeing the sudden attack, Philip freezes, unable to understand the betrayal. With a sinister smile, Jae-woo says he doesn't need him anymore. Surrounded by the vampires, Philip stares at Jae-woo with great determination. He then says that Jae-woo is just a pup who doesn't fear the tiger. Furious with the betrayal, he yells that he's been raising a mutt all this time. With a mocking smile, Jae-woo agrees and says he'll bite someone like Philip. The taunt is enough for Philip to prepare his attack. He then gets ready to use the first form of his sword art. Unleashing a crescent slash, he attacks Jae-woo and all the vampires at once, but the vampires throw themselves in front to block the powerful blow. Seeing this, Jae-woo concludes that his servants can't handle this alone. He then says, fighting like this will just waste his mana for nothing. Turning to his vampires, he orders them all to retreat immediately. Philip then taunts him, asking if it hurts to see his lackeys dying right in front of him. Unfazed, Jae-woo replies that he's not like a certain someone. He charges forward, shouting that his heart is as vast as an endless plain. The collision between them destroys part of the surrounding scenery. During the clash, they both stare at each other with a defiant smile, and then Philip throws a chair at Jae-woo. Jae-woo has to back away to avoid getting hit by the chair. Jae-woo then says, "That's the Elector's steel. his sword style. He says that despite its elegance, this style hides a deadly counterattack. Known as a master of counterattacks, Philip prepares to continue. Philip asks if Jae-woo thinks he can betray him and live in peace. In response, Jae-woo says he has a good friendship with the nuns, but Philip warns that he's not afraid of militant religious groups. Stomping his foot on the ground, he readies himself for another attack. He then announces he will use the second form of his sword art. Raising the sword with both hands, he prepares to strike. With an expression of pure fury, he focuses completely on the attack. Readying his dagger, Jae-woo gets into position to defend against the incoming blow. Even weakened, Philip glares at Jae-woo, who watches him without moving. He then yells that all the internal injuries he suffered are taking their toll. With a furious look, Jae-woo shouts that his melodrama ends here. Without hesitation, he lunges forward and lands a direct blow to Philip's stomach. Struck by the blow, the prince is thrown back and spits on the ground. Jae-woo then warns that the one he should truly fear isn't the nuns. It's him. On his knees, Philip laments not being in better shape to face someone like him. He then asks why Jae-woo wants to kill him, saying he should be loyal. With contempt, Jae-woo asks if he doesn't understand what he did wrong. He begins to explain that Philip ignored the soldiers and mercilessly discarded Valpurgis. Then he asks how many people died because of his actions. Angrily, he questions how Philip can still call himself an elector. Jae-woo just watches as Philip desperately begs him to reconsider. Crying, he shouts that everything he did was for the people, and asks who will feed them. He adds that his absence will be a chance for others to attack. Nodding, he admits that Philip has a point. With a smile, he says he'll give the prince a chance. Showing a potion, he explains it's a healing one, and he'll give it in exchange. Desperate, Philip asks what the offer is, and promises to give anything. Getting close, he tells Philip to kneel and beg for Valpurgis's forgiveness. Surprised, Philip asks if she's alive and accepts, offering a donation. Handing over the flask, he says he likes the effort and will give him the whole bottle. Without a second thought, Philip starts drinking the entire liquid at once. After drinking, the empty vial falls to the ground and shatters into pieces. Seeing Philip choke, Jae-woo asks with a smile if it tasted good. Then, it's revealed that the potion was the dragon Ferguma's poison. With a tear in his eye, Philip calls Jae-woo a bastard for the betrayal. Grabbing his own neck, he screams, asking how Jae-woo dares to mock him. With a smile, Jae-woo says the poison can even take down demon kings. Furious, Philip draws a dagger and charges, screaming for Jae-woo to die. Jae-woo just watches the prince's charge without moving from his spot, but one of his vampires appears and intercepts the attack against him. Seeing who it is, Philip is completely shocked and speechless. He then asks if it's Piffenheim and how he survived that day. Piffenheim recalls being abandoned by him to die among the monsters. He explains that he was given a second life and now serves Jae-woo. He then says the prince's arrogance always put everyone in danger. With the sword at his neck, he warns that it's time to pay with his life. Completely terrified, Philip starts to cry in the face of his imminent execution. Suddenly, a warning window appears, asking if he will allow the death. The system informs him that killing the Guardian might hinder the game's progression. Meanwhile, Philip remains on his knees, threatened by the sword. Jae-woo gets annoyed at the thought of sparing the prince for this. Not caring, he says he doesn't want him, and orders Piffenheim to finish him off. Obeying the order, Piffenheim raises his sword to execute the prince. Suddenly, the system displays several errors and warns that the Guardian has been eliminated. Then, a window informs him that a secret scenario has been unlocked. To obtain the Transcendent class, he now needs to eliminate all the Guardians. With a smile, he says the system didn't expect this move. Then, a new target is marked on the map, indicating the next location. Changing scenes, the image shows planet Earth as seen from outer space, and Aquila watches all the events with a hint of boredom. Watching with amusement, she seems entertained by what she's seeing. Touching a monitor, she comments that he's finally broken one of the seals. She then notices his expression, saying he's full of confidence. While looking at a cell phone, she says she wants to see a little more destruction. Then she turns and warns that this is just the beginning of everything. He collects his rewards, gaining 2 new skills, 1 S rank and 1 A rank. Right after, 3 more SS rank skills appear in the system windows. He comments that the rewards were great considering the enemy's level. On top of all that, he also gets 2 S rank class exclusive skills. Picking up an item from the ground, he wonders if it's the only drop. Muttering that it looks ordinary, he examines the item. He then tries to open the object, but gets a strong electric shock. The system informs him that it's blocked by a barrier. Unable to open it, he decides he'll ask Margareta for help later, but suddenly, a new system window appears before his eyes. The system announces he has obtained the Guardian's essence required for ascension. He is then notified that killing Guardians weakens the world's seal. Reading the messages, he questions what a transcendent being and a seal are. Coming to a conclusion, he realizes he needs to be careful when hunting Guardians. As he reflects, He wonders if he'll become a transcendent being and end up alone. He then ponders if he will continue on with the other guardians, or if he'll end up finding a completely different path for himself. Just then, Piffenheim runs up, announcing he's found what they were looking for. Handing over the scroll, he explains they found it on Philip's men. Upon opening the scroll, he celebrates, realizing this is the main reward. Praising the good work, he asks if the other task was completed. Piffenheim explains they disguised one of Philip's men as a demon. On his knees, a soldier begs them to spare his life. Piffenheim then reports that one of Philip's men was hiding nearby. After a moment, Jae-woo seems to have a new plan in mind. Crying, the man keeps begging, saying he'll do anything to live. With a smile, Jae-woo says he hopes his dear Pezimut will enjoy the present. The scene changes. A large army of knights approaches the location. Leading the group is the captain of the royal guard, named Lawrence. And then the captain notices something. Lawrence orders all units to halt immediately. A soldier reports to the captain that there was a battle against enemy forces. They then find a survivor, and Lawrence orders him to be taken for interrogation. The scene shifts again. The interrogation begins near a lit campfire. Lawrence then asks the man if it's true the item was stolen. The soldier explains they were surrounded while trying to save Prince Philip. Furious, Lawrence asks if he hid while his comrades died. Terrified, the survivor confirms that's exactly what happened. In a fit of rage, Lawrence thrusts his sword hard into the ground. He then laments out loud for not having arrived a little sooner. But then he suddenly calls him a model knight for risking his life like that. Grabbing the soldier, he shouts for all his troops to hear. He tells everyone that this man risked his life to protect his commander. He then orders them to follow his example and search for the prince through the night. Far away, the scene changes to the imposing Rose Palace of Roserant. Inside the palace, a woman walks alone through a massive glass hall. Arriving in the room, Lawrence kneels before her and introduces himself formally. He reports that they pursued the enemy and found tracks left by Philip. He then informs her that Philip escaped, and his whereabouts are now unknown. She then asks about the item, saying she was sure Philip had it. Angrily, he reveals that Pezimut's men took the item. Touching her cup, she says that the name Pezimut is becoming quite tiresome. He apologizes, but she says the item is more important right now. She explains that the item is the only way to restore the prince. Interrupting him, she says the prince wouldn't die so easily. She then orders him to go to Pezimut and deliver a specific message. Introduced as Roland, she warns that otherwise, things won't be fun. Shifting to the enemy base, the scene shows a large military fortress. Pezimut is shocked, asking if that crazy woman was really resurrected. His subordinate confirms the news, making him frantic with the information. He wonders how that monstrous woman is back, thinking the trap was perfect. His subordinate says she's just a human, but Pezimut shouts furiously. He recalls that she invaded another demon's domain and killed everyone there. After all the slaughter, she finished the job by eliminating the leader. He then asks if his subordinate knows what started it all. He explains it all started because one of the men stepped on her snack. Since then, all the demon kings have come to refer to her in a certain way. She became known as Margareta, the Tempest, and the Annihilation. Just then, a messenger runs in, announcing that a message from Roland has arrived. Pizamut asks irritably what happened, but the messenger doesn't know. Sitting down, he wonders what kind of tantrum she's throwing now. He then takes the scroll to read the message she sent. With wide eyes, he refers to her as that crazy woman. He yells, questioning why she thinks he has that item. In a fit of rage, he screams and startles all his subordinates. He screams that the madwoman is asking him for that thing. Wondering why Roland would think that, he tries to understand the situation. He then finds the resurrection and the item's sudden disappearance suspicious. With a shocked expression, he seems to have a terrible revelation. Questioning the situation, he wonders if there's a mastermind behind it all. Far away, Jae-woo suddenly sneezes while riding his horse calmly. Piffenheim asks if he's sick, but he says his nose just itched. Next, his servant asks what he'll do with Philip's body. Jae-woo says the most important thing right now is the item he's holding. Opening the scroll, he reveals it's the Golden Imperial Edict. He celebrates having both the Elector's body and the edict in his hands. Calling for his servant, he receives a prompt reply from Piffenheim. With a victorious smile, he shows his complete satisfaction with this great achievement. Celebrating, he shouts that the world is now his, declaring long life to himself. Crossing the forest, a merchant caravan travels peacefully through the night. Celebrating their profits, the leader says this is their last chance. Without them noticing, a hooded figure says they know the perfect place for them. Suddenly, the guild leader is caught off guard by a swift and precise attack. Waving a flag, the invaders advance, yelling to grab everything they can find. In a panic, the leader shouts for everyone to grab their weapons, as they are under attack. Engaging in combat, the caravan guards try to defend themselves against the numerous enemies. Asking about the profit, their leader scoffs at Queen Roland. Outraged, the merchant asks if they know what they're doing with that money. Saying he doesn't care, the invader attacks the caravan leader directly. Taking another hit, he's left breathless and thrown against a tree. Seeing him on the ground, the invader tells him to go cry to Valpurgis. With an evil smirk, He tells the merchant to take her uncle with him. The scene changes. Jae-woo is being threatened by Valpurgis, who tells him to be quiet. He complains that it hurt as she applies some medicine. With a worried look, she asks him to hold on and questions where he got hurt. Suddenly, Margareta enters the room, celebrating that he's finally back. Seeing the two of them together, he and Valpurgis are left completely embarrassed and speechless. Margareta stares at them, seeming to understand exactly what's happening. The camera shows the outside of the convent as she yells that Valpurgis took off her helm. With a shout, she slams the table, faking a surprise attack. She then says that at this rate, she'll have a heart attack because of her. Then she comments that she understands the feeling of not wanting to hide who you are. Not knowing what to say, he just gives a nervous laugh at the situation. Grabbing him, she asks Jae-woo to take good care of Valpurgis. With a terrifying look, she threatens to fold him in half if he makes her cry. Sitting down, she asks if it's true that Prince Philip is dead. He confirms the news, saying his friends are taking care of the body. She laments, asking if his death will become a problem. With a furious expression, she says she wanted to finish him off personally. He then says that either way, the important thing is that he's dead. Saying he has a gift, he approaches her, and she gets very curious. Showing several bags of gold, he explains he took them from Philip's men. He then tells her that with this, she can buy all the snacks she wants. Impressed, she calls him a saint, but he asks her to stop. Watching the scene, Valpurgis just observes the two of them without a word. She then asks Jae-woo what those paper packets are. He reveals they are letters from Roland to Philip about becoming emperor. He explains their relationship is bad because of taxes and blockades. Surprised, he asks about the economic blockade order she mentioned. She explains that the emperor is confiscating assets from guilds connected to Roland. Explaining the situation, she says that's why House Ritter attacked. She says that Valpurgis is suffering from mental stress, but is cut off by her. Realizing what she said, she just falls silent, embarrassed. Seeing her reaction, he asks if something is wrong. Meanwhile, Valpurgis just observes the whole situation in complete silence. Saying everything is fine, she says she'll explain everything to Margareta. After a long sigh, the scene ends for a moment. Alone, he reflects on how the whole situation has become a mess. He thinks that the blockade has turned into a direct confrontation with the Elector of Bayern. Suddenly, he turns around upon hearing Valpurgis call him in his room. Now, in another room, she asks him to forget everything he heard today. Sitting down, she explains the problem originally had nothing to do with him, but he replies that he can't do that and wants to help because it's about her. She then says the situation has become too big for him to get involved. Explaining her reasons, she says she would feel too guilty with his help. He just keeps looking at her, listening intently. She admits that, while he's reliable, he still lacks experience and is too soft. Holding her hand, he seems to finally understand the reason for everything. With a smile, he agrees the matter is too big for a mercenary. She says yes, but he continues to talk about it. Insisting on helping, he says he wants to be her strength in this moment. Saying that mercenaries can be useful, he gives a confident smile. Amused, she comments that he's making jokes even at a time like this. At this, he smiles, showing he's quite sure of himself. With great conviction, he states that he's feeling very confident right now. She then repeats the word, seeming a bit surprised by his answer. The scene changes, showing the grand cathedral of the convent from the outside. Inside, he walks decisively down the main hall. Passing a few nuns, he continues on his way without stopping for anything. Bursting into the room, he suddenly shouts for Margareta. Sitting on the sofa, she's eating several rolls and is startled by his arrival. Showing Philip's pouch, he mentions the gold coins inside. With her mouth full, her eyes sparkle with curiosity at the treasure. Extending the pouch to her, he says the reward doubles if she opens it. Getting closer, he asks if she doesn't want to taste. Excited by the offer, she yells that the prize actually triples. Seeing her excitement over the gold, he asks what kind of gloves those are. He explains they're an upgraded version of the item he just unboxed. With a single motion, he demonstrates that a canteen can be summoned. Once outside, he says he's never seen anything like it. Saying that convenience is always welcome, he prepares to take a drink, but the canteen forcefully sprays all the water right in his face. Confused, he asks his horse why it stopped. The horse just turns to him, looking a bit annoyed. Arriving in the city, he finds a huge crowd at the entrance. After managing to get inside, he celebrates finally reaching his destination. He then comments that the wait felt like a line for a famous theme park. Seeing the people, he's surprised by the city's reception for the Great One. With a smile, he says the place is just as he remembered it. He discovers that the Great One is the demon king Kubalt who rules the city. Just then, a woman says her skin looks great thanks to the Great One. It's explained that Kubalt has unified cultures and is a pro-human king. Knowing he can help, Jae-woo says he needs to find him no matter what. Suddenly, a voice greets him, drawing his attention to the side. A small goblin approaches, saying he is a remarkable adventurer. He asks if he knows him, but the goblin says his presence is strong. A window reveals this is an effect of his new passive skill. The skill increases his charisma and presence as its proficiency grows. Saying it will be useful, he mentions he's here to meet Kubalt. Excited, the goblin says it's like seeing two big names meet. Claiming to have business with him, the goblin offers to guide him. Arriving at the location, the scene shows Kubalt's imposing castle in the distance. Entering the hall, they face two enormous golden doors. The goblin asks him to wait, informing him that tea will be served shortly. His skill levels up, which leaves him very confused about everything. Not caring, he says money is what's most important right now. Looking around, he notices a very narcissistic piece of art. Just then, the goblin arrives with the tea and unintentionally startles him. Jae-woo tells him to announce himself, and the goblin jokes about being a monster. Then he asks what brings him here, and Jae-woo jokes about marriage. Seeing the goblin's reaction, he realizes it's that joke again. He finds it strange that the goblin calls him he, not the Great One. With a serious expression, he tells himself he's going to test him. Pointing to the ring, he says it must be a wedding ring. The goblin is shocked for a brief moment by his observation. Soon after, he says that, as expected, Jae-woo recognized the ring. Drinking his tea, Jae-woo hears him say he spent 10 years' salary on it. Taking a sip, he praises the goblin's performance, calling him Kubalt. Surprised, the goblin asks what he means by that. He reveals that the ring is a treasure, and the compliment was suspicious. Finally, he says that no one refers to themselves as the Great One. Confirming the information, the goblin transforms, saying his instincts are sharp. Revealing his true form, he says he is the ruler of this place. Introducing himself, he reveals he is Kubalt, the demon king of shadow and death. Seated, he asks if Jae-woo came because of the Valpurgis case. With a smile, he says he thought Kubalt would have some useful information. He then replies that he knows what Jae-woo wants to know about it, but he says that to reveal anything, there is only one condition. Repeating the word, Jae-woo already figured Kubalt would make such a demand. He knows about Kubalt's obsession with knowledge and information of all kinds. Being the protagonist, Jae-woo knows everything, from war strategies to market speculation. With a confident smile, he says he knows everything there is to know. Seeing his confidence, Kubalt breaks into a huge, satisfied grin. With a sparkle in his eyes, he asks Jae-woo to be his friend. Not understanding the proposal, he just stares at Kubalt, completely confused. He explains that Jae-woo is about to become the center of attention, from the subjugation to his relationship with the super strict paladin. With a smile, he says connecting with someone like that would be profitable. Jae-woo then wonders how he can show they are friends. Handing him a ring, Kubalt tells him to take the object. He explains it's a communication ring for them to talk. Jae-woo remembers how Kubalt is the type of person who gives lectures. Saying he can't get a read on him, he hears the offer of a piece of information. Kubalt then raises a finger, announcing he has information to share. Seated, he prepares to listen to what Kubalt has to say. With a smile, he says the clue is in the capital of the duchy. The scene changes, showing the city of Dresden, capital of Saxon. Arriving at the location, he approaches a large metal gate. The guards stop him and ask who he is, demanding identification. With a smile, he activates his skill, Dignity of the Great Leader. Seeing the skill window, the guards scream in terror from the pressure. Warning them not to block his path, he glares at the guards with the skill active. Running through the street, he uses the skill to clear a path through the crowd. The impact throws people to the side, leaving them confused. Pushing forward relentlessly, he causes panic among all the civilians who see him. Seeing everyone kneeling, he just coldly orders them to get out of the way. The scene changes, and a woman screams for the leader of the Velia Merchant Guild. She then warns of an overwhelming presence heading toward the guild. Terrified, the woman warns that he is almost at their location. Trying to run, she desperately screams for him not to come any closer. Entering the room, he finally finds the guild leader who was waiting for him. Terrified, the leader asks why someone like him has come here. Without answering, he just turns around as the skill remains active in his hand. With a sinister smile, Jae-woo announces he has come to make a deal. He asks if they're talking about Dresden. Confirming the information, Kubalt mentions a merchant guild and a family of knights. He continues, explaining that the groups are locked in a massive debt to each other. He reacts immediately to what he just heard. Sitting at the table, Kubalt just watches his reaction to the unexpected information. With a gesture, Kubalt shows his complete confidence in his information-gathering skills. It becomes clear that his information network spans the entire continent. Thus, his true identity is revealed. Kubalt, the King of Shadows. Noticing his reaction, Kubalt says he has one more thing to tell him. Hearing this, Jae-woo asks what else he needs to know about the situation. Moving to a bedroom, Jae-woo and another man watch a young woman lying in bed. Approaching her, the man introduces her as his daughter, Marin. Looking at his daughter, he explains that her condition is very recent. In a quick flashback, he recalls that she was a very healthy child before. He continues, saying that one day she simply started to waste away for no reason. Finishing the story, he says he called every doctor, but no one could help. On his knees, the father laments that he might lose his daughter forever if nothing is done. Jae-woo then grabs him, shouting that there must be some way to save her. Begging for help, he asks the adventurer to bring back his daughter's smile. He then asks the man to drop the formalities and just call him Jae-woo. Covering his nose, Jae-woo explains he came here specifically to propose a deal. After a moment, he composes himself to examine the girl more closely. Touching her forehead, he confirms the young woman's condition is indeed critical. He notes the muscle loss and the continuous fever she's been suffering from. Looking at her face, he concludes that ordinary medicine won't work, but then he turns, announcing that there is a way to cure the illness. Filled with hope, the father desperately asks what this way to save her is. Revealing the solution, Jae-woo says they need the elixir of Gross Glockner. Upon hearing the name, the man's hand begins to tremble uncontrollably. He then collapses to the floor, saying that going to that place is practically impossible. It's explained that the phrase, "to return from there," is just another way of saying impossible. Next, the location is shown, the Great Demon Dragon Canyon, Gross Glockner. Located in the southeast of the empire, the place is territory of the dragon Schwarze Teufel. Its power is immeasurable, capable of facing even the demon kings. To make matters worse, the entire canyon is infested with countless demonic beasts. Because of this, the challenge is seen as a hopeless mission for anyone. Jae-woo then smiles, implying that this only applies to ordinary people. Placing a hand on his shoulder, he addresses the leader of the merchant guild. He assures the man not to worry, as he will go there himself. Hearing this confirmation, the girl's father is filled with renewed hope. Then, a system window reveals that his acting skill has been activated. With a sudden change, he grabs the man and says that the father must be the one to go. He then gets closer, explaining that his daughter doesn't need a simple elixir. He adds that what she needs most is her father's love. Moved by the speech, the man becomes emotional and begins to weep at the words. Deeply moved, the father asks how he can help. Saying it's not complicated, he brings up the Ritter family's debt. Hearing about the debt, the man becomes visibly concerned by what was said. He then suggests taking on the debt, leaving the guild leader completely shocked. Grabbing the man by the collar, he shouts to get his attention on the proposal. In a serious tone, he says this must be done for his only daughter. Lying in bed, the girl weakly calls out her father's name at that moment. This makes the father remember his happy daughter calling out to him on several occasions. Another memory surfaces, of her promising to marry him when she grew up. Overcome with emotion, the father finally shouts that he accepts Jae-woo's proposal. Moving to the canyon, he comments that the night is perfect for a climb. Looking at the landscape from above, he shouts that the view from that place is spectacular. Finding a rare plant, he pulls it from the ground and says it's a big one. He then shows the flower to his horse and asks if it knows what it is. Seeing the animal's reaction, he confirms it's a local medicinal herb. Giving the herb to his horse, he tells the animal to pay close attention. He explains that the place is safe because of its excellent orc guards. He then warns that evil humans or demons can't get past them. It's revealed that the canyon's grass is a type of rare medicine. Touching the ground, he perceives the true value of everything in that specific place. Excited, he shouts that even a handful of dirt from this place is a treasure. Running from one side to the other, he quickly collects several medicinal herbs. Holding the herbs, he realizes he'll save the girl and also make a profit. After tasting one of the plants, he comments that the flavor is great too. Suddenly, a small rock flies and hits him right in the middle of the head. Annoyed by the stone, he turns to see who was responsible. Before him, a monster appears and tells the human to leave that place. Right behind it, a whole group of goblins appears, saying that this land belongs to them. In the darkness of night, several goblins are harvesting medicinal herbs. Relaxing in a chair, Jae-woo supervises their work while having a drink. One of the goblins carefully uses a small shovel to dig up one of the plants. With a serious expression, he continues to watch his new servants work intently. Suddenly, he stands up, shouting that they aren't digging correctly. Showing them a perfect plant, he explains that the roots must not be damaged. He then threatens to throw them all back into their graves if they keep it up. Shouting loudly, he asks if all the goblins are hearing his orders. Going back in time a bit, the scene shows his first encounter with the monsters. Surrounded, he's startled by the sheer number of enemies. The goblins then charge all at once, ready to attack him without mercy. Seeing the situation, he prepares to activate one of his special abilities. With a focused gaze, he finally activates his new and powerful skill. Using blood tear absorption, he attacks the horde of monsters. After the attack, He manages to subdue all the goblins in his path. Looking at the goblins on the ground, he questions why they even tried to fight. With a single gesture, he simply orders all the defeated to rise. At that, the goblins begin to rise, now completely under his command. Now on their feet, the entire goblin army awaits his next command. Satisfied with the result, he claps his hands and says that this is excellent. Returning to the conversation, he starts talking to his new goblin servant. Pointing at his goblet, he tells his servant to observe what happened. Laughing heartily, he asks why they attacked with no chance of victory. The servant then thanks him for sparing them all and taking them in. Changing the subject, he asks what other monsters live in this great canyon. The servant replies, mentioning werewolves, giant centipedes, and also many ogres. Pleased with the information, he says it was the right choice to keep him around. Unexpectedly, the ring on his hand begins to glow very intensely. Coming directly from the ring, a familiar voice calls him by the name of Jay-Woo. On the other end, Kubalt asks if he forgot about the communication ring. He replies that he almost forgot and tells Kubalt he's quite the comedian. Kubalt then asks him directly how things are in Gross Glockner. Without giving an answer, he just comments on the pleasant weather and the moon. Back in Plusen, Kubalt invites him to the festival that's being prepared. Then the conversation shifts, as he wants to know about Valpurgis's visit to Ritter. It turns out they demanded a settlement fee of a totally absurd amount. To make matters worse, they threatened to confiscate the goods that were to be traded with Queen Roland. Angered by the news, he warns that this is just the beginning of the problem. Kubalt then gives an order, telling him to advise Roland to pretend to accept. Agreeing with the strategy, Jay-Woo says he'll do it for the sake of their relationship. Back in the canyon, he promises that Kubalt will be well rewarded upon his return. Laughing on the other end, Kubalt says that place is a real gold mine. Kubalt notices the background noise and says he'll hang up so as not to disturb. Seeing the ring go dark, he wonders if Kubalt really just hung up on him. Kicking the air, he yells that he only tolerates Kubalt because of the great Valpurgis. Being shaken, he asks the reason for all the commotion. Taking off his glasses, he calmly asks what happened. Without warning, two enormous ogres suddenly emerge from the forest shadows. The servant screams in fear, pointing to one of the ogres approaching them. Seeing the situation, he orders his servant to fall back to a safer place. Instead of waiting, he just shoves his servant out of the way. With the servant out of the way, he glares at the defeated goblins on the ground. It turns out the ogres resisted his ability, so the goblins lost. Summoning undead wouldn't work either, as they'd meet the same fate as the goblins. With his hand glowing, he prepares to use another kind of power. Preparing to fight, he draws his sword and gets into a combat stance. Now he announces that it's time to stretch a bit before the fight. With a smile on his face, he readies himself for the fight against the ogres. He summons one of the 12 legendary swords, an unbreakable treasure of House Paltz. Holding the sword firmly, he is ready to face any enemy. Wielding the legendary sword, he calls it by the name Rublanya. Explaining its details, a status window shows the weapon enhances a swordsmanship art. Seeing the blade, the ogres halt their advance, staring intently at the weapon. He then asks if they recognize the sword of the Lunar Shadow art. In a flashback, Philip is shown putting the sword away to pick up a flashier one. Next, he prepares to use the zero form of his technique. As the attack begins, one of the monsters is struck by surprise. Receiving a cut on its arm, the ogre looks at the wound without reacting. Moving swiftly, he creates multiple afterimages of himself to confuse the two ogres. Surrounded by the images, the ogres look around, unable to react. One of the monsters screams as it sees the attack coming its way. In a single swift motion, he lands several cuts on the enemies simultaneously. With the attack finished, Jay-Woo lands on one of the ogre's heads. Receiving a slash to the head, the last remaining ogre is momentarily paralyzed. From below, he finishes off the last enemy with a decisive blow. With the ogre defeated, his servant runs over worriedly, shouting his name. Relieved, he says he was nervous since he hadn't used the technique in a long time. Seeing the scene, the servant is impressed and says that it was incredible. Trying to play it cool, he proudly replies that it was nothing at all. He then begins to brag, just as a mysterious figure appears right behind him. Turning around suddenly, he notices the new presence and is quite surprised. Without him noticing, the figure floats above him and asks if it was him. Getting up on guard, he wonders when she managed to get so close. Using the same art, a huge claw forms to attack him directly. Grabbed by the neck, he feels the strength of the new and mysterious opponent. The figure then reveals itself, showing its true demonic form. Staring at him up close, she threatens to break his neck without hesitation. Preparing to strike, she focuses all her strength into her right fist. With a powerful blow, she sends him flying far away. Then, a system window shows he took a massive hit. Surprised by the damage, he can't believe he lost so much HP at once. Landing on the ground, she prepares to continue the fight. Suddenly, she asks why they are destroying her home. Unintimidated, he demands the newcomer state her identity first. Calling him improper, she introduces herself as the master of Gross Glockner. Faced with this revelation, He's completely confused by what he just heard. Her true identity is revealed: the demon dragon, Schwarze Teufel. He remembers that in the previous cycle, the dragon was an enormous beast. Noticing his distraction, the demon girl warns him that he's being careless. She then lunges forward to deliver another blow while he's still distracted. Getting closer, she comments that he seems too relaxed for a fight. Sensing a different energy, he wonders what this new power is. Jumping in front of him, his servant yells that he will protect his master. Calling the conversation unnecessary, she glares at him and calls him arrogant. With her hand ready, she moves forward and warns that he will die right here. Startled by the attack, he desperately pleads for her to wait and listen. Paying him no mind, she says questions and answers are useless right now. Gathering her energy, she prepares to deliver a final decisive blow. Fallen on the ground, he shouts that if he dies, the demon dragon will die with him. Staring directly at her, he reinforces the threat he just made. Surprised by his declaration, she stops her attack and asks what he just said. She then demands an explanation, but he replies that it's exactly what it sounds like. Explaining the situation, he reveals he has prophetic dreams and saw her in them. In a vision, he says he saw the demon dragon die a miserable death. Trying to understand, she asks if her death also means his. Confirming the connection, he suggests she check his memories to be sure. Faced with the proposal, she stares at him in silence, considering his offer. Touching his head, she prepares to access his memories. With a sigh, she agrees to check his memories to confirm everything. Then she warns him, saying that if he's lying, he will certainly die. Sitting on the ground, he simply agrees to the condition she imposed. Returning to her human form, she prepares to begin the procedure. Kneeling, he waits as she places a hand on his head. With the process about to begin, she warns that if he moves, he will die. Showing no fear, he simply replies that he understood the order perfectly. Then, her power activates, and she begins to read his memories. Engulfed by the energy, she enters a completely different place. Inside, she is surrounded by countless film reels, representing his memories. Seeing the sheer volume, she is stunned and says the human's memory has exceeded her expectations. She then declares she needs to look closer at the memories to understand everything. Without hesitation, he points to one of the reels and asks her to watch it. Seeing his attitude, she calls him suspicious and improper once again. Looking at the memory, she realizes the image is completely blurry and indistinct. Suddenly, the image becomes clear, showing her lifeless dragon body. Utterly shocked, she asks if it's real, but he immediately cuts her off. Being expelled from his memories, she returns to reality abruptly. After the process, they are both panting, visibly exhausted from the ordeal. He thinks to himself that she almost saw his other memories. Checking her own body, she asks who was responsible for her death. The revelation from the memory leaves her completely paralyzed and in a state of shock. Thanking him, she offers a reward, but he tells her he doesn't want it. Surprised by his response, she questions what he meant by that. Shouting in reply, he proposes they make a deal and calls her Shubi. Saying her name is too long, he gives her a nickname, but she scolds him. Ignoring her anger, he assures her that if she listens to him, she can survive. Furious, she yells that she is not Shubi, as she is already 3,000 years old. He insists it's modern communication, but she refuses to accept it. With the mission updated, the window announces that the game's difficulty has increased. The scene changes, focusing on a dark path in the middle of the forest. Then, a large blue snake appears, completely blocking the forest path. Stomping down hard, a man smashes the snake's head into the ground. As he turns, he introduces himself as the Master of the Abyss and the King of Chaos. At that moment, he clenches his fist, preparing to reveal his name. He then reveals himself as the Demon King Odgot, but complains about the interruption. Annoyed with the snake, he complains that he was in the middle of his entrance speech. He then sits down, saying the mood of the scene has been completely ruined. Suddenly, a woman appears, asking for forgiveness on behalf of her subordinate. When he turns his head, the Demon King recognizes her instantly. He then calls her his daughter, revealing her name to be Calione. With a bow, Calione greets her lord, showing proper respect. He then remembers his promise to grant her a wish if everything went well. With a smile, he says it's only natural, as she is his precious daughter. With a smile, the Demon King Odgot begins to give orders to his servants. He announces they are heading to Gross Glockner, the demon dragon's lair. Next, he turns and tells his servants not to fear the challenge. His order is simple: devour everything they see, and he commands them to trample over everything that lives without any mercy. Making his objective clear, he says the demon dragon belongs to him. Under the moonlight, the entire army begins to march quickly through the forest. Leading the charge, the Demon King advances with all his might. Giving the final command, he sets off with his enormous army of monsters. With his army behind him, he calls his vile demons to battle. Under the moon, the order is given for all allies to gather. As night falls, he prepares for the next phase of the mission. He reminds them that despite the setbacks, the mission remains the same. Gather the herbs. Fired up, he raises his fist and shouts for everyone to move out. In response, his entire goblin army charges through the forest. He issues new orders, telling everyone to get to their stations. Seated in his chair, he receives a mandrake cocktail from his servant. Thanking Kururak, he asks his servant to take a cocktail to Philip. Sipping his drink, he thinks about how he was nearly defeated by the demon dragon. With the drink in his hand, he starts to wonder about recent events. Everything started getting strange with Philip's unexpected betrayal, and then there was the demon dragon's sudden change in appearance. He then remembers Valpurgis and takes a drink in her honor. Suddenly, he has a strong reaction, feeling something is off. Holding his hand out, he conjures a magic circle. With a command, he opens the main scenario window to analyze everything. Instantly, several system windows float around him, displaying information. Analyzing the information, he realizes that wasn't the only thing that was different. He realizes nothing that has happened matches his previous cycles. He's facing entirely new events. He remembers how he memorized the entire map of Gross Glockner. For him to be confused by the dragon's design, it just doesn't make sense. He begins to analyze the events. The main scenarios are the same, but he notices the minor events within them are completely different. Wondering why things have changed, he stares thoughtfully into his glass. Tapping his fingers on the table, he wonders if he's forgetting something. Seeing a goblin get hurt, he calls out and asks what happened. The goblin replies that he got a little scraped up while gathering herbs. He warns him to be careful not to scrape the roots. Watching his servants, he thinks that all it takes is for him to look away for trouble to start. Noticing his concern, the goblin says he's fine, adding that they're all brothers. That reminds him that Charlotte also had a younger sister. A look of surprise crosses his face as he begins to realize something new. A quick memory flashes. He sees Charlotte and her sister in a different scenario. Another memory surfaces, showing him with his old mercenary group at the tavern. Memories of Margarita and the powerful Valpurgis also flash through his mind. Suddenly, the mandrake in his drink starts to scream loudly. It dawns on him. His perspective has shifted along with his position. Until now, his class had been Elector Steel, the great emperor of the empire. As the emperor, he was also the hero who saved the world before. Back then, he always started with exceptionally high off-the-chart stats. But now, he's just a simple commoner on a stage. With no special powers, he's now just an ordinary, simple character. With no remarkable traits, he no longer stands out from the crowd. All he has left are his countless memories, his only advantage in this cycle. Images of his past forms make it clear. He was once far more powerful, but he realizes that because of this, he can now see everything from a different perspective. He notices people's expressions and the small connections he always ignored before. As a commoner, he can finally see the great Valpurgis for who she truly is. In the past, he would have just paid the debt without noticing the circumstances behind it. With this realization, he finally starts to understand what's happening. He remembers the sudden proposal Aquila made to him that day. That proposal was the missing piece to unlock the game's true ending. He then understands that the cosmic space she created was the key. Suddenly, the mandrake in the glass screams, pulling him from his thoughts. He then remembers the moment the commoner class was unlocked. As the image of Aquila appears, the pieces fall into place, forming a path. She then reveals that everything that happened was just a tutorial. Back in the present, his servant shouts that the dragon is coming their way. With the ground shaking, everything around him is thrown into the air. The demon dragon bursts onto the scene, screaming his name and announcing she made it in time. He simply stretches, thanking Aquila for everything going according to plan. With a smile, he confirms that was exactly what he was waiting for. Confused by his attitude, she asks what he means about the game. He yells for everyone to go, leaving his new allies utterly confused. Walking forward, he says he now understands how to truly enjoy the world. At that moment, he announces that a new strategy is about to begin. Watching the scene unfold, the dragon and the goblin servant see Jae-woo laughing. Then the servant tells his mistress that his lord has lost his sanity. In Kururak's diary, Jae-woo orders his servant to handle things properly while he takes action. With a smile on his face, Odgot raises his double-headed axe into the air. Rushing forward at high speed, Odgot shatters the ground with every step. Suddenly, a voice announces its arrival, introducing itself as the demon dragon, Schwarze Teufel. Amidst the crowd, several demons shout Odgash's name in unison. From her post, Calione silently watches the situation unfold. Then, Calione warns that the Lord is approaching, and Odgot asks if it's the dragon. Seeing the arriving figures, a demon questions if they're just a human and a goblin. Calione then says more people are coming, and Odgot asks what she said. Pushed back, Odgot struggles to stand firm against the mounting pressure. Side by side, Odgot and Calione await the arrival of the new figure. With one foot on the ground, a voice declares that the morning is full of strength. The voice then adds that this place is a dragon's workspace. Revealing its form, Schwarze Teufel orders everyone to leave its territory. Odgot laughs, saying it's been a while, and that he's come to make a proposal. Turning her back, she refuses. But Odgot says she'll be tempted once she hears it. He then says what he's about to show her is as attractive as she is, and begins the operation. Looking to the side, Shubi simply confirms and agrees with his plan. Spreading her wings, she takes a combat stance, ready for the confrontation. With her claws out, she shouts for them to come and face her. Seeing this, Odgot understands she wants a one-on-one fight, and the two charge into battle. Jae-woo and his servant Kururak spot them fighting. Taking a deep breath, Jae-woo composes himself and prepares for what's to come. Revealing his plans, he explains that he anticipated the invasion, but found the timing useful. In his memory, the demon dragon's original form appears for an instant. Seeing Calione, he says it's an honor to meet the most beautiful woman. From inside her helmet, Calione observes him in silence for a moment. Without a word, she begins to remove her helmet, revealing her face. Her face is finally revealed, showing her appearance to them for the first time. Now, with her face uncovered, she stares down Jae-woo and his subordinates. With a slight smile, Jae-woo watches her, analyzing the situation. As a character of choices, he knows her role in the game can change. Sometimes she's an ally, but other times, she's a dangerous enemy. With immense strength, she stands out. They don't call her a queen for nothing. Saying she's more beautiful than the rumors, he extends a hand toward her. At that, one of her subordinates rushes forward to intercept his gesture. Stopping in front of him, she blocks him from getting any closer to Calione. The nun then glares at him angrily, letting out a strange, high-pitched sound. Apologizing, Jae-woo says he wants to speak with the princess and tells the lackeys to leave. Reacting to the provocation, the nun prepares an attack and lunges at him. Seeing this, Kururak shouts, telling that demon to get away from his master. But Jae-woo says he's more useless than earwax. Afraid, Kururak stands in front of him, saying they'll have to kill him first. Mocking him, Jae-woo recalls how he ran away alone when he faced the demon dragon. Turning to the nun, he asks if she heard that, saying his servant is better. Caught by surprise, a whip nearly hits Kururak. Then, the same whip wraps around the nun's body, trapping her in place. And suddenly, someone emerges from Jae-woo's portal, calling for Hexax, holding the whip. With a smile on her face, Hexax reveals herself, ready to join the fight. Spinning her whip, she charges forward and attacks the nun without hesitation. The blow hits the nun squarely, who screams as she is tied up. Suddenly, Piffenheim also appears and attacks the nun with his ability. He warns that anyone who threatens his lord will be cut down without mercy. Surprised, Calione watches the scene and asks if he's a vampire. With a smirk, Jae-woo just watches her with an air of superiority. Saying she's correct, all of his other servants reveal themselves as well. He then asks how she feels now that the numbers are even. Calione says she now understands his confidence, but reminds him of one thing. She warns him that they are the mighty legion of the demon king Odgash. Putting her helmet back on, she wields her sword and prepares to fight. She then orders all units to follow their commander and destroy the enemy. Shouting in support, her troops advance, following the order to attack. On the other side, his servants also shout for everyone to protect their lord. Holding his sword with both hands, Jae-woo takes his combat stance. Then, Calione runs toward him to launch the first attack. As their swords clash, they create a huge impact on the area. Pushed back, he slides across the ground but manages to stay on his feet. She says he is formidable and that his strength surpasses even Pessimut's. Thanking her for the compliment, he says it's an honor to receive such recognition from her, but he taunts her, saying her father would cry tears of blood if he knew about this. He then reveals her name, Calione Rominia Kaimars, daughter of the former demon king. Surprised by the revelation, she asks how much he really knows about her. He laughs, saying she's ridiculous, and she asks what's so funny. He replies that he can't help but laugh at her, as she knows nothing. He then claims she is following her father's sworn enemy. Confused, Calione asks him who this sworn enemy he mentioned is. In a memory, Calione remembers that her father was the person she respected most. His gaze always calmed her and inspired confidence in their fellow demons. She proudly remembers always seeing him as a great father figure to look up to. To her, he represented the very happiness she felt during her childhood. But then, one day everything changed when she saw her father gravely wounded on the ground. Then, it was announced that Kaimars had been killed by Gukmagak and Kaltus. Captured by Odgat, she heard him declare himself the new number one. As she tried to break free, the crowd around them celebrated the king's death. Holding her, Odgat said he hated them too, calling Kaimars his friend. He asked her to endure, promising he would help with her revenge in the future. After that promise of revenge, her memory of that day ends. Back in the present, she yells at him to shut up and threatens him. Picking up an orb from the ground, Jae-woo states that she's blinded by loyalty. Then he crouches down and tells her to take a look at it first. Upon seeing the orb's contents, she immediately recoils from the revelation. Inside the memory, Odgat laughs, saying the situation with the dragon is almost romantic. He says he's moved by the two of them being alone in this isolated place, but Shubi corrects him, saying he was the one who killed Kaimars, not her. Surprised, he asks if she really thinks it was him, blaming Gorokalgam and Kaltus. Calling him a traitor, she says everyone already knows the truth about him. Awkwardly, Odgut just comments that she's far more persistent than he imagined. Changing his tone, he finally admits she's right, and that the others were weak. Hearing the confession, Shubi stares at him intently, discovering the truth. Laughing loudly, he proudly shouts that he orchestrated everything from the start. He then reveals that he told them Kaimar's weakness, making the others eager to attack. Back in the present, Calione wonders what she has done all this time. In shock at the truth, her sword slips and falls to the ground. She says it's impossible, as Odgat was her father's trusted subordinate. Saying they were like brothers, she's shaken while Jaewoo just watches her reaction. Changing scenes, Jaewoo explains the plan to Shubi and Kururak using a magic projector. He then tells them to use the device to broadcast the entire conversation. With this, the plan is to make Odgash confess the truth about Kaimars's death. Surprised by its simplicity, Shubi asks if that's all, and he confirms. Back in the present, he faces her and asks if she can handle it. Saying Shubi did well, he states that half of the plan was a success. Looking at the orb, he tells her he'll take care of the rest now. With tears in her eyes, she asks if everything up to now was just an act. In a memory, she sees herself walking hand in hand with her father and Odgat. Coming from behind, Hexax reports that the cleanup of the surrounding area is complete. Confirming the order, she smiles with the captured enemy soldiers behind her. Seeing her on the ground, he comments on her 50 years of blind loyalty. Unable to answer, she just continues to cry silently at the truth. He stands still for a moment, just watching her reaction. Breaking the silence, he asks if she's going to stay like this. He offers to teach her Kaimar's technique, asking if she wants revenge. She says it's been a long time since she heard about her father's magic. Remembering him, she says that technique made him the #1 demon king. Then she asks how a stranger knows this when only her father knew the secret. In response, he explains that he studied all the game's strategy guides from cover to cover. That's why he's well aware of both the technique's power and its only weakness. But he decides he needs to hide the part about the weakness from her for now. He then lies, saying he saw it all in the book Gospel of the Seven Demons. Claiming the book described the technique, he says the information was very useful. Understanding now, she says that explains why she felt something strange about him, but she warns him that the technique is useless, since Odgat is completely immortal. She recalls that he survived the spell even before becoming her father's subordinate. Questioning how she could win, Jaewoo says she's gravely mistaken about the situation. Asking her to listen, he stands up and prepares to continue their conversation. He reveals that her companions have already been neutralized by his vampire army. Kneeling in front of her, he asks her to listen very carefully. Making a proposal, he offers to become her new ally. He then asks if she will follow him, or if she'd rather die right there. With tears streaming down her face, she remains silent, thinking about the choice. In a memory, she tells her father she wants to be a great demon queen. He replies that to do so, she would have to become even stronger. Asking if he thinks she can do it, a young Calione looks at him with expectation. He then picks her up and lifts her into the air with a smile. Saying, "Of course you can," he declares that she is the daughter of Kaimars. Back in the present, she asks if she can really kill Odgash with his help. Seeing her reaction, Jaewoo and his servants are left completely speechless. Tugging at his clothes, they say their lord went a little too far. Rebuking his servants, Jaewoo gets teased for making a child cry. Changing the subject, Kururak asks what happened to the demon dragon. Elsewhere, Odgat appears on the scene, recovered from the previous battle. He then approaches the fallen form of Shubi, who lies defeated on the ground. In a disappointed tone, he comments on the dragon's pathetic defeat. Injured, she just glares at him with a mocking smile on her face. Raising a finger, she simply curses him out before finally passing out. Back to their old fight, the battle between the two was intense. Flying through the skies, Shubi prepared for a new attack against her opponent. He then laughs loudly, saying he's very disappointed in the demon dragon. Saying he thought she would accept, he sees her charging angrily towards him. Watching her advance, Odgat just stares at her with a serious expression on his face. Taking a deep breath, she prepares a powerful fire attack to launch at him. She then unleashes an immense blast of fire in his direction. With fire pouring from her mouth, she maintains the attack at full force. Flying over the destroyed landscape, she screams one last curse before flying away. Then, a new energy begins to form at her fingertips. Firing a beam, she focuses all her remaining strength into that final attack. Taking the hit head-on, Odgat stands still, resisting her powerful energy. Even under the assault, he remains on his feet, showing no signs of damage. Seeing her persistence, he says he has no choice and lunges at her. With a single blow, he strikes the ground, creating a wave of destruction. Seeing her on the ground, he prepares to deliver the final blow. Striking with force, he hits the ground and raises a massive shockwave. Now on the ground, she struggles to get up. Gritting her teeth, she warns him that she'll finish him one way or another. Before him, her true form begins to manifest on the battlefield. As the transformation continues, the great dragon's head is finally revealed. Fully transformed, she roars and faces Odgut, ready for the real battle. Because of this, the entire battlefield begins to shake violently. Feeling the earthquake, Jae-woo yells for Kururak to get away from him because it's hard to run. Joking about the situation, Hexax says maybe he'll keep him as a pet. Nearby, Piffenheim warns that her mana is breaking the polymorph. Seeing her complete form, Jae-woo comments that he was about to say something. Then Piffenheim asks the Lord if she can withstand the combat. Replying, Jae-woo says he doesn't understand the truth about this place. He then reveals that fighting here comes with a huge penalty for Shubi. Analyzing the situation, Jae-woo remains silent for a brief moment. Turning to Calione, he finally calls her name to give the order. Saying her mission has become more important, he asks if she can do it. With a determined expression, she just stares at him without saying a single word. Answering yes, she and the others watch the great battle between Shubi and Odgut. In the midst of the battle, Shubi strikes Odgut with a powerful blow from her tail. Hitting the ground hard, the blow kicks up a large cloud of dust. Focusing on its target, the dragon's eye aims directly at its opponent. With his axe, Odgut manages to stop the dragon's advance and bite. Smiling, he yells that this is now a true contest of strength between them. Without backing down, Shubi begins to prepare a fire attack with her mouth. Unleashing everything, she launches a powerful blast of fire at her enemy. Hitting the ground, the attack covers the entire area in a sea of flames. Even in the midst of the flames, Odgut stands firm, resisting the powerful attack. Next, she fires a second blast of fire, even more intense than the first. Amidst the burning valley, Odgut observes the result of the attack. With his arm injured, he says he wants her even more now. Calling him arrogant, Shubi faces him, baring her teeth. She then says she'll tell him about the world's collapse. Refusing to cooperate, she says the two of them will never work together. Seeing her refusal, he warns that she's left him no other choice. He then yells that he'll have to change his fighting methods. Preparing to throw, he aims his double-headed axe in a new direction. Flying through the sky, the axe spins at high speed through the air. Noticing the target, a voice cries out about that specific place. Inside the cave, a point of light suddenly appears in the darkness. Striking the ground, the axe causes a huge explosion of energy at the location. Hit head-on, the dragon's head is thrown back by the impact. Laughing, he calls the scene pathetic and mocks the dragon. Looking at the fallen body, he says he didn't expect her to lose like this. Reverting to her humanoid form, Shubi falls to the ground, completely exhausted. Then, a large metal pillar strikes the ground with great force. Saying he knew it, Odgut comments that there must be a reason she's there, but he then admits he doesn't know what this place is. Lying on the ground, she glares at him with a look of pure defiance. Gritting her teeth, she provokes him without showing any fear. Lifting her gaze, Shubi curses him with her last remaining strength. Saying she has courage, he prepares for the final blow. Raising the axe, he warns that he'll cut her in half with his attack. She then says her role in this plan has finally come to an end. Suddenly, Jae-woo appears from above and blocks Odgut's attack. Turning to the enemy, he says it's now his turn to fight. Charging forward, Jae-woo lands a direct hit on Odgut with an extremely fast strike. Landing on the ground, he stops in front of the fallen Shubi. Looking at him, she just calls him Kid before passing out. With his sword in hand, Jae-woo faces him and says he's late. Then, Jae-woo yells at him to shut up, while his servants take care of Shubi. Held by Piffenheim, she just looks away with an irritated expression. On the battlefield, Odgut warns to never let your guard down against him. Calling Jae-woo a leech, he asks what happened to his Calione. With a smirk, Jae-woo just gives a casual reply about her. Taking a breath, he prepares to give his answer clearly. Shouting loudly, he calls Calione's name to the battlefield. In the sky, a great light appears, illuminating the entire battlefield. Looking at the light, Odgut recognizes the presence and calls out his father's name. Floating in the air, Calione emerges from the light, ready to fight. Looking at Odgut, she asks if he has nothing to say to her. Gritting his teeth, he just glares at her with a look of rage. With a laugh, Odgut praises her for finally mastering the summoning technique. He tells her to use the magic, but is interrupted by Jae-woo, who asks what she's doing. Scolding Calione, Jae-woo asks if she wants to get fired on her very first day. Pointing to the side, he warns her that the enemy who killed her father is Odgut. Finding it absurd, Odgut asks what kind of nonsense the human is talking about. He says he even once shared a drink with the former King Kaimars. He then asks if she really thinks he would be capable of killing him. Just then, the recording of his confession is broadcast for everyone to see the truth. Gritting his teeth, Odgut glares at him with a forced smile on his face. Realizing the trap, he begins to release a massive amount of energy. Understanding Losing everything, he screams that the human was just toying with him the whole time. Seeing his reaction, Jae-woo shouts for Shubi to restrain him before he loses control. Using her power, Shubi casts her bindings and manages to hold Odgat in place. Trapped in the magic circle, Odgat is immobilized, unable to move at all. Finding it all amusing, he shouts for the brats to continue with their attack. Raising her sword with both hands, Kallioni prepares for the final blow. At that moment, energy gathers in the magic circle, preparing to fire. Pinned to the ground, Odgat watches the attack forming right above him. With a furious scream, she orders Odgat to die once and for all. A pillar of light then descends from the heavens and strikes Odgat head-on. Taking the full impact, he is completely engulfed by the attack's energy. The explosion destroys the entire area, kicking up a huge cloud of dust. Exhausted, she leans on her sword to stay on her feet. In the crater, Odgat's body lies fallen after taking the direct hit. Even in defeat, he says he finally got what he always wanted from this. Remembering her father, a memory from her childhood flashes through her mind. Back in the present, she begins to cry, having finally achieved her revenge. But a voice behind her praises the attack, calling the scene excellent. Regenerating completely, Odgat stands up and faces her with a smile. Turning around, she stares at him with an expression of pure shock and fear. Saying that's enough, Jae-woo strikes Odgat with a decisive blow to the shoulder. Enraged, Odgat calls him a miserable human and prepares to counterattack. But a deep gash opens on his shoulder, leaving the wound exposed. Seeing that the wound isn't regenerating, he is surprised by the situation. Just then, Jae-woo remembers the 8th tip from the Guardian of Humanity. With a swift move, he strikes Odgat's head with a precise blow. He then yells that to kill an immortal, you must use their own body. Using a fragment, he pierces Odgat's chest in a final attack. A system window then announces that he has defeated the 3rd monarch. Immediately after, a list of dropped items appears as a reward for the victory. His summoning proficiency also increases, unlocking even stronger undead. In addition, he learns 4 new, very high-rank skills. Finally, he obtains the much-desired title of Hero. Meanwhile, a large explosion erupts in the background, destroying part of the scenery. Seeing the result, Kallioni's hand begins to emanate a new energy. Analyzing the situation, Kallioni reports that Shubi's mana is at a minimum. Annoyed, Shubi shouts, asking what they're going to do, and that all their companions will die. Changing scenes, young Marine watches everything from her bed without a word. From a distance, Jae-woo shouts for the rest of the group to hurry up and catch up. Looking at them, Kallioni seems to find her place among the new group. With a smile, she says it feels like she's finally found her place. Elsewhere, young Marin makes a face as she takes some bitter medicine. Her father then says that even though it's nasty, she needs to drink it all. He explains that Jae-woo and his companions risked their lives to get it. She then asks if her father will grant her a wish if she drinks it all. Turning to the side, the Duke asks Jae-woo if the deal is sealed, but he's cut off by Jae-woo, who covers his mouth before he can speak. He then asks that they discuss business away from his sick daughter. Going into another room, the two close the door to talk in private. Once inside, Jae-woo impatiently asks if the deal is sealed or not. With his hands on the table, the Duke complains about how arrogant a mere debtor is. With his hand on his face, he says this is because of the Elector of Saxon. In a memory, Philip appears, saying they are VIP clients who have spent a lot. He then asks the guild leader not to refuse and to help just this once. Leaning in, he asks them to arrange a meeting with the Elector of Saxon. Jae-woo then understands they're making a fuss for fear of losing the connection. With that in mind, he realizes the stalemate with the Emperor would be balanced, but he knows that if the Elector of Saxon gets involved, the situation changes. Worried, he wonders if there's any way to get around this situation. After a moment's thought, he seems to find a solution to the problem. The Duke then suggests other forms of compensation besides the debt transfer. Seeing the proposal, Jae-woo unceremoniously grabs him by the collar. Leaning in, he asks the guild leader if he's any good at making threats. Changing scenes, a large castle is shown with a red flag. Inside the castle, Elector Philip is seated, receiving one of his servants. Questioning what he's saying, the official asks if Saxon really threatened them. The servant explains that in return, they offered to extend the payment deadline by 2 years. Lowering his head, the servant says they were left with no other option. In a swift motion, an object in the room is thrown and shatters into pieces. At that, the official orders the servant to go to the capital immediately to resolve the situation. He even tells the servant to cling to the emperor's robes if he has to. Pointing forward, he screams for him to do whatever it takes. With increased proficiency, your skill promotes the vampires to the Daywalker class. Reading the system message, Jae-woo simply repeats their new name. Resolute, he brings his hands together to summon his powerful servant, Piffenheim. Emerging from the shadows, Piffenheim appears and formally greets his master. Jae-woo informs him that they have evolved and will therefore receive a special mission. Then he hands over a letter, ordering it to be taken to Rebus Chaltz. As he takes the item, Piffenheim is ordered to handle it with extreme care. Once the mission is assigned, Jae-woo simply tells him to leave without delay. He then turns to Pizamut and asks if he's leaving now. Pizamut approaches, confirming that he has prepared everything as requested. Pointing to the side, he shows the carriage made by the best craftsman. Impressed by the fancy vehicle, Jae-woo listens to the explanation of how it was acquired. Inside it, Pizamut reveals bags of money to cover all expenses. Curious, he then asks what Jae-woo's plan is for all this luxury. Jae-woo responds with a threat, but Pizamut quickly declines to know the details. Behind her father, the young Moran appears to say goodbye as well. Gently caressing her, Jae-woo tells her to take care of herself, even though she's feeling better. She then says she also has something for him, making him curious. Approaching quickly, she gives him a kiss on the cheek as thanks. Pizamut and Aquila are completely shocked by her action. Smiling, the girl simply says that was her gift. After the farewell, the two watch Jae-woo's carriage finally depart. As they walk away, Marin asks if her father remembers an old wish of hers. With a worried look, he confirms that he remembers it very well. Looking at him, the girl smiles, ready to reveal her big request. She declares that her wish is to become Lord Jae-woo's bride. Remembering the past, Pezamut recalls when she used to say she would marry him. With a shout, the father completely rejects her idea of marriage. Now far from the city, the carriage continues on its way down the road. Inside the vehicle, Aquila comments on the courage of that warrior girl. Aquila then asks if her master likes money that much, surprising him. Laughing hard, he replies that she doesn't understand, because the world runs on money. Seeing their reaction, he asks them not to look at him that way. He then uses the ring to contact one of his allies. Kubalt appears, celebrating that Jae-woo survived and managed to return from Gross Glockner. As a crow approaches, he remarks that Jae-woo is as straightforward as ever. Changing the subject, Jae-woo asks if the Ritter Knights have already left the city. Kubalt explains that he checked everything with his crows and has new information. Noting the quick check, Jae-woo wants to know the situation. Through the crow, Kubalt confirms that his suspicions were completely correct. He reports that they left for the capital, seeming extremely furious. Watching their departure, Jae-woo admits he just irritated them a bit. Kubalt then reveals he has more surprising news to share with him. He says that Roalin, the Demon King of Roses, is in the capital. Finding it interesting, Jae-woo asks Kubalt to spread a rumor throughout the capital. Jae-woo guarantees good compensation, but Kubalt says they're close and Jae-woo cuts him off. Kubalt tells him not to be shy, but Jae-woo warns that he's hanging up. Hanging up the call, he complains about the forced intimacy, finding it all disgusting. Impressed, Aquila comments that his influence seems to be greater than she imagined. Maintaining a strange smile, he continues to devise his new plan in silence. Frightened by his demeanor, Aquila asks why he's staring at her. Turning to the side, he asks Calione what she thinks about making her debut. Changing scenes, the focus shifts to the imperial capital of Vien. Through the city streets, people walk and go about their own lives. Among the crowd, some nobles also stroll peacefully through the downtown streets. In a tavern, a man spreads the rumor of the arrival of Kaimar's daughter. He explains that Odgot killed Kaimar's and then adopted the former king's daughter. His friend questions the reason, wanting to understand why he would do such a thing. Shouting, he reveals the reason was her beauty, surprising the other man. Suddenly, one of them points to the street, announcing that she's arriving. Feeling embarrassed, Calione asks if this is really necessary for the plan. He responds by shouting that her face is a powerful strategic weapon. She asks about real weapons, but he scolds her for her rude language. Seeing the crowd staring, she feels awkward, but he tells her to follow his command. Beginning his demonstration, he instructs her to place one hand under her face. Continuing with the pose, he tells her to rest her other hand on her knee. Finishing the instruction, he tells her to make the most timid face possible. Striking the full pose, he shows her how she should act to look embarrassed. She refuses, but he insists she do it while everyone is watching. Trying to argue about her honor, she hears him ask if she wants to be fired. With nothing to say, she falls silent at his threat. With a victorious smile, he waits for her to finally obey his orders. Reluctantly, she begins to follow the instructions, placing her hand under her face. She then positions her other hand on her knee, completing the rehearsed pose. Making a shy face, she leaves the crowd completely enchanted by the scene. Executing the pose perfectly, she says she's very embarrassed. Completely silent, the crowd just watches the scene without any reaction. Turning to her master, she asks if she did everything right. At that, the crowd erupts in shouts and cheers, going absolutely wild. Seeing everyone shouting, she is completely surprised by the unexpected reaction. Then she questions if that was exactly what was supposed to happen. Changing scenes, Roland appears in a large hall before her servants. She then announces to everyone that a very important guest will arrive today. Explaining the situation, she says the guest is more important than anyone else. For this reason, she asks everyone to do their utmost in the preparations. To the cooks, she orders them to prepare the most delicious dish of all. To the maids, she commands them to decorate the place better than her own palace. Arriving in a hurry, a servant announces they will be arriving soon, surprising her. With everything ready, she asks them to make this the most special day. Revealing her motivation, she says it's all for her lord, Kymars. Known as the Demon King of Roses, Roland was the envy of all. Using her diplomacy, she transformed her territory into a powerful nation. But in a flashback, the story behind her crown is revealed. She would tell Kymars that she could only open her heart to him. Declaring her heart would never change, she begged for his attention. Then, a young Calione asks who the beautiful lady with him was. Offering a gift, the girl hands her cookies she made with her uncle Odgat. She explains that because she was so beautiful, she would get their best cookie. Holding the gift, Roland says it feels like she has no place to belong. Kymars then asks Princess Calione to give his castle a name. Surprised by the request, the girl pauses for a moment to think. She suggests the name Rose Palace since Roland was so brilliant. At the suggestion, Roland simply smiles upon hearing the palace's new name. Back in the present, Roland says she came to see her only relative. Kneeling, she introduces herself before Lady Calione, Kymars' relative. With everything settled, Roland just watches Calione with a subtle smile. Behind the princess, the maids celebrate the scene that just unfolded. Roland apologizes for not being able to offer a better meal, as they aren't in her palace. Calione quickly replies, saying the food was more than enough. Sitting at the table, she thanks Jaewoo for bringing the princess back. She mentions hearing about him through Count Niederbayern, her friend. At the mention of Valpurgis, Jaewoo gets nervous and tries to change the subject. Roland sighs, saying she loves hearing love stories, which makes him flustered. As the two stare at each other, she says she also likes to talk business. Then Jaewoo reveals he's come to deliver a message from Prince Elector Philip, confirming he is alive. Interested, she asks if she could see him in person to talk. Jaewoo replies that it won't be possible, as he came on his behalf. Her expression changes upon hearing the news he just delivered. Without further delay, she suggests they finally get straight to the point. Sipping from a cup, he prepares to deliver Philip's message. He conveys the message, explaining that Philip has appointed him as his official representative. The order continues, stating that Roelin must help him reclaim the territory. To succeed, he understands he needs to bring Roelin to his side. Seeing the curse on Margareta, he concludes that Pedzamut has strong support. Because of this, he knows that Margareta alone won't be enough for the plan. Recruiting Roelin becomes essential to then be able to blame Pedzamut for everything. Finishing his speech, he says the prince's message ends there. Listening intently, Roland falls silent for a moment, considering the proposal. After a moment's thought, she finally says she has one condition for accepting. Curious about the offer, Jaewoo asks what her condition might be. Tapping her cup, she assumes he already knows about her current economic situation. She says that, as a representative, his words would not be ignored by the emperor. Giving a confident smile, he tells her not to worry about it. With a sinister look, he reveals that the table is already set. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the imperial palace in the capital city of Wien. Shocked, the official questions the emperor, reminding him that he had promised to help. Awkwardly, the emperor simply apologizes profusely for his sudden decision. Seated on his throne, he explains that the story softened his heart. Kneeling on the floor, the official insists there should be a proper order to things. Suddenly, he notices something beside the emperor's throne. Behind the monarch, bags of treasure are revealed, leaving the man stunned. Completely speechless, he keeps staring at the emperor and all that gold. He then explains that he denied the request, but accepted a small tribute. Remembering his master, he recalls the order to resolve the situation. Furious, he curses those who bribed the emperor to get their way. Just then, a guard announces the arrival of Lord Jaewoo at the royal palace. With the announcement, the main hall door slowly opens for him. Entering the hall, Jaewoo says he feels honored to be there. Revealing his full name, he introduces himself as Jaewoo Stead Jaewoo to everyone. Welcoming him, the emperor asks him not to mind that man. Being called a folding screen by the emperor, the official is furious with the comparison. Jaewoo then asks to speak in private, and the emperor agrees to dismiss everyone. Without hesitation, the royal guards grab him to forcibly remove him from the hall. Desperate, he shouts, reminding the emperor of all the support from House Ritter. As he's dragged out, he glares at Jaewoo, unable to do a thing. Waving with a smile, Jaewoo bids farewell to the official being removed. Keeping his wave, he watches the man get completely ignored by his emperor. The official just stares at the scene, unable to believe what was happening. With a smile, Jaewoo simply calls him a fool for his attitude. Shifting to Odget's castle, a storm brews during the night. Seeing her monsters defeated, the demoness is left unable to finish her sentence. Furious, she starts screaming and cursing her own father. Screaming, she says she told him not to interfere, blaming Calione for everything. Clenching her fist, she keeps complaining about the interference in her plans. Then, a servant approaches her, warning that he has very urgent news. Screaming in a rage, she demands to know what is happening immediately. The servant then informs her that the emperor has decreed an economic blockade in the region. She just glares at the messenger with a furious look, saying nothing. In front of all her monsters, she remains silent, processing the news. Worried by the silence, the servant asks if his lady is all right. She yells, demanding to know what it means, and he replies that they're screwed. The emperor asks if they're done, and Jae-woo confirms the hall is clear. Bowing, he begins to praise the emperor's and the capital's achievements. Losing patience, the emperor tells him to stop with all the unnecessary flattery. The monarch calls him a weasel, already analyzing his underlying intentions. He reflects on how Jae-woo, despite being new to politics, had already made his mark. Using Kaimar's daughter, he managed to soften the anti-demon sentiment in the region. With this strategy, he was able to turn everyone into his powerful allies. Even with all this, the emperor knew he had a motive. To him, Jae-woo was just a drunken rat in front of a cat. But Jae-woo had already predicted the emperor would think that exact way. Knowing the emperor was onto him, he prepares to negotiate. The emperor calls him eager and tells him to say what he wants. Kneeling, he begins to prepare to make his grand request to the monarch. He humbly asks for Rosarant's economic blockade to be moved to Odgat. The emperor asks what he would gain, and he offers a friendship treaty. Laughing at the proposal, the emperor finds it ridiculous that she would bow to him. With the contract in hand, Jae-woo assures him she will do as he wishes. Handing over the document, he surprises the emperor, who wasn't expecting such proof. In disbelief, the emperor takes the document to verify if it's actually real. Jae-woo confirms that Roland agreed to pay 10,000 florins a year. Still suspicious, the monarch questions if there's any proof of the document's authenticity. With a confident smile, he prepares to present his final argument. He begins by saying that Odgat is the most despised villain on the continent. By placing a blockade on him, the emperor's name would spread throughout the world. Finding it intriguing, the emperor hands the document back to him and reflects. Despite the proposal, he says there's no justification for this decision. Seeing the refusal, Jae-woo counters the argument, calling the emperor arrogant. Then he reminds the emperor that Odgat died in the last Great War, but his followers are now preparing to declare war on the demon dragon. With the imminent conflict, the empire's citizens are terrified. Jae-woo warns that the time has come for the emperor to make his final decision. Analyzing the proposal, the emperor reflects on the situation for a moment. Praising his silver tongue, he says Jae-woo could pay off any debt quickly. Using his ability, Jae-woo says he only wants to repay the emperor's grace. Clenching his fist, he demonstrates his loyalty as a humble subject of the empire. Furious, the emperor calls him a fool for trying to deceive him with lies. Feigning surprise, he wonders how the emperor managed to resist his ability. Calling the guards, the emperor orders them not to let him leave there alive. As he's grabbed, he questions what the emperor is doing to him. He hears the order to be taken away, wondering why. As he's dragged away, he thinks that this can't be right. The scene changes, and a musician begins to play a trumpet at a ball. In the hall, Calione and her maids enjoy the food at the grand feast. With the music playing, several couples begin to dance cheerfully across the hall. Laughing heartily, the emperor praises the sweet words he just heard. Laughing strangely, Jae-woo realizes the emperor's true intention. The emperor scolds him, saying he told him to call him uncle, and hugs him. Forcing a smile, Jae-woo agrees and addresses him as his uncle. Happy with the response, the emperor celebrates, calling him his adorable nephew. Watching from a distance, a hooded nobleman observes the scene unfold. The emperor promises to give him anything he wants, be it money or power. Biting a handkerchief, the nobleman complains that position should be his. Not understanding how it came to this, he backs away with the other nobles. Remaining silent, the group's leader watches the scene from afar. One of the nobles suggests they simply kidnap Valpurgis to solve the problem. Another member warns that it's dangerous, but they're out of options. Desperate, he says it's not that simple, and that their families could suffer. The leader just scoffs at the absurd suggestion they just made. With a determined look, he orders them to execute the plan immediately. Back at the ball, Jae-woo feels suffocated by the emperor's tight embrace. Calione just watches him, saying it's his own fault for drinking everything. With his face on the emperor's shoulder, he complains that this is social life. In a flashback, he remembers when he used to drink much more than this. Lying on the table, he tells her to leave and tries to use his ring. He answers the call, but hears Kubalt say that something terrible has happened. Complaining of a headache, he's scolded for not taking it seriously. Kubalt warns that the situation is serious, revealing that Valpurgis has been kidnapped. A masked nobleman appears with his followers, confirming the woman's kidnapping. At that exact moment, the scene returns to Odgat's castle. Standing up, Margareta says there's no time to hesitate and that she must avenge her father. With a smile, she declares that she will devour the demon dragon herself. Ordering her men to prepare, she commands them to gather all capable warriors. She also orders them to be trained without rest, but is informed of a new situation. Pointing her finger, she orders everyone to head for Gross Glockner. The servant tries to warn her that it's time for caution, but she ignores him. He explains that the Emperor has declared a blockade and Valpurgis has resurrected the saint. Furthermore, with the end of the blockade, Roland won't stay quiet either. Trying to urge more caution, he is interrupted by her furious shout. Stepping on him, she orders the weakling not to block her path any longer. Seeing her attitude, the servant concludes that they are now completely screwed. Tied up, Valpurgis struggles to break free from the ropes. Screaming, she demands to know why they're keeping her alive for so long. The nobleman boasts about his fortress's ironclad defense, surrounded by the lake. Confidently, he says that even the Bayern army would struggle to invade. She calls him a fool, saying they won't just politely knock on the gates. With his eye gleaming, he glares at her, hating her defiant attitude. Losing his patience, he kicks her and tells her to shut up. He yells that she's too loud and asks if she was close to Jae-woo. Remembering the humiliation, he rages as he recalls what Jae-woo put him through. Angrily, he promises to make her suffer the same disgrace in Jae-woo's place. Laughing at the threat, he says there's nothing she can do. Touching his helmet, he claims she's all alone now. Suddenly, a guard shouts a warning that an intruder has been spotted on the premises. That same night, an army gathers atop a castle under the moon. Hexax reports that all units are assembled and ready to attack. Asking if she can join, Aquila hears Jae-woo confirm that she will. With a shout in the background, he just tells the person to be quiet. He then reveals the mission: to rescue Valpurgis and annihilate the Ritters. Drawing his sword, he says he was willing to ignore them if they had just stayed quiet. Gripping the weapon tightly, he declares that the hunt is finally about to begin. As his soldiers advance, Hexax uses her whip against the enemies there. Turning to the side, he tells Hexax to handle that sector of the battle. Confirming the order, she replies, "Yes, my lord," with a smile. Running towards him, Kururak desperately begs to be taken along too. Hexax stops him, saying he'll stay behind to help her clean up the place. Seeing his bound servant, Jae-woo orders him to help Hexax with the cleanup. Shouting that he doesn't want to, he's ignored by Jae-woo, who continues on his way. Saying he has no time, he warns that he needs to move quickly. Appearing before the nobles, he faces the leader of the kidnapping. He says he could never forget that disgusting face he was seeing. Shouting at his guard, he orders him to hand over the sword immediately. Holding the weapon, he says he'll use it to slit Jae-woo's throat. Running, he yells that he's going after Jae-woo, ignoring the calls from behind. Sitting down, the other noble orders the guard to go after him without delay. Seeing the invasion, Valpurgis realizes Jae-woo has come to rescue her once again. In a flashback, she remembers how he always came to save her from everything. She recalls that, from the very beginning, he was by her side. Back in the present, she grows angry at her own powerlessness in the situation. Using her strength, she strains with all her might to break the ropes. The older noble laments, saying everything was going so well. Seeing the ropes snapping, he prepares for the fight to come. With the ropes broken, Valpurgis finally stands up, free to fight. Seeing she broke her restraints, he says it doesn't matter without a sword. Shouting, he charges at her but is met with a headbutt. She hits him squarely, sending the man flying back from the impact. Seeing the attack, his guard blocks the blow with his own arm. With a broken arm, he's shocked by the force of that blow. Advancing with a sword, he says she won't get away with this. Before he can attack, she lands a direct blow to his face. The impact sends him flying, even knocking out one of his teeth. Falling to the ground, he slides to a stop a few meters away from her. Saying she can no longer depend on others, she decides to end it all. Desperate, he says he never wanted to kidnap her, blaming his son for everything. Ignoring his excuses, she prepares for the final attack. With her strength, she shatters the entire stone floor around her. Seeing her power, he calls her a monster, completely terrified by the scene. Rebuking him for the offense, she says it's rude to call a lady that. With her eyes glowing, she prepares to use one of her abilities. A huge, shadowy figure emerges behind her, surprising the nobleman. She then turns, ready to finish him once and for all. Laughing, he says monsters should fight monsters and summons his creature. With a shout, he summons the humanoid creature named Igor to the battle. Meanwhile, Jae-woo runs through the castle corridors searching for the hostage. Through the ring, he asks if that was really the right way to go. Elsewhere, Kubalt informs him about the appearance of someone named Igor. He explains that Igor is Ritter's human weapon, a brutal creature. Realizing Igor wasn't in the original story, he's interrupted by a scream. Unconcerned, he just smiles at the enemy in the distance. Thanking him for the information, he tells Kubalt he's hanging up now. With a war cry, The nobleman charges toward him to attack. Making a gesture, Jae-woo prepares to intercept the approaching attack. Before he's hit, he manages to stop the sword with just 2 fingers. Mocking how he was humiliated, a shadow appears behind the nobleman. Without understanding a thing, he is struck by a powerful blow. The blow knocks the man out, and he falls to the ground, unconscious. Seeing the fallen man, he asks what that was all about. Complaining about the wasted time, he runs off without further delay. Elsewhere, Igor advances and unleashes a powerful blow in her direction. Standing there, Valpurgis faces the enormous creature attacking her head-on. Leaping into the air, she attacks with a powerful spinning strike. After landing, she comes face to face with the giant Igor. Recognizing the body, she says he was the one who ambushed her before. She then says that as a member of the convent, she cannot let her guard down. Beginning to rage, he thrashes about violently. Seeing the scene, Lord Ritter just smiles at what's happening. Laughing at her confusion, he says she dared to say it. Then he explains, that was the word Igor hates the most. With a malicious smile, he prepares to reveal the word. Shouting loudly, he reveals that the trigger was the Valpurga convent. Confused, she just watches the monster's strange reaction before her. With the situation out of control, she screams, asking for the reason behind it all. Serving a simple meal, they prepare for dinner. She complains about the food, but the servant explains that their finances are tight. He asks her to keep her voice down, revealing that even the castle has been sold. Changing the subject, she asks if the army is ready. Correcting him with a strike, she yells that it's training, not treatment. She says meat cures everything, blaming her father for spoiling them. Telling them to eat quickly, she orders all her men to be assembled. The scene shifts to a convent, where 2 nuns stand in front of the church. In a flashback, a young man bows before 2 hooded figures. The nun says that faith is proven by weight, not devotion. Dismissing the boy, she says this is a convent and he lacks strength. Back in the fight, Igor charges with a strike, and Valpurgis blocks him. Dodging the attack, she counters with a direct blow to her opponent. He then fires a massive energy blast in her direction. Laughing at the scene, the Lord says, no one can stop a furious Igor. Suddenly, he's hit by a blow and thrown far away. Launched through the window, he shatters the glass and falls from the castle. Watching the monster, she says she doesn't know the reason for his rage. Seeing his fists, she understands they carry a great deal of sadness. Preparing her attack, she focuses her energy at her fingertips. He attacks with a powerful blow, but she manages to defend against it. The impact enrages him, and he prepares his next attack. His eyes begin to glow, showing his accumulated fury and power. Yelling, he prepares to unleash an attack with all his might. In a flashback, the young man begins his training to gain more strength. Doing push-ups and lifting weights, he trains hard to achieve his goal. After much training, he looks in the mirror, seeing his progress. Back in the present, he remembers all his past training. Focusing his power, he prepares to unleash a devastating attack on her. Charging forward, he delivers a series of powerful blows against Valpurgis. With a battle cry, she prepares her final attack against the monster. She then lands a direct hit, throwing him forcefully against the wall. From the impact, the castle ceiling begins to shake and crack. Standing over him, she warns she will face him again when he's ready to fight. Knocked out on the ground, the giant is finally defeated. She then realizes the entire fortress is starting to crumble around them. As he runs through the corridors, he continues his desperate search for Valpurgis. Feeling the tremor, he wonders if it's a massive earthquake. Suddenly, the ceiling collapses right in front of him, blocking the path. Summoning his sword, he shouts the name Rublanya to clear the way. With weapon in hand, he destroys the blocking rubble. Seeing the hole, he complains that his path is completely blocked by debris. Looking at the destroyed passage, he warns that their time is running out. Through the ring, Kubalt asks if Lord Jae-woo is feeling alright. He confirms he is, but asks if Valpurgis is safe. Kubalt says he has sent a familiar and urges them to escape quickly. Seeing the castle crumble, she gets up from the floor where she had fallen. Believing Jae-woo is coming, she decides she must find him quickly. She recalls a past moment, wanting to say something she couldn't. Suddenly, she senses danger and quickly turns around. A huge rock falls from the ceiling, heading right for her. With a swift move, a blur slices the rock in half. Jae-woo suddenly appears, destroying the debris and saving her life. Relieved, she looks at him, happy to have been saved in time. Reunited, they both shout each other's names amidst the chaos. Seeing the fallen man, he asks who it is, and she answers it's Igor. With the familiar insisting, they agree to get out of there as fast as possible. Running, she's surprised such a big guy could fit in the glove. Following the bat, he says they're almost out. As the escape unfolds, she just watches the scene with a smile. While running, she tells him she has something important to say. He replies that he also has a lot to say, but they agree to wait. Ignoring his request, she reveals that Valpurgis is a fake name. Shouting loudly, she finally reveals her real name is Chartier. He compliments the name, finding it beautiful, but has a strange expression. Suddenly he asks, "What's a name?" leaving her confused. Completely shocked, he repeats the question, not understanding the situation. She yells at him to watch out for the falling debris. Turning back, he sees the ceiling collapsing right on top of him. The familiar is thrown far away by the force of the impact. Seeing this, the bat screams that Jae-woo is going to die, but he denies it. Looking at the wreckage, he realizes the entire ceiling has completely collapsed. He yells that he's okay and asks if she's safe too. Seeing the two of them, Hexax comments on the pleasant atmosphere between them. Extending a hand, he asks Valpurgis to take it so they can get out. Just as they're about to be saved, their hands finally meet mid-air. Watching the scene, Hexax just observes with a surprised and curious look. Suddenly, she warns that the fortress will collapse in just 5 seconds. Shouting, he tells everyone to hurry up and escape as fast as possible. Being pulled up, she screams Jae-woo's name as she's lifted. He holds her firmly, pulling her up so she can be saved. With a shout, he calls her by her real name, Chartier, as the castle explodes. A cloud of dust and smoke rises, covering the entire explosion site. In the air, Hexax holds Jae-woo and Chartier, saving them both from the fall. With a system notification, he discovers Valpurgis's real name. Without her helmet, she faces him, her affection for him growing. Floating over to him, Valpurgis warns that the falling rubble almost crushed them all. At that moment, Hexax appears, announcing that his lord has an important call from Kubalt. Over the communicator, a voice shouts Jae-woo's name, clearly in distress. But on the call, Margareta explains she was already on her way to finish them off. He questions this, asking if she really plans to capture and beat all of them. Smiling, she confirms it, calling the knights wretched worms. She then announces to the knights that they're about to witness her secret technique. Far in the distance, a massive explosion erupts in the middle of the enemy fortress. She then raises her arms, shouting the name of her attack, Supernova. Faced with such power, the knights can only scream as they try to escape the impending doom. The attack descends from the heavens, striking the ground with absolutely devastating force. Margarita stands in the middle of the crater, laughing at the result of her power. Witnessing such power, Jae-woo simply observes the scene wordlessly. The scene changes, shifting to the grand village of Valpurgis. There, Margareta is laughing heartily next to a masked Valpurgis. Looking into the distance, Valpurgis notes that he's arriving for their meeting. Immediately after, a troop of knights arrives, making a dramatic entrance. A long red carpet is rolled out before them, leading to the entrance. Walking down the carpet, Prince-Elector Philip makes his appearance, followed by his entire retinue of guards. Approaching him, Valpurgis asks her uncle if he's been well. Without a word, Philip rushes forward and suddenly pulls Valpurgis into a tight hug. Worried, he asks if she was hurt, telling her how distressed he was about the situation. But she replies she's safe, explaining it was all thanks to Jae-woo. Hearing that name, Philip's demeanor shifts, and he orders Jae-woo to get out of his sight. At that moment, Margareta cuts in, reminding him that Valpurgis is only safe because of Jae-woo. Irritated, Philip complains that the only reason he didn't arrive sooner was because of that brat. With a smirk, Jae-woo simply tells him to consider himself lucky. Philip then glances at his soldiers, skeptical that Jae-woo could be faster than them. Then he grabs Valpurgis, yelling that she's going to sleep with him tonight. Later, an announcement is made. For his contributions, Jae-woo will be granted the title of knight. Issuing the order, Philip commands him to serve Valpurgis with unwavering loyalty. Thanking him for the honor, Jae-woo bows and accepts his new position as a knight. During the ceremony, he kneels to receive the title directly from the prince. Even so, the Prince-Elector couldn't hide his clear displeasure with the situation. Next, a contract is shown, revealing that the debt was paid with land. Upon seeing this, several nobles become angry and begin to complain directly to Jae-woo. Suddenly, a video call from the emperor interrupts everyone's discussion. Seated on his throne, the emperor asks if they dare to disrespect his brother. With a victorious smile, Jae-woo watches the other nobles' reaction to the sermon. After a long day, he finally lies down in his bed to rest. Lying in bed, he recalls that he is now an official knight with his own land. Still, he opens his eyes, finding the whole situation hard to believe. In a flashback, he's seen observing Valpurgis during countless battles of the past. But now, looking at her, he feels that everything seems completely new and different. Snapping back to reality, he suddenly bolts up in bed as if startled. Suddenly, Calione appears and confronts him, yelling and looking furious. She screams, demanding to know how he could just vanish after telling her to follow him. Placing a hand on her shoulder, he calls her Princess Calione, trying to calm her down. Just then, Roland enters the room, stopping the fight before it can begin. Urging her to calm down, Roland tells her to pull herself together and challenge him again later. Whispering in her ear, Roland clarifies she wasn't talking about that kind of challenge. After hearing the secret, Callione's face turns red and she is completely speechless. She agrees to calm down, but warns Jaewoo he'd better answer when she calls for him later. Outside, he thanks Roland for saving him from that whole mess. Just as he's about to finally get some sleep, he yawns, but is interrupted by someone calling his name. Turning around, he finds Valpurgis standing there, surrounded by many red roses. With a shy look, she asks if he would like to take a walk with her. Completely stunned, he blurts out that they can go for that walk this very moment. Walking under the night sky, she comments that the day was quite chaotic for everyone. Then the two continue their walk, side by side through the quiet night. To make conversation, he asks if Valpurgis is actually her nickname. With a faint smile, she confirms that it isn't her real name. She explains it's her baptismal name, given in honor of the goddess Valfurga. He nods, remarking that the name does sound fitting for the goddess of compassion. It's then shown that several gods exist in this world, such as the god of justice. Among them are also the goddess of compassion and the goddess of nature. The silhouette of the god of light is then revealed among the deities. And finally, Aquila, the sovereign of time and space, is the last to be introduced. Returning to their conversation, he tells her that Chartier is a beautiful name that suits her well. A little embarrassed, she says he can call her that, but only when they're alone. He agrees to her condition, promising to only call her that when it's just the two of them. Getting excited, he thinks to himself that things are going well and even hopes for a kiss. But suddenly, a massive explosion erupts right in front of them. They're thrown back by the blast, staring in shock as the dust settles. Emerging from the smoke, Shubi appears and tells Jaewoo to hurry up and deal with the situation. Shouting for everyone to assemble, a commander rallies her demon army for a mission. In the middle of the crowd, several of the demon soldiers are wearing only their underwear. She questions this, asking why they're dressed like that. The answer, they're broke. After a brief discussion, she changes the subject and points toward the horizon. Revealing the plan, she says their destination is the demonic dragon's lair. She then orders them not to be afraid and to simply devour everything that moves. Raising her fist high, the commander declares that the demonic dragon will be hers alone. Carried by her, he complains about them cutting the connection at such a critical moment. Annoyed, she says this kind of thing should be handled by a superior, but she insists, stating that he's the only one who can solve this. Looking around, they survey the rocky and dangerous terrain of the dragon's lair. Then she asks what exactly he's planning to do to resolve the situation. Analyzing everything, she starts to remember several past events involving him. In one memory, she recalls the strange energy that came from his body before. She also remembers he was cunning enough to toy with the powerful Odgash. Putting all the memories together, she understands the various things she's witnessed about him. Touching his forehead, she concludes that he must be the one responsible for everything. Grabbing her by the shoulders, he asks what she is and if she can hear him. Confirming she can hear him clearly, he announces they will perform a soul oath. With a smile, he asks what exactly this so-called soul oath is. Explaining the pact, he says they need a dangerous being to act as a guarantor for the agreement. Then he asks if she's planning to summon the Dark Lord to be the witness. Seeing her expression, he realizes the answer to his question is yes. Recalling the past, he says he survived thanks to Margaretta's kindness, but now things are different. Raising a finger, he then asks what would happen if he simply refused to help. Repeating the word refuse, she unleashes a massive amount of energy around her body. She then fires a powerful attack in his direction, destroying the ground around them. Surprised by her reaction, he braces for the impact of the incoming blow. Crossing his arms, he defends himself and complains that she should use her words instead. Pointing down, he warns that he'll set a condition for accepting the deal. She agrees instantly, making him wonder why it was so easy. Explaining the reason, he says he likes straightforward people and trusts her promise. With a smile on his face, he comments that things are about to get very interesting. Facing each other, they prepare to finally begin the ritual. Before they start, she says she'd first like to express her gratitude to him. With a serious look, she announces that they can finally begin the soul oath. At that, a dark energy surrounds them both, initiating the pact. Feeling the pressure of the ritual, he says his mind feels like it's drifting away. Shouting, she tells him to focus, warning that this place is close to death. Suddenly, a notification appears, informing him that the player's soul is being protected. Realizing the intensity, he comments that this is on a whole different level than before. Standing alone in a dark place, he finds himself in a deep, complete void. Looking from side to side, he tries to find something amidst all the darkness. Finding nothing, he realizes there is absolutely nothing in that place with him. Seeing his strange calmness, She calls out his name, sounding quite worried about him. Calmly, he asks what's wrong, telling her that expression doesn't suit her. Telling her to stop talking nonsense, he orders them to get on with the ritual. Agreeing with the order, she simply replies yes and prepares to continue. Turning her back, she begins to chant to the darkness of the abyss. Then she shouts, requesting an audience with the great and seething abyss before them. After the call, they both fall silent, just waiting for a response to arrive. Bubbles start to rise from the water, and he warns that it's finally coming. Rising from the water, a giant bubble of darkness emerges right in front of them. Watching the scene, he feels apprehensive about what's about to happen. Then, something begins to slowly emerge from within that liquid darkness. From inside the water, a mysterious woman finally reveals her presence to them. With a serious gaze, she stares at the two who summoned her for the ritual. As she watches, a single tear suddenly and without warning runs down her face. Analyzing the pair, she says she sees a dragon and a human before her. When asked how she knows, she replies that of course she would know. Revealing her form, the entity of the abyss is seen sitting on a throne of tentacles. She then warns that he can't hide anything from her, including his true intentions. Seeing that, he realizes the process is going to be much faster than he expected. Suddenly, Shubi yells at the entity, demanding that she grant their request at once. Ignoring the shout, the woman just looks down, observing her impatient reaction. With a glint in her monocle, she continues to analyze the situation in silence. Trying to intervene, he calls her the Dark Lord and asks her to wait. Agreeing to the request, the entity says she will grant the pact and a gift. Immediately after, two tentacles emerge and touch each of their heads, but she warns that, at the moment, he cannot handle 3 different sponsors. Confused, he questions this information, as he should only have one sponsor. Reading his mind, she comments that he doesn't know the truth about it yet. With a smile, she points and says he'll find out everything soon enough. At that, a large sphere of energy forms and completely envelops the two of them. Saying goodbye, the entity says she will wait for him until their next meeting. Then she wishes for his body to be larger the next time they meet. Annoyed, he yells that they're all the same as he disappears in a flash. Returning to the lair, he and Shubi reappear, and he looks completely exhausted. Suddenly, a notification pops up, showing that his stats have increased significantly from the pact. Questioning if that was all, he hears her voice echo with the same wish. Clenching his fist, he asks if this means he needs to get stronger. Calling him an idiot, Shubi explains that death is the least of his problems now. Raising her mace, the commander prepares to attack the dragon. With a powerful strike, she hits the ground, causing an explosion of rocks. Laughing loudly, she shouts that she has finally arrived to face the demon dragon. Not understanding anything, Jae-woo asks who that woman is, but Shubi doesn't know. She then points to her army and orders the demon dragon to come down now. Yelling in anger, she challenges him to a fight, revealing herself to be Margarita Fontache. On the rocky terrain, a strong wind picks up, signaling the calm is over. Faced with the situation, Margarita just lets out a loud, confident laugh. With a serious tone, Shubi introduces himself as the demonic dragon known as Schwarze Teufel. Shouting, Margarita declares she's here for revenge, so Jae-woo tells Shubi to fight. In a flashback, the entity warns that its gift causes fatal damage when received. Showing his body, Shubi complains that he's already a wreck and can't fight anymore. Then he adds that he's also exhausted and can't even summon an undead. Just then, a window informs him that his HP has temporarily dropped below 10%, but the system announces that he can now turn a being of darkness into an undead. A bolt of lightning strikes the ground from the heavens, and an alert warns of the danger. With a smile, he says his only support now comes from the tomb's guardian. He reveals that he received the call of 3 transcendent beings, though he doesn't know the details. Saying it's nothing, his eye glows as he ignores the danger warning. Pointing forward, he shouts that if that's the case, they can bring on 10 more. From far away, the entity of the abyss just calmly watches the situation unfold. Smiling, the entity simply watches the events unfold from far away. Then, with the summon, a powerful bolt of lightning strikes the ground with great force. Surprised by the impact, Margareta and her army are thrown back slightly. Emerging from the smoke, a dark silhouette begins to take shape on the battlefield. Revealing his identity, the summoned being is Prince Philip, now an undead. Walking up to him, Jae-woo tells him to stop posing and get out of the way. Turning his head, Philip just stares at him in silence, not moving a muscle. With his soul in hand, the notification confirms that Jae-woo has completely subjugated him. Even while controlled, Philip shouts that he'll still end his life. With a smirk, Jae-woo simply invites him to go ahead and try his luck. Obeying the order, the undead turns and faces Margarita's army. Pointing at the servant, she asks if he thinks one undead will face them. Shouting that he's insolent, the entire demon army charges forward to attack. But, readying his sword, Philip activates his Lunar Shadow Sword art. With one move, he unleashes several slashes that slice through the enemies before him. Wielding his sword, the undead calls everyone there insignificant worms. Surprised by his attitude, continued, Margareta doesn't understand what's happening in the battle. Screaming in rage, she leaps toward him to attack with her club. Amidst the rubble, she dodges his blows and attacks relentlessly. Complaining, she says he's just running around like a little rat. Then, with a shout, she prepares to use a much more powerful attack. Spinning her body, she throws her club at him with all her might. Seeing the blow coming, Philip prepares to use his sword for defense. Using his sword art, he readies a crescent moon-shaped slash. His strike flies forward, creating a trail of energy toward the enemy's attack. She's surprised to see the power of the counterattack coming her way. Without looking away, he watches the result of his attack with full attention. With contempt, he says she only understands brute force and nothing more. At that moment, a dark slash hits her face with great speed. Taking the hit, she's thrown backward, spitting blood from the impact. Landing a direct hit, he sends her flying back with immense force. One of her minions screams in desperation, seeing his leader attacked like that. Without hesitation, he rips off her arm, making the minion scream her name. Watching the scene, Shubi remains silent, just analyzing how the fight is unfolding. Shubi then asks if he really tore off her arm, and Jaewoo confirms it. With a smile, the undead says that brutality suits vampires much better. Falling to the ground, Margareta lies there, defeated, next to her little minion. Worried, the minion asks if she's okay, but she says it was nothing. Then the minion warns that the undead is too strong and they need to run, but she refuses to flee, saying he killed her subordinates first. Approaching her, the undead prepares to deliver the final blow to his opponent. With a confident look, he gets ready to finally end the fight for good. Just then, she says she needs to surpass her father, releasing an energy around her. Suddenly, an armored golem appears and blocks the attack at the last second. Pushed back, the golem withstands the impact and protects her from the blow. Standing up, the golem turns and tells her she needs to retreat from the fight. Then the golem grabs her and starts carrying her away from the battle. As she flees, she shouts, telling her minion to survive and come back alive. Seeing the golem in action, its visor lights up with a small glow. Looking at the golem, Philip calls it a ridiculous creature, but admits its strength. Charging at the golem, the undead prepares to attack the new opponent. The two face off and he yells, "That's enough fighting." With his arms crossed, Jaewoo orders Philip to stop the fight and spare the golem. Stopping his attack, the undead looks at his master, awaiting new orders. Returning to his side, the undead waits calmly as Jaewoo approaches. Confused, Shubi asks why he suddenly decided to spare the enemy. With a smile, he says he doesn't kill needlessly when he doesn't have to. Looking toward the horizon, he adds that the golem might be useful. Changing scenes, a swordswoman is surrounded by armed, masked men. Tired, she prepares to fight, identified as the swordswoman Falk. Surrounded by enemies, she gets ready to fight them all at once. Using her sword, she manages to take down one of the masked assassins attacking her. Even at a disadvantage, she keeps fighting the enemies with all her strength. Parrying one of the attacks, she defends herself while trying to find an opening to strike back. But, distracted by the front, one of the enemies attacks her from behind with a dagger. Fallen on the ground, she's surrounded by the assassins, with no way to escape. Shortly after, an error message reports that the protector Falk has finally been killed. Finding his minion, the golem tells him he survived the attack. Annoyed by the interference, she strikes the golem that saved her. Then she yells that she could have surpassed her father if he hadn't interfered. From inside the golem, a girl emerges, thankful that he's safe. Seeing the fight, the minion tries to explain that the golem's intentions were good. Pouting, she just watches the situation, still annoyed by his interference. Agreeing to forgive him, she says it's okay, but just this once. Just then, Jaewoo gets an error notification saying the Guardian has been killed. Rushing to Shubi, he yells that a Guardian was killed and demands an explanation. Crossing her arms, she asks if the Guardians are connected to the seal in some way. Without answering, she just tells him to follow her to the next destination. Going down a narrow path, they are surprised by a spear trap. With a shout, she narrowly dodges the deadly trap that springs from the ground. Reaching the end of the path, they head down the stairs to the lower level. Annoyed, he complains about her dragging him along without explaining what's going on. Explaining the situation, she says this is important for the world's survival. He then realizes that if that seal breaks, the world will end instantly. Before a giant gate, they observe the chains that keep it sealed and secure. With her hands glowing, she says she'll now open the seal for him to see. Surprised, he shouts, asking if there's something even worse than he imagined. Just then, the chains begin to glow and release a greenish gas. Scared, he asks what that gas is and is warned to protect himself. With a focused gaze, she watches the gas spread through the area without moving. The gas begins to dissipate, revealing something in the center of the room. Looking ahead, he asks what that is, surprised by what he's seeing. In the center of the room, a chained chest is revealed to be the heart of the seal. After passing through the gate, they both kneel, exhausted from the difficult crossing. She then explains that it's a fragment of the Great Dark Lord's body. The fragment sealed in the chest is known to all as the Stirring Death. Finally, she reveals that for the past 6 months, the seal has been weakening. Recalling the past, he notes that the timing coincides with Philip's death. He finally understands that the difficulty warning message was because of the seal. Pointing at him, she says that with the Guardian's death, the seal has weakened. She then asks how he was able to summon a Guardian as an undead. Explaining, he says he found Philip already dead and just took the body. Looking around the cave, he realizes the gravity of everything happening there. In a vision, the creature from the seal appears, and he knows they have to stop it. With a serious look, she warns that if the creature is revived, the world will end. Arms crossed, he says he understands and needs to keep something under control. Recapping, he understands there are forces trying to break the Dark Lord's seal, and on the other side are the Guardians, who are trying to protect the seal. Looking at his hand, he says he's starting to understand the game's structure. Clenching his fist, he wonders if this is the game's true ending. Agreeing to help, he says he'll leave Philip there so he won't get killed. Complaining, he says he just became a knight, and this is all too much for him. With a smile, she tells him she has an ace up her sleeve for the mission. The scene changes as the two of them fly together to the large village of Valpurgis. Setting him down, she tells him that he'll have to continue alone from here, but before she leaves, he asks if she hasn't forgotten something important. With a sly grin, he reminds her of the promise she made about him. Completely embarrassed, she doesn't know what to say, and is left speechless. Yelling that she's leaving now, she flies away as fast as she can. Seeing her treasure, he celebrates that all the coins will now be his. Suddenly, he sees Philip posting a wanted poster nearby. Looking at the poster, he sees that the wanted picture is of himself. Stunned by the audacity, he just stares at the situation, not knowing how to react. With an annoyed look, Philip seems determined to capture him no matter what. Completely confused, he yells, wondering what the hell is going on. Questioning her attitude, he asks if Valpurgis really put up posters everywhere. Turning his face away, he just watches, looking a bit embarrassed. Suddenly, Valpurgis runs and hugs him tightly, calling his name. Annoyed, Philip yells for her to let go, asking what she's doing. From a distance, Margareta shouts for Philip to get away from her immediately. Welcoming him, a man appears and says he's impressive. Awkwardly, Margareta says she doesn't have to answer any of his questions right now. Seeing her reaction, the man yells her name, looking quite annoyed. Furious, he tears his clothes and demands to know how the abbess of a convent just vanished. As he carries her, Margareta screams, telling him to put her down. Watching the scene, Jae-woo remarks that the place is quite peaceful now. Moving to the room, Valpurgis asks if he needs a territory. He confirms, saying he wants to solidify his base for the future. Sipping her tea, she says his position is already strong and questions his motives. Explaining further, he says he needs to establish his foundations as soon as possible. Thinking, he recalls Shubi mentioning the factions that want to break the seal. His enemies are the followers of the Stirring Death, all high-level demon kings. Returning to the conversation, he apologizes for hiding his true intentions from her. She says she understands, but the domain he received is no longer usable. Remembering the destruction, he comments that Mari turned the place into a wasteland. Looking out the window, he realizes he needs a new plan for his territory. Just then, he gets a call, and Valpurgis tells him to feel free to answer it. On the call, Piffenheim reports they found the Rabes Chalts he mentioned. Praising the good work, he tells Piffenheim to continue the search for the other one. Suddenly, Rebs appears and greets him, asking if he's been well. Replying that he has, he says the city is now full of talented people. Rebes complains that the situation is terrible and no one can live like that. Asking him to wait, Jae-woo calls him over to talk about a better place. Telling the story, a man says everyone was lined up and it gave him the chills. He adds that having nobles around might have been better in that situation. At the table, a man says the nobles would deploy troops to protect their lands. Jae-woo asks if Wittenbayer isn't peaceful at the moment, but Rebes denies it. He denies it, explaining that things aren't exactly peaceful in those lands. Looking into the distance, Rebes says Pezamut's army is everywhere. Sipping coffee, Jae-woo comments that the orc commander changed after the defeat. Thinking of Kallian, he says there's no law stopping a disgraced person from taking over. In a flashback, an empty bowl shows the people's starvation. Back in the room, Valpurgis calls out to him, and he answers promptly. Noticing his expression, she says he seems very happy about something. Changing to a ballroom, several nobles dance and chat casually. In the middle of the party, the new orc commander, Gugushrak, is introduced to everyone. Talking with him, another orc says he expected him to take the post. The orc recalls that he invested the city's tolls in the young orcs. With a smile, he says the children will grow up and become the future. Suddenly, a soldier runs into the hall, shouting for the general's help. Handing him a poster, the soldier yells that they're scattered everywhere. Taking the paper, the general asks what all the commotion is about. After reading the poster, the general's eye glows with intense fury. Angrily, he crumples the paper, releasing a powerful energy around him. Giving the order, he commands the soldier to find out what's happening on the other side. Changing scenes, A crowd gathers in Wittenbayer's city square. Among the people, a hooded man says he understands the citizens' fear. He continues, saying the demons are waiting to attack everyone there. Pointing to prisoners, he says they allied themselves with the demons for safety. Shouting, he reveals that those traitors are part of the city council. Outraged, the citizens start yelling, demanding the traitors' immediate punishment. With clenched fists, they shout that the traitors must simply die. Excitedly, the hooded man says now is the time for everyone to unite. He adds that they need to stand firm to survive the orcs. Agreeing with the speech, the entire crowd raises their fists and shouts in support. Interrupting the speech, two orcs yell that they don't believe any of that nonsense. Angered by the poster, they shout that their commander will never forgive such mockery. Without them noticing, the surrounding humans' eyes turn red as they close in. Charging all at once, the humans attack the orcs, who scream in surprise. From above, the hooded man just watches the chaos unfold. Then, pulling back his hood, he reveals himself to be Jae-woo, laughing at the whole situation. A man addresses the nobles, offering his condolences for the city's tragedy. The king mourns the attack on two honored orc warriors who were there. In front of everyone, the prince-elector says they should be ashamed of themselves. A newspaper spreads the news of the tragedy, blaming the citizens for the incident. Elsewhere, Jae-woo is greeted by a crowd shouting his name excitedly. On a platform, the citizens give him a thunderous ovation, shouting for his long life. Beside him, Valpurgis tells him everyone is here to see him, and they're asking for a speech. He recalls his past, his journey from a commoner to this very moment. Stepping up to the microphone, he says he has finally reached the position he so desired. He grabs the microphone, saying he used the turmoil to get to where he is now. Raising his fist, he declares that from this moment forward, everything begins. With a shout, he fires up the crowd, who cheer for him enthusiastically. He then yells, "Let's go!" and the crowd roars back with even more excitement. Laughing, he celebrates his victory with the people who now support him. With a smile, the screen reveals he acquired the city in 2 days. Celebrating their victory, the entire group raises their beer mugs for a toast. He thanks everyone, saying they all worked hard these past 2 days. Suddenly, Reeves grabs him from behind, putting him in a playful headlock. Smiling, he says that's enough chatter. Jae-woo has somewhere to be. Shoved by Reeves, Jae-woo runs down a hallway, trying to keep his balance. He glances to the side, but focuses only on the path ahead. When he arrives, he finds Valpurgis sitting on a couch, looking nervous. He startles her and apologizes, but she says it's all right. Annoyed by the joke, he grinds his teeth, blaming his friends for the situation. She asks him to sit, saying she wanted to talk with him for a bit. Awkwardly, the two sit facing each other in silence. She praises him, saying he's incredible and always overcomes unexpected challenges. He smiles and replies that he just used his wits as needed. He continues, saying he doesn't deserve that kind of praise, but she disagrees. Telling him not to put himself down, she states that only he could have done it. She tells him that at this point, his modesty is practically a sin. With a smile, he says he thought she wouldn't like that side of him. Surprised, she says it's because he's Jae-woo and she trusts him. In a flashback, he's seen fighting, and she says she can believe in anything he does. The atmosphere gets awkward, and steam shoots from both of their heads in embarrassment. Stammering slightly, she calls out his name, and he answers at once. Blushing, she asks when he's going to call her by her real name. As if struck by an arrow, he realizes he's been calling her Valpurgis this whole time. He tries to speak, but stammers, unable to get her name out at first. Finally, he calls her Chartier. She reacts, slightly embarrassed. Shouting no, she leans across the table, nearly falling on him. Leaning in closer, she says that Chartier is perfectly fine for him to use. Suddenly, a voice cuts in, saying that's quite enough of that. Crouching on the floor, Calione watches them, looking slightly annoyed. Surprised, Jae-woo shouts her name, while Chartier jumps at her sudden appearance. Grabbing him, Calione complains that she wasn't invited to the celebration. Confused, he asks how she managed to get there all of a sudden. From behind a pillar, a hooded woman says she's the one who brought her. The woman adds that Calione has been getting ready since early this morning to meet him. Completely lost, he asks who the hooded woman is. The scene changes to the encampment of Pizamut's army. Arriving on the scene, a demon sees several bodies on the ground and is horrified. A soldier runs up, shouting that the situation is terrible for their lord. The soldier whispers in his ear, recounting what just happened. Hearing the news, Pizamut screams, completely shocked by what he just heard. From inside a tent, a man shouts, asking how she dared to eat his men. A woman apologizes, saying her children are going through a growth spurt. Seated on a throne, the woman is surrounded by several monstrous aquatic creatures. Extending her hand, the water demon Amyunde greets him as her partner. Surprised, Jae-woo calls out for Roilin, who suddenly appears in the room. With a faint smile, she watches him as he slowly approaches her. Then she comments that he already knows Pizamut is receiving support. Jae-woo says Pizamut alone would be easy, but with the Grand Lord, it's a problem. At this, Roland says she suddenly had a new thought about him. She continues, saying he's like a comet that appeared out of nowhere. Listing his allies, she points out the enormous power concentrated around Jaewoo. Thoughtfully, he comments that he feels like he's becoming Philip's substitute. Hearing this, Roland expresses her surprise at his conclusion, but Aquila approaches, asking if he desires anything else. Bringing her face close, she asks him if he wants money. Placing a hand on his chest, she asks if he wants power. Appearing among roses, Roland suggests another option if it's neither of those. Completely flustered, he shouts that it wasn't that. It was about business. Turning his face away, he's clearly embarrassed as she smiles behind him. Next, Margareta asks if his conversation was about business. Aquila also appears, repeating the question about what he wanted to discuss. Shouting, he finally reveals that he needs support with construction technology. Surprised, Roland asks if that was all he needed right now. Held by them, he says yes, but for another place. Changing scenes, Schwarze Teufel suddenly sneezes inside the cave. Jaewoo then asks if dragons catch colds, but she denies the possibility. Elsewhere, Rebus Chaltz thanks a man for the thrilling experience. Interrupting the conversation, Jaewoo grabs him and says he needs to ask him something. He then throws 3 huge bags of coins on the ground in front of them. Shocked, Reeves asks what that is and if he robbed the Imperial Palace. Jaewoo explains it wasn't from the palace, but from a much more dangerous place. Sitting next to the gold, Reeves asks if he's getting it all for free, but Jaewoo says no, asking for his help with recruitment. Saying his attitude is perfect, Reeves yells that this is his specialty. Reeves shouts that they can leave it to him, while Jaewoo decides on the next step. Coming up from behind, Piffenheim reports that he's found General Tilly's whereabouts. He explains the general is in Brightonegg, suspecting he's having problems there. At that moment, a voice says that if it's the city's count, she knows him. Turning around, Jaewoo sees it's Valpurgis approaching to talk to him. She then explains that the man trades with them and attended her ceremony. Deciding it's perfect, Jaewoo decides to go and calls Piffenheim to accompany him. Before leaving, he tells Valpurgis he's departing, which surprises her. Alone, she comments that she thought they could finally spend some time together. Changing to a bedroom, a maid watches Prince Philip sleeping in bed. Lying down, he seems to be having a nightmare, sweating with a tense expression. In his dream, Philip offers gifts to the Emperor, speaking of his merits. Hidden, he watches a dark silhouette pass through a well-lit corridor. Then he sees Jaewoo holding Valpurgis, saying he rescued her from House Ritter. At this, the Emperor promises to name Jaewoo the next Prince-Elector, leaving Philip in despair. In his nightmare, Philip desperately screams Jaewoo's name amidst the chaos. Falling into a dark abyss, he continues to plunge into the dream's darkness. Then he wakes up suddenly, screaming and clutching the sheets tightly. Startled, he loses his balance and falls out of bed, knocking a glass to the floor. Grinding his teeth in anger, he calls Jaewoo a weasel, completely unhinged. Changing the scene, a voice threatens Jaewoo, saying they'll finally kill him. A man shouts that old Tilly is his, threatening him with a club. Arriving at a forest, Jaewoo asks Piffenheim if this is the right place. Just then, a little boy appears, asking if they came to see Grandpa Tilly. With a smile, the boy offers to take them to the location. Confused, Jaewoo and his servant just look at each other for a moment. Running ahead, the boy announces that Grandpa Tilly has visitors. As he gets closer, Jaewoo is surprised when the old man calls him by name. As he starts to speak, the old man cuts him off, demanding complete silence. Suddenly, the man pulls a giant fish from the water, impressing everyone. Laughing at Jaewoo's reaction, the old man calls him shy for someone so famous. With an intense gaze, he tells the young man to look more closely. Next, he uses the rod to strike the enormous fish he caught, slicing the animal skillfully. He celebrates that they'll have a side dish today. Seeing that, Jaewoo realizes he's in the presence of a true living legend. Embraced by the boy, he is revealed to be Count Johannes von Tilly. Recognizing the figure, Jaewoo stares at him like a true living legend. It's revealed that he is the famous Count Johannes von Tilly. With a faint smile, he watches the Count and his grandson. Clenching his fist, he decides he will recruit him no matter what. In a flashback, it's said that he was a legendary army commander. Capable of bringing victory, he fought in countless wars in the past. Commanding his troops, Count Johannes von Tilly was an imposing figure, but at some point, he began to reject all offers he received. Sitting down, Jaewoo realizes the reason for his disappearance is a mystery. During the meal, Jaewoo compliments the grandson's health. Trying to start the conversation, he then calls him General Tilly, but the Count stands up saying he must leave. Seeing this, Piffenheim comments that he doesn't seem willing to listen. The boy then asks if they also came to try and flatter his grandfather. Turning to the grandson, Jaewoo asks if he knows anything. Holding out his hand, the boy asks for something in return for the information. He then warns that nothing in this world is free for them. An annoyed old woman yells, asking why they are there again. Saying they seem nice, the grandson asks her to tell them about Tilly. Observing the two, she sizes them up with a very suspicious look. She then asks if they can keep a secret, and Jae-woo immediately confirms. Beginning the story, she prepares to reveal what happened to him. In a flashback, Tilly rides a horse alongside a woman near a river. Praising the lake, he hears that the land was protected by her ancestors. He then reveals that he plans to spend the rest of his life there when he retires. With a smile, the woman simply replies that she understands how he feels. Looking at the river, he thinks that would be a good dream, but the scene changes, showing him pouring a drink on a stone grave. Talking to the headstone, he says he brought the rum his mother liked. Clenching his fist, he vows to protect that land. Back in the flashback, a nobleman and his guards confront Tilly, calling him general. With a smile, the man asks how long he will remain stubborn about the debt. The old woman then yells that they must leave, as they will not give up the land, but the nobleman says that's fine, since it's only a matter of time. Suggesting he listen, he advises him to cooperate while he's still being polite. Returning to the present, Jae-woo realizes there's more to the story than he thought. With a sly grin, he comments that the debt makes everything much easier. Shifting to a mansion, the Count of Brightenegg is standing on his balcony. Holding a glass, he complains that because of Jae-woo, the prince doesn't notice him. Suddenly getting an idea, he seems to find a solution to his problem. Looking at the garden, he decides he needs to get the land for the prince. At that moment, a maid runs in, warning that someone has suddenly broken in. Then Jae-woo appears in the room, making the count scream his name in shock. Grabbing the man, he calls him a mama's boy, leaving him confused. Pointing at him, Jae-woo explains he's not just doing this for himself. Hearing the conversation, the maid decides she needs to warn everyone outside. But suddenly, Piffenheim appears at the door with a frightening look. Frozen in place, she stares at him, completely shocked by his appearance. As she's about to scream, he silences her, telling her not to make a sound. Meanwhile, Jae-woo tells the count that this is a unique chance for them. He then asks Piffenheim what this whole situation means for them. Holding the maid, Piffenheim yells that the count and the prince are close. Still being held, the count asks hesitantly what they will do with the land. Angrily, Jae-woo yells in his face, questioning if they aren't best friends. Shoving him, he warns that he'll cut ties if a friend messes with Tilly. Back in the field, General Tilly looks back, noticing them approaching. Regretfully, he says he asked them to keep his current situation a secret. In disbelief, he asks if the count will really give up the coveted land. Confirming the story, Jae-woo says yes, forcing the count to agree. The count then announces that he has given up the land in exchange for his friendship. Questioning what he heard, the general repeats the word friend with suspicion. Hugging the count, Jae-woo assures him they are friends and that he'll speak well of him. Wishing him a good trip, the grandson says goodbye to his grandfather Tilly. Taking a step forward, he asks them not to worry about the place. Asking him to return safely, the old woman jokes that he's getting restless. With a confident smile, he just stares at the old general before him. Finally, holding his grandson, the general accepts his request. Celebrating their success, Jae-woo and Piffenheim give a thumbs up together. A window then pops up, informing him that Count Brightenegg has been added to the list. Celebrating the victory, a new window confirms the recruitment of Count Tilly. Shifting to space, a group of people dines at a luxurious table. Sitting at the table, a man questions if his name was really Jae-woo. A woman next to him finds the plan interesting, but also very shallow. Another comments that he might be trustworthy, but a voice calls for silence. Slamming a hand on the table, the group's leader interrupts the entire conversation. Clasping her hands, the leader at the table finally says, "It's all right." Looking at everyone, she then asks if they can finally begin. She then reveals that they are the deities of Recentiatus, the assembled group. Aquila tells everyone to relax, saying they've gathered to talk. Then the man in white offers to start the long conversation. He questions Sovereign Aquila, asking if bringing Jae-woo was a good idea, but she reassures him, saying everything is going according to plan. At that moment, a mysterious voice interrupts, finding the whole situation quite interesting. Suddenly, a powerful presence appears at the end of the long dining table. Several tentacles begin to emerge from a dark portal on the floor. Next, a woman steps out of that dark puddle on the floor. Sweat trickling down his face, the man in white stares at the new figure. Standing there, the mysterious entity fully reveals herself to the group. Smiling, she wonders why they're all just watching. Saying she was curious, she faces Aquila, who watches her in silence. Mentioning the newcomer they called, his image appears on a TV. Changing scenes, Jae-woo rides alongside General Tilly in a forest. Laughing loudly, the general comments that Jae-woo is truly an incredible person. Tilly comments that he already has a territory, but Jae-woo warns it's just the beginning. With the general there, he says they should advance with even more force. Assuring that the army is ready, he mentions they have a recruitment specialist. Using a ring, he begins to communicate with someone, confusing the general. On the other end, Kubalt shouts his name, and he identifies him on the call. Jae-woo complains about the urgent call, guessing something terrible must have happened. Worried, he asks if Pezimut has invaded her lands. Switching to Roserant, the Empire's army advances against Roland's troops. In the midst of battle, she stands firm beside her subordinate. Then the soldier reports that the enemies have been contained, easing the situation. Hearing the report, Roland feels relieved for a brief moment in the fight. At that moment, a soldier announces they've received a message from that man, Jae-woo. Over the communication line, Jae-woo asks if she's okay, and she confirms she is. Thanking him for contacting her, she says his kindness has left her speechless. With a distant look, she comments that this whole situation feels familiar. Looking at the battlefield, she says someone is behind this. She then suspects that the greedy woman, Amyunde, is responsible. Switching to the territory she occupies, a camp is shown in ruins. Inside, a group of humans looks completely terrified by the current situation. Then, a ringed hand appears, capturing everyone's attention. Revealing herself as Amyunde, she says they need to prove Jae-woo's worth to her. She then attacks one of the men who was trying to flee the camp. But Rud suddenly appears, shouting for the demons to stop the attack. Two monsters rush at him, threatening to kill the human for his interference. Next, the two advance on Rud, who prepares to fight. Before they can fight, Amyunda orders her two subordinates to stop immediately. Looking at him, she says he seems to be worth much more than her servants. She then offers him the chance to be hers, promising great riches, but he questions the offer, asking about the sacrifice behind it all. Refusing, he says he doesn't need that kind of thing from a demon. Shouting for her to die, he fires a well-aimed arrow in her direction. The projectile then flies through the air, heading straight for its target, but the arrow stops suddenly, blocked before it can hit her. Using her power, she manages to stop the attack before it reaches her. She then forcefully repels him, throwing him back with ease. Laughing at the attempt, she calls him a fool for his useless attack. Pointing at him, she says that's all he can do. Unable to react, he just grinds his teeth in rage. Changing scenes, Jae-woo slams his fist on the table. Furious, he curses Amyunde for showing up at this exact moment. Confused, General Tilly asks who exactly this woman he mentioned is. Sitting in his seat, Jae-woo explains that she is the most cunning of the Demon Kings. In a flashback, it's shown that she fights using numbers and many strategies. Realizing the danger, he remembers she's the most troublesome of them all. Suddenly, a servant runs in and reports that something bad has happened at the river. Desperate, the servant reports that a huge amount of filth is flowing down the river. Connecting the dots, Jae-woo realizes that if it's in the upper part of the river, then Piffenheim finishes, revealing that the source is the Valpurga convent. Next, the convent is shown being completely destroyed by fire. At the convent, the guards struggle to hold back the horde of invading monsters. With great force, Angela lands a direct hit on one of the demons. Even though she's tired, she maintains a determined expression against all her enemies. Seeing her strength, the monsters retreat, hesitating to advance against the nun. Surrounded by them, Margareta realizes the demons aren't attacking her. With a serious look, she warns everyone else to stay back. Then she yells for Angela to fall back, preparing to enter the battle. With her arrival, a soldier announces that Lady Margareta has arrived. Nearby, one of the convent's knights is already down on the ground. Seeing her fallen allies, she grinds her teeth in rage at the enemies. Still wary, the monsters just watch her, waiting for the right moment to attack. Finally advancing, the creatures charge toward her with everything they've got. She then declares that her fury will become a great storm of power. Then she unleashes a massive blast of energy against the monster army. Hit head on, the demons are thrown far away by the impact. Concentrating a sphere of energy in her hand, she prepares for the attack. Unleashing her power with full force, she hurls the sphere at the enemies. Floating in the air, she observes the result of her devastating attack on the ground below. Tired, Angela says that power could return everything to nothing. Then a huge explosion erupts, completely sweeping across the battlefield. Changing locations, Amyunde comments that the wind has suddenly gotten very loud. At that, Gugushrak congratulates Amyunde, saying the place now belongs to her. Recognizing the figure, he identifies her as the Swamp Empress, Amyunde. Surrounded by water, she reveals herself as the Water Demon Queen. Seeing her power, he decides they need to side with her to survive. With a smile, she reveals she wanted to expand to the west. Explaining her plan, she says she formed an alliance for their independence. Floating above him, she informs him that he now belongs nowhere. Laughing, Gugushrak admires her wisdom regarding the relationship between the tribes. Suddenly, a silhouette is pierced from behind by a sharp claw. Attacked from behind, Gugushrak questions what's happening. With a smile, she warns that useless things like pride are eliminated. Wounded, he just glares at her, bleeding from the mouth after the surprise attack. Then she kicks him, saying that only those who seize their chances survive. Falling into a pit, he yells at her to stop talking nonsense. Getting up, he orders his warriors to kill all the water demons. Desperate, he calls for his warriors, but no one answers his call. With a smile, she simply orders her demons to devour them all. At that, one of the water demons begins to transform, becoming more monstrous. Back at the convent, Margareta prepares another energy attack. She then launches an energy sphere at one of the larger monsters. Watching the scene, Angela just calls out Mari's name from a distance. Seeing her subordinates fall, she stands frozen in the middle of the battle. Taking a new stance, she prepares to use even more power. Clenching her teeth, she faces the remaining demons, ready for combat. Through a communicator, Jae-woo asks if Mari is okay, and she confirms. Angrily, she says they were used as bait and that Amunde is in the southwest. With a smile, she composes herself after the long and difficult battle. Concluding that her target is the orc tribe, she laments that she'll be out of snacks. Back in the room, Jae-woo loses communication and calls out for Mari, worried. Interrupting the call, Amunde says she's sorry to have ruined the mood between them. With a serious look, he stares at her, questioning who she really is. Then she appears before him, introducing herself as the Great Demon Queen. Asking about the convent, Jae-woo questions her motive for the attack. With a disdainful look, he asks if she isn't afraid of the Empire. Laughing, she says the Empire doesn't care about such a small war. Defiantly, she asks if he thinks the Empire can stop her. Jae-woo then makes her a tempting offer, a position under his command. With a dreamy look, she excitedly invites him to do it together, but suddenly, he shatters the table with a powerful blow. With a furious glare, he tells her to go to hell. Laughing, she remarks that he's adorable for knowing what to say. Then she asks how things are on Pedzamut's side. A servant reports that Pedzamut's troops have retreated for now. Seeing the destruction, she comments that the Brotherhood will be busy with repairs. Additionally, she mentions that Roland is too busy to think straight. Turning to him, she asks what he plans to do now that he's alone. At that, she begins to speak to her children scattered throughout the ruined city. Ordering them to eat everything, she says it will strengthen future generations. With a smile, she declares they will fill the entire empire with their children. Changing scenes, Jae-woo slams his fist on the table. He asks Piffenheim for the current status of recruitment. Suddenly, the door bursts open and Tilly storms in, shouting his name. Right behind, Mari arrives, explaining she lost contact and came running. Mari then recognizes Tilly and remarks that it's been a long time. Turning to Jae-woo, she urgently asks what just happened. He remains silent, staring at her as she continues her report. Elsewhere, the Brotherhood's building stands out against the night sky. Angrily, Mari complains that Amunde sealed the lake's water dragon. She explains that the dragon was the one who kept the water demons in check. As such, the dragon's role was to manage all the others, including Amunde, but she says the pollution got this bad because of Amunde's actions. Questioning the Emperor, Mari asks if he's just going to stand by and do nothing. Jae-woo concludes that they'll have to resolve the situation themselves somehow. Turning to Mari, he asks if she ran away again to come here. Just then, a loud noise suddenly grabs everyone's attention. Angela then appears at the door, glaring at Mari with intense anger and a clenched fist. Grabbing Mari by the head, Angela yells at her to come with her immediately. Speaking with Valpurgis, Jae-woo says the damage over there must have been severe. He then asks Valpurgis about the situation on the Prince Elector's side. With a serious look, he understands he's alone on this mission again. Sitting in silence, Jae-woo and Valpurgis remain in the room after their conversation. Their image begins to be transmitted through some kind of ancient screen. Suddenly, the screen lights up, revealing who was watching all along. Changing scenes, Aquila observes the unfolding events alongside another entity. With a smile, the Great Dark Lord comments that the situation is interesting. Aquila replies that he is happy to please her, but that this is a test. Outraged, a man yells at Aquila, saying this is no time for games. Another man suggests that everything would be resolved if someone like Margareta intervened. A blonde-haired woman replies that the situation is more difficult this time. She explains that Amiyunde's forces are not to be underestimated, as they have absorbed orcs. The entity says they need a solution, but interfering creates cause and effect. Then, she asks Aquila if this wasn't all within his expectations. She mentions how Aquila has toyed with countless great lords until now. Aquila confirms, saying it would be a problem if he couldn't withstand such a test. Inviting her, he says they should watch together to see how their wild card will perform. Sighing deeply, he shows just how tired he is of this whole situation. Saying her goodbyes, Valpurgis says she needs to go, and he replies that he'll contact her later. Suddenly, Rebs Chaltz appears and comments on how tired he looks. Celebrating enthusiastically, Reeves announces that he managed to recruit 1,000 new people in 1 week. Despite the news, Jae-woo warns that they are still at a great disadvantage. Not quite understanding, Reeves stops and starts thinking of a possible solution. He then suggests going to the next city, but Jae-woo says that's not the problem. Making a gesture, Jae-woo tries to signal that the issue is something else entirely. After a moment, his expression suddenly changes as he gets an idea. Full of energy, he jumps up from his chair all at once. Shouting, he orders Piffenheim to summon General Tilly as quickly as possible. Rebes asks if he got an idea, and Jae-woo confirms, giving him the credit. With a smirk, he shows he has found the solution to the problem. At that, he wonders how he didn't think of this before everything happened. He concludes that the solution is to simply increase the size of the entire board. Declaring his plan, he says he will bring many more people into this fight. When the general arrives, Jae-woo tells him he needs advice on an urgent matter. He reveals his plan is to bring Bastogne into the war effort. Warning him of the difficulty, Tilly says the lord of that castle is a genius. Full of confidence, Jae-woo says he'll overcome this obstacle with his silver tongue. He adds that he can use 2 skills if things go really wrong. Interrupting the conversation, Tilly says he actually has an even better plan. Arriving in Bastogne, he finds someone waiting for him at the castle entrance. Welcoming him, the person turns to formally greet him. Introducing herself, she says her name is D'Artagnan, and she serves the lord of the castle. She asks who his companion is, but Jae-woo assures her he can be trusted. Without a word, she stares intently at the hooded man accompanying him. Likewise, Tilly remains silent, not revealing his identity for the time being. After a moment, she understands the situation and invites them inside. Inside the castle's office, they wait for the lord to begin the meeting. Referencing the letter, Jae-woo says he heard they're going through some difficulties. A cup of tea is served on the table, marking the start of their conversation. Introducing himself, Richelieu says it's an honor, as everyone has been talking about Jae-woo. He then comments that Jae-woo's reputation is indeed quite impressive. Picking up his cup, he prepares to give his final answer. Without hesitation, he declares that he is completely refusing the request for cooperation. He justifies this by saying Jae-woo is just a mercenary from the countryside. Furthermore, he points out that Jae-woo uses tactics of threats and extortion. To make matters worse, he mentions the rumors about his alliance with the demonic dragon. Explaining his position, he says he has no choice because of the pressure he's under. Agreeing with the analysis, the hooded man praises the young lord of the castle. With a smile, he addresses Richelieu directly, getting his attention. Removing his hood, he reveals his identity, leaving the lord speechless. Recognizing the man, Richelieu asks if he is really General Tilly. Laughing at his reaction, Tilly says he moved to this region some time ago. Seeking confirmation, Richelieu asks if what he just heard is true. Confirming the story, Tilly says Jae-woo inspires more confidence than his appearance suggests. Surprised, Richelieu hears the general say that Bastogne is like a hometown to him. With a serious look, he continues to explain his long history there. Revealing his connection, he says he was a close friend of the former Lord Antony. Questioning the Lord, he asks if he knows why he abandoned the battlefield. Confirming the suspicion, he says there's another reason, and Richelieu wants to know what it is. He explains that the world started treating him as if he were no longer needed. Outraged, Richelieu shouts that he is a legendary general, welcome throughout the continent, thanking him for the kind words. He says that's only because the Lord thinks highly of him. Continuing his argument, he says that if the Empire truly welcomed him, they wouldn't have turned their backs on his parents' graves like they did. Then, when he found himself unable to leave his city, something changed. He reveals that was the moment Jae-woo showed up looking for him. Arms crossed, he finishes his story while looking out the office window. Looking at the Lord, he asks what he thinks of the situation now. Speechless, Richelieu stares at the general, processing everything he just heard. Shaken, he remembers his own history with Lord Antony in the past. In a flashback, he recalls the teachings and encouragement he received. He remembers when he was just a boy, serving the lord of the city. Back in the present, he turns to Jae-woo, who watches him in silence. Looking at Jae-woo, he asks if he can give him back his beloved Bastogne. With a neutral expression, Jae-woo replies that he doesn't know if he can do that. Irritated, D'Artagnan yells at him for joking at such a serious moment. Agreeing, Richelieu says he never met Count Antony, so it doesn't make sense. But, with a determined look, he says there is one thing he can promise. Extending his hand, Jae-woo promises he will drive out Jaker and the Prince-Elector. After a long pause, the Lord finally makes his decision. With a smile, he admits defeat and agrees to cooperate with Jae-woo in the war. Surprised, D'Artagnan asks if the Lord is sure about his decision. Confused, Tilly questions D'Artagnan's reaction, as he didn't expect that from him. D'Artagnan yells at the Lord, asking if he's going to hand over the castle so easily. Seizing the opportunity, Richelieu asks for another favor, and Jae-woo agrees to help. With a smile, he asks Jae-woo to take D'Artagnan with him on his journey. Slightly surprised, Jae-woo just listens to the unusual request. Reacting with fury, D'Artagnan shouts, "There's no way she's going with them." Outside, her scream is so loud it startles the horses. Questioning the Lord's permission, she yells that she cannot accept this order. Trying to calm her down, Richelieu explains her job will be to keep an eye on him. Yawning, Jae-woo agrees with the idea and says he's counting on her. Explaining the plan, he says D'Artagnan is the greatest talent in intelligence. With a look of disgust, she shows just how much she dislikes the idea. She then agrees to go, but warns it will only be for 5 years. Then, Richelieu asks Jae-woo to share his plan for the future. Surprising everyone, Jae-woo replies that they'll start thinking about that right now. He explains that their cooperation is the most important thing at the moment. One way or another, he plans to use their enemies to defeat Amyunde. Richelieu warns that the two hate each other, and Jae-woo suggests using Bastogne as a hostage. Commenting on the situation, Tilly says it would be easier if the heirs were in power. Not understanding, Jae-woo asks what he means by that comment. Tilly explains that the heirs are a famous couple throughout the continent. Seeing an opportunity, he says this sounds very interesting for his plan. Cutting to a new scene, a guard points down, identifying the woman as Princess Julia. Preparing her wires, D'Artagnan tells her to run on her signal. Determined, the princess agrees to the plan and prepares for an immediate escape. Without a second's hesitation, she leaps and attacks all the enemies at once. Using her wires, she clears a path through the horde of adversaries. Then she yells out, signaling that now is the time to flee. Running down the hall, the two of them escape, leaving the enemies fallen behind them. Back in the present, the garden of Bastogne Castle is shown at night. At that moment, Leon asks if Princess Julia will really be able to reach them. He explains that the security at Jaker's castle is stronger than they think. Taking a drink, Jae-woo tells him not to worry, as D'Artagnan is very reliable. Richelieu also confirms she's strong, and Leon accepts their answer. Observing from the side, Richelieu comments that Jae-woo is a rather strange man. He finds it odd how Jae-woo already knows D'Artagnan almost as well as he does. Suddenly, two silhouettes appear, and Jae-woo announces they've finally arrived. Arriving in the garden, Princess Julia shouts Leon's name with a smile. Likewise, Leon also shouts her name, overjoyed to see her again. Without wasting a moment, they run to each other and embrace tightly. Worried, he asks if the journey was frightening, but she shakes her head no. Pointing to D'Artagnan, she says it was that incredible woman who brought her. At that, Jae-woo approaches and announces that with the actors assembled, they can begin. Immediately after, a signal is fired into the sky, drawing attention. Two men then suddenly appear in the middle of a dense smoke in the garden. Furious, the Demon King glares at the group, calling them scoundrels. The Prince Elector also shouts, questioning how they dare decide on a marriage by themselves. Grabbing his son, he says that a marriage with demons is unforgivable. Saddened, the princess tells Leon she doesn't want to break up with him. With a firm gaze, Leon stands by her side, not backing down an inch. Together, the two fathers refuse to accept their children's union. Embracing the princess, he declares he will take her as his bride no matter what. Alongside him, she also declares that she will accept him as her groom. Annoyed, the parents ask if they understand the gravity of the current situation. Then Jae-woo intervenes in the argument, asking everyone with a smile to calm down. Pointing to the sky, he says that even the stars are blessing their love. Suddenly, a mysterious figure begins to descend from the sky right in front of them. At this, the two fathers realize she has arrived and brace themselves for what's coming. Introducing herself, she says she was drawn here by the scent of their love. With a gesture, she declares that she will be the officiant for their wedding. Pointing disdainfully, Mari shows them they have no choice in the matter. Annoyed, the Prince Elector recognizes Margareta and tells her to stay out of it. The Demon King then warns him to be careful, saying she's like a devil. With a smile, Mari introduces herself as Margareta of Love and Justice. Surprised, both fathers stare at the nun with suspicious eyes. The Demon King says he's heard the rumors, and she corrects him again. Just then, Jae-woo approaches from behind, interrupting the argument and asking to speak. Turning to him, the Prince Elector asks what he has to say. Using his ability, Jae-woo thanks them and begins to manipulate the entire situation. He reveals that he has already informed the Emperor about the marriage of the two heirs. Lying, he says the Emperor gave his full support and even promised a gift. He says the guests just need to show up, as the ceremony is already prepared. Begging, the prince asks for his father's permission to marry Julia. Pressured by the situation, the two fathers look at each other, unsure of what to do. With open arms, Jae-woo announces the wedding will be held in the Bastogne Hall. In the hall, guests congratulate the young master and praise Princess Julia. Some guests comment that the princess is too beautiful for him, causing a stir. At that, an angry guest starts a fight in the middle of the ceremony. Suddenly, Jaker approaches from behind, calling Jae-woo a brat and asking for a word. Whispering, he asks if the story about the Emperor's gift is really true. The Prince Elector also comes closer and complains about the uncivilized demon present. At the altar, the ceremony is about to begin, and the officiant calls for everyone's attention. She announces that from this moment on, the sacred ceremony will begin. She asks if the groom will love the bride until he goes bald. Then she asks if the bride will love the groom until he dies in battle. Finally, she asks them to seal their eternal vow with a kiss. Without hesitation, the two kiss in front of all the guests. Celebrating, the officiant declares that from now on, they share a common destiny. Outside, the guests cheer and thank Margareta of Love and Justice. Then, The two fathers come together and demand an explanation from Jae-woo about the emperor's gift. Reading from a scroll, he announces the emperor's congratulations on the marriage of the heirs. He then says that the marital alliance should ease tensions in the West. Then, he reveals that another crisis threatens the empire, the demon queen, Amyunde. As a gift, the reclaimed city will be given to the newlyweds, and they understand the mission. Excited, Jaker says he will subjugate even more lands, and Trier argues with him. Turning to his troops, Jaker orders everyone to march southwest immediately. Likewise, Trier mobilizes his soldiers, determined not to yield anything to the demons. Arguing, the two leaders rush out of the hall, each going their separate way. Coming closer, Richelieu says Jae-woo is incredible for having achieved such a feat. He says he's surprised that he solved a years-long problem in a single day. Jae-woo then explains that he's done this many times before, which is why it's different. Pointing at the Lord, he asks who hired him for the mission. Glancing to the side, he mentions the name D'Artagnan, who is watching the conversation. He then adds that the citizens of Bastogne also hired him for this. Gesturing to the crowd, he makes it clear that he was hired by all of them. Asking who they trust now, Jae-woo stares directly at the Lord from the side. Understanding the situation, Richelieu promises to return the favor, and Jae-woo jokes about adding interest. With the deal sealed, a system window confirms that he has recruited Richelieu. Cutting to Amyunde's camp, a subordinate arrives shouting, "Mother!" with news. Kneeling, he reports that Jaker has formed a marriage alliance with the Prince-Elector. With a smile, she remarks that Jae-woo's move wasn't bad at all. Then she orders her troops to mobilize and crush Wittenbeier as quickly as possible. At that moment, a man named Wallenstein offers to lead the mobilization and prove himself. Scoffing at him, she calls him Petzemit's lackey and taunts him directly. Maintaining his composure, Wallenstein awaits her decision, unfazed by her words. She then decides to test him, giving him 5,000 demons to do with as he pleases. Before the army, he yells for the water demons to depart for Wittenbeier immediately. Declaring himself the commander, he takes full leadership of the attack mission. Meanwhile, General Tilly also prepares to depart with his troops. In the central square, civilians panic at the news of the invasion. Trying to calm everyone, Reeves shouts for them to prepare to fight. Piffenheim interrupts him, warning that they only have the fighting power of civilians. He explains they need to handle the crisis themselves, since the Lord is away. In the middle of the crowd, a citizen recognizes a famous person arriving. Then, everyone shouts the name of General Johannes von Tilly, who has just arrived. Seeing him there, the crowd cheers, believing they will all be saved now. Piffenheim questions the general, asking why he isn't with the Lord. Recalling Jae-woo's request, he explains that he was sent to look after Wittenbeier. With a smile, he says Jae-woo predicted everything and knew what would happen. Looking at the troops, they notice the army is quite varied and different. After a moment of silence, he seems to have a plan for the situation. Turning to the crowd, he asks if they're good at playing hide-and-seek. Changing scenes, Wallenstein leads Amyunde's army as temporary commander. He announces they're almost there and plans to make Petzemit's lackey his subordinate. Arriving to report, a scout on horseback quickly approaches Wallenstein. He reports that the city of Wittenbeier is completely empty and filled with trash. Ignoring the commander, one of the demons gets excited to crush any enemies that appear. Yelling at them, Wallenstein reminds them he's the commander and that the opponent is treacherous. Not caring, he orders everyone to advance straight ahead to bring back good news. Riding through the city, the army begins to advance through the dusty streets. Arriving in the center, one of the demons complains that there's nothing but dirt. Threatening one of his own, he warns that he'll report any disobedience to Amayunde. Mocking the order, another demon says it's ridiculous to listen to him. Analyzing the area, he comments that there's no sign of people, only trash. Complaining about the smell, one demon compares the strange food to that of his homeland. Questioning the smells, he's told the problem is with their noses. Suddenly, one of the demons points and yells that he's found a survivor. With a serious look, he turns to see what's happening. In that instant, his eyes change, realizing something is very wrong with the situation. With a sinister smile, the hooded figure reveals it was all a trap. Realizing the danger, he understands what's about to happen. Tossing her hood aside, the woman startles the horse and he screams. Trying to organize his troops, he attacks one of his own and yells for a formation. Just then, several archers appear on the walls, all ready to fire on his command. Looking up, he sees that his army is completely surrounded on all sides. Remembering the plan, a citizen asks if they should really leave the city gate open. Explaining the strategy, Tilly says the open gate will make them lower their guard, but he warns that this alone won't be enough to close the gap in their strength. With his arms crossed, he shows he is ready for the next phase of the strategy. Back in the present, arrows are fired from the walls toward the army. The arrows strike the demons head-on, catching them all by surprise. Commanding the attack, he orders the second row to advance as soon as the first one stops. As the arrows hit him, he realizes he was completely fooled by the entire plan. Looking at the gate, he understands the open entrance was the main bait for the trap. He then remembers remembers the city being too quiet, one of the signs of the trap. At that moment, he understands the strong smell was meant to cloud their judgment. Angrily, he concludes it was all an operation to make them lower their guard. With wide eyes, he realizes the danger he's in. Looking up at the wall, he sees Count Tilly watching everything from above. Suddenly, a whip ensnares him, pulling him forcefully off his horse. Holding the whip, the woman asks where he thinks he's going now. Furious, he glares at his opponent as he prepares to react. Using his power, he breaks free from the binds and jumps to the ground. He then complains about the cheap tricks being used against his army. With a smile, she says her part in the fight is over. Rushing forward, he runs toward her to finally end the fight, but Tilly leaps from the wall and blocks his attack with a sword. The force of the impact shatters his weapon, throwing him backward. Without a moment's hesitation, Tilly raises his sword for a final blow against him. The force of the strike sends him flying, with no chance to react. Lying on the ground, he writhes a little before trying to get up again, but before he can, Tilly's sword is pointed right at his neck. With his opponent surrendered, Tilly declares that the battle has finally reached checkmate. With his sword pointed, Tilly says he's heard the rumors about him. He expresses surprise that such a man ended up in Amunde's forces. Lying on the ground, Wallenstein glares at his opponent without saying a single word. Recalling his past, he always dreamed of rising through the ranks somehow. Coming from a poor family, he didn't have many opportunities at first. Unscrupulous, he used every trick in the book to climb the ranks quickly. Even his former lord was just another stepping stone on his climb to the top. Suddenly, Tilly feels an overwhelming energy coming from Wallenstein's body. Transformed, he swears he will get his revenge and make Tilly pay for everything. Without hesitation, Tilly charges with his sword to attack the transformed demon. Just then, he notices something unexpected and stops his strike midway. Arriving on horseback, Jae-woo enters the battle and blocks Wallenstein's attack. With a leap, he soars high into the sky to attack the enemy from above. Then he announces that he will use the first form of his sword art. Preparing the strike, he descends with his sword to end the fight once and for all. Charging forward, he prepares to strike Wallenstein with his sword technique. The blow lands squarely, defeating him with a single powerful attack. After the battle, Jae-woo takes a deep breath, recovering from the intense fight. Piffenheim greets him and comments that he cleaned up the mess quite nicely. Looking at Wallenstein's body, Jae-woo remarks that his form is quite sinister. On the ground, a medallion with a mark on it catches everyone's attention. Picking up the item, he laments not being able to turn him into one of his vampires. With the enemy defeated, he orders them to tie up the prisoner for interrogation. Using her ropes, the woman binds Wallenstein, who asks her to go easy. Back at his estate, tranquility seems to have returned to Wittenbeier. Suddenly, Valpurgis bursts in shouting, asking if Jae-woo is safe after the attack. Entering the room, she's confronted with a rather unexpected scene. She sees Richelieu and D'Artagnan in the room, and Jae-woo tries to explain the misunderstanding. Introducing herself, D'Artagnan says she has come to serve Jae-woo as his new attendant. Valpurgis understands the situation, and Jae-woo remembers it's time for the meeting. Turning around, she says she'll go on ahead to the meeting room to meet them. Annoyed, she realizes that yet another person has joined his core group. As they walk, he asks D'Artagnan who will be attending today's meeting. Surprised, he asks if Angela will also be there, and she explains why. In a flashback, Mari appears very excited to help Jae-woo on his mission. Back in the present, he prepares to enter the meeting room. Inside, Jaker and Trier's group awaits him on one side of the table. On the other side, Roland and the representatives from the convent are also waiting. Arriving in the room, he apologizes for making everyone wait for him. He then announces that the meeting to discuss the subjugation of Amunde will now begin. Impatiently, Jaker says it was an overwhelming victory for his great lord. Ignoring the argument, Jae-woo asks about the current status of Roserant and the Sisterhood. Roland replies that the sewer demon attacks are causing a lot of trouble. Angela then adds that the convent is still in the process of reclaiming territory. With a sinister smile, she prepares to give her opinion in the meeting. Annoyed, Angela complains that everything would be much easier if certain people would just keep quiet. At that moment, General Tilly asks to speak to give his opinion. He suggests attacking Pisamit's army to try and turn the tide of the war. Jae-woo agrees that the timing is right, but says there's a problem. He explains that if they do so, they will attract the wrath of the tomb's guardian. Tilly understands the situation, and Jae-woo apologizes for not being able to follow the plan. The Prince Elector asks how he plans to handle the crisis, and he answers. He says that the sewer demons continue to increase their numbers by the moment. Annoyed, Mari yells at the Prince Elector for asking such an obvious question. Angela then grabs Mari from behind and holds her back to calm her down. Unfazed, Jae-woo says the question is reasonable and prepares to answer. With a confident smile, he gets ready to announce his grand plan. He declares that he will end their worries in just 3 days. Cutting to Amyunde's camp, Pezamut's lackey is being cursed out for his failure. Unconcerned, Amyunde says he didn't expect anything from that idiot from the start. With a smile, Jae-woo says his sense of humor is quite refined for a merchant. Laughing, the merchant compliments Lord Jae-woo's sharp wit. Introducing his companion, he says he brought her to strengthen the bond between them. Annoyed, she complains that this wasn't part of the deal, but he ignores her. Without hesitation, the merchant grabs the woman, who screams in surprise at his actions. Showing an item, he asks the merchant if the artifact he has is real. With a smile, he says the item is a very special and rare antique. He then reveals that the artifact can prevent anyone from being petrified. Changing scenes, the secret auction begins with several masked guests in the hall. There, several people are kept in cages, waiting to be sold. With open arms, the auctioneer announces that the auction is about to begin. The first item announced is a young elf who has just awakened her mana. The bids start to climb quickly, with everyone interested in the prize. Suddenly, a man bids 150,000, ending the dispute. Before announcing the next item, the auctioneer is interrupted by one of his subordinates. Pressing the auctioneer, his subordinate warns that they must honor the requested conditions. Nervously, he announces the next item, a wooden necklace that is a work of art. Faced with a lack of interest, the entire audience remains completely silent. Laughing awkwardly, the auctioneer comments on the cold reaction and prepares to start. Raising his paddle, Jae-woo makes an initial offer of 100,000 florins for the necklace. Excited by the bid, the auctioneer asks if anyone in the audience can offer more. Suddenly, a mysterious voice offers a bid of 500,000 florins for the item. Turning his head, he stares at the person who just made the unexpected bid. Then, the hooded figure confirms they will take the necklace for 500,000. Changing scenes, Amyunde turns to give her servant a new order. Gesturing angrily, she shows her complete dissatisfaction with the current situation. Without hesitation, she orders him to go to Lindau immediately for the mission. She specifies that he must secure that item at all costs. Grabbing the servant, she emphasizes that it's about the item they just discussed. Back at the auction, the guests react in shock to the 500,000 bid. Announcing the bid, the auctioneer says 500,000 has been offered for the item. Annoyed, Jae-woo shouts a bid of 700,000, continuing the heated dispute. With a smile, the hooded figure offers 850,000 without hesitation. Pressured, he knows that if he backs down now, his mother will surely kill him. The auctioneer prepares to close the bidding, believing there will be no more offers. But at the last second, he raises his hand and offers 1 million for the necklace. With the final bid, he glares at his opponent with a look of contempt. Winning the dispute, he wears a satisfied smile as the auctioneer closes the item. Picking up the necklace, he celebrates the acquisition, saying that everything is fine now. At the end of the auction, the staff say their goodbyes, mentioning it's finally over. As he goes to leave, the door is suddenly shut in front of him. Before he can react, Jae-woo appears and grabs him firmly by the shoulder. With a smile, Jae-woo asks where he's going in such a hurry. Amyunde's servant says it's a shame, as he was very interested in the necklace. Clenching his teeth, he glares at Jae-woo, unsure how he got so close. Suspicious, Amyunde's servant wonders if he's planning something. Taking off his mask, Jae-woo reveals his true, dark intentions to everyone there. With a single blow, he easily knocks Amyunde's servant to the ground. Meanwhile, Lena gets rid of the merchant, cursing him for his actions. On stage, Jae-woo thanks them for waiting and announces the second big event of the night. Suddenly, several undead goblins appear and start attacking all the guests. With a smile, he calls it a lovely encounter with his goblins. One of the guests screams in terror as a creature lunges at him. Fallen on the floor, the merchant asks why Jae-woo is doing this to him. Observing the scene, Jae-woo just stares at the chaotic result he created. Seeing the chaos, Amyunde's servant decides he needs to escape as quickly as possible, but Lena stops him, using her threads to ask where he thinks he's going. The necklace then falls to the ground, and Jae-woo approaches to pick it up. With nowhere to go, Amyunde's servant is paralyzed with fear. Crouching down, Jae-woo warns him that the real fun is just beginning. Getting straight to the point, he asks if the person listening is really Amyunde. Furious, she calls him a rat for daring to challenge her. With a smirk, he prepares to reveal his final plan. Crouching down, he asks if she really thinks he's a complete idiot. Surprised, she hears him say that he didn't come all this way knowing nothing. Then he reveals he knows exactly what she's hiding in her nest. Back at the auction, a goblin laughs, saying his boss is angry. Turning to the side, he stares at the goblin, not understanding what happened. Explaining the situation, the goblin informs him that he also brought all the captured slaves. Pointing to the crowd, he says there must be about 300 people in total. With a worried look, Lena comments that they'll be sold somewhere else. A quick memory flashes by, and she recalls when she was also a slave. Just then, he calls out to her, telling her to focus on the situation again. Scolding her, he asks why she's so distracted while on the job. Apologizing, she explains that she was lost in her own world for a moment. Then she asks what he plans to do with all those slaves. Pointing at them, Jae-woo declares that he will settle them all on his property, Wittenbayer. Without a care, he says he'll hand them over to Rebes to be made useful. Finding the situation funny, she laughs, and he asks for the reason. With a smile, she replies that he's just a very strange person. Giving orders, he tells his goblins to escort the 300 slaves safely. While changing her clothes, she asks if he isn't going back to Wittenbayer now. He tells her he has something else to do, and that she should call him master. Saying her goodbyes, she leaves, and he notices that she seems to have let her guard down. With a determined look, he turns to his next task. Surrounded by sewer demons, he asks if they should start the cleanup. Just then, a group of water demons glares at him, their eyes filled with rage. Looking back, he prepares to face the oncoming group. Watching the creatures, he readies himself to begin his new battle. He then comments that the dumber they are, the more they tend to travel in packs. Suddenly, one of the creatures leaps forward and charges, attacking him with everything it has. Extending a hand, he prepares to use his skills and finish them all. Without using his hands, he crushes the first demon, slamming it into the ground. Enraged, the other demons scream and charge all at once to attack him. With his sword in hand, he prepares to use a variation of his technique. In a single motion, he unleashes a series of consecutive strikes, defeating everyone around him. The impact of his attack kicks up dust and shatters the stone floor. Suddenly, he senses the presence of a new and powerful enemy approaching. A giant, bizarre creature appears before him, ready for battle. The creature strikes with its tail, but he narrowly dodges the blow. Using his speed, he rushes forward and lands a direct hit on the enemy. Even wounded, the creature turns and attacks him with its multiple tentacles. After the attack, he wonders if they aren't underestimating him too much. With a smile, he says he didn't expect them to send just one big guy. Watching from a distance, the demon leader remains silent during the fight. Floating in the air, he warns his enemy not to get too confident about victory. Pointing, the leader orders his troops to kill that wretched human at once. Making a hand gesture, he prepares for what's coming next. With a smile, he says that if that's how they want it, then fine. At that moment, several shadow servants are summoned to join the great battle. Among them is Piffenheim, one of his most loyal and powerful servants. The woman also appears, commenting that she's getting a lot of new toys today. Seeing the new enemies, the demon leader points and orders his troops to attack. With a sinister look, he prepares to give the final order to his servants. Giving the order to finish them, his servants charge into combat. Without hesitation, the new servants attack and easily defeat the sewer demons. Observing the outcome, he comments that the fight was quite intense for everyone. He then decides he needs to leave soon, as he has something important to find. Screaming, the demon leader orders them not to let the human Jae-woo escape. But before he can finish, he's struck by a fatal blow from behind. Piffenheim tells Jae-woo to go, as they will take care of all the enemies there. Arriving at the Crystal Cave, he finally finds the place he was looking for. Looking at the entrance, he comments that he gets lost every time, because its location is random. He then notes that the woman's preferences and taste are quite strange. Looking to the side, he braces himself for what's to come. In front of him, the silhouette of a giant dragon can be seen inside an egg. Looking closer, he confirms that it is the lake's water dragon. Without wasting time, he hurries to act before Aemyunda arrives at the location. Suddenly, the entire cave begins to shake and crumble down on top of him. Turning around, he faces the new threat that has just appeared before him. With a smile, Aemyunda appears in the cave, ready for the final confrontation. Arriving at the scene, she finds him and says that she's finally found him.